Hello everyone, welcome to What If Belle Had Love Affair with Aiz Wallenstein movie. Before we start, please go support VicMarVaz for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Belle is a male. New in town, new in jail, new to love. Heart pierced at the first encounter. Prologue: is it wrong to expect an encounter with your hero in the dungeon? Shoe change. There was a seemingly endless dungeon with several different levels. Inside were a great variety of horrible monsters. I, along with those adventurers seeking fame and fortune by risking their own lives, would register with the guild and begin my search. Power. With a sword in my hand, I would quickly and abruptly emerge. Then in the end, I would have an encounter with a hero. Endless screams, the savage roars of the monsters. Only at the very last moment would the sound of a sword slicing through the air suddenly emerge. The monsters would be defeated and my strength would increase exponentially. Sometimes I would help people in danger. Sometimes I would chat with people in a store and talk about my great adventures. Sometimes I would meet a girl and we would become good friends. Sometimes. I would become as strong as that hero and together we would defeat the calamity, then I would save my mother. It was a completely normal way for a girl who grew up aspiring to a heroic adventure, wanting to connect with nice girls, wanting to interact with people of different races. Having those innocent or perhaps naive thoughts. Isn't that a normal personality trait for a young woman? Can't I have a dungeon encounter? Correction: wish for a hero. Is that really wrong? Conclusion: I was completely wrong. I guess this is the result for an adventurer like me who had those kinds of inappropriate and immature thoughts. I am about to die. To be more precise, I am currently being chased by a monster with a human body and a bull's head, a minotaur. That monster was immune to my rapier attacks. A level 1 was about to be devoured by it. I entered a dead end. Wiua. Grandpa told me to watch out for this death trap called a dead end. That's right, I was about to die. So this is my fate for being obsessed with such a superficial illusion, to become a monster's food. I'm a fool. I'm so foolish for expecting a predestined encounter with a hero. The idea of becoming strong, marrying that hero, and saving my mother is just a dream. The moment I started preparing and looking for a meeting in the dungeon, where numerous people die every day, I was already finished. I really want to go back. To go back in time and pierce the me who had just come of age and went to sign the registration document at the guild with sparks in my eyes. But those things were already impossible. Vuamun, the hoof of the minotaur. Although he didn't directly kick my back, every step he took crushed the ground, so even the place where I was standing was affected by the impacts. I was unable to stay still and could only roll around on the dungeon floor. In fact, I am now sitting on the floor as my life tragically ends. My desire to meet a handsome hero would be completely shattered. It seems that from the very beginning I lacked the qualities to become a fairytale heroine. My back hit the wall. There was no way back. It passed through dozens of paths and finally managed to chase me down, forcing me into this square-shaped space. I'm dead. My teeth chattered constantly. My tears flowed in torrents. My skin could fully feel the deep, heavy breathing of the minotaur. I raised my head and stared at the muscular body that was 2 or 3 times bigger than me. As if I had given up, my face expressed a totally unpleasant, ironic smile. In the end, I didn't have an encounter with a hero. Just as those thoughts that led to my death sprang from my incorrigible brain, the minotaur slowly waving its paw appeared before my eyes. In the next instant, a line passed through the monster's body. Havu, those were the sounds produced by me and the minotaur. The line that flowed not only passed through his body, it also traveled across his thick chest, his hoof, and then his upper wrist, his thighs, his lower body, his shoulders, and finally ran to the next one all at once. In the end, I could only see a white light. The end result was the monster I couldn't kill was cut into pieces of meat in an instant. Gyubu, woa, cries of pain echoed throughout the room before his death. Following the carved lines, the minotaur's body also fell to pieces. Along with the spurting blood, the dark red liquid spilled out, collapsing completely the next moment. A large amount of blood splattered my body as if I had taken a shower. I was completely frozen. Are you okay? What came after the bull-headed monster was a boy who could be mistaken for a god. No, he surpassed them. He was above them. His slender but sturdy body was encased in light silver armor with red lines. His muscular and well-formed limbs were contained by the black fabric of his clothing under the armor. He had an emblem on the breastplate of his shining armor, and blood ran down the tip of his sword, which pointed at the ground. Her white hair and beautiful rubbered eyes reminded me of a rabbit. Her beautiful snow-white hair maintained a purity that she would not lose before any virgin goddess. Besides having a very well-trained body that would make any woman drool, he had a very pretty and attractive face that anyone would like. The ruby-red color of her eyes looked at me, an adventurer with a rabbit-like appearance, extremely handsome and with silver-colored equipment and red lines. Even I, who was just a level 1 and a novice adventurer, knew who this person in front of me was. He was a first-class adventurer belonging to the Loki Familia. In the city, he is the strongest adventurer, a symbol of hope in whom all the people in the world place their faith. God of the sword, bellcranel. Excuse me, are you okay? I'm not well. I'm not doing well at all. For my heart, which was currently jumping constantly as if it were about to break, it could not be considered that I was okay. My cheeks were tinged with red, and my tear-filled eyes were projecting the figure of the other part, a fainting no, a strong love to awaken. At that moment he had stolen my heart. Was she wrong to ask for a predestined encounter with a hero? Reconclusion. I was definitely not wrong, XXX. VOW. They heard something, a roar and a female human scream. They took off immediately. Bell was closer to the speed of sound and disappeared at a divine speed that B-Tech couldn't wait to react to. He found a minotaur and a human almost immediately. She had golden hair like the most brilliant treasure, and her eyes of the same color were filled with tears. At first glance, this young woman looked more like a princess than an adventurer. The enormous bull chased her down the corridor, hitting her like a cat chasing a mouse. "What's a newbie doing down here?" she muttered. One look at her armor was enough to tell that she had been sent by the guild. The girl's running style was erratic, wasting so many movements that it was obvious she had no experience. The newest of the rookies. From the Minotaur's perspective, this adventuress was not prey but rather an afternoon snack. Bell sped towards the princess. Viewman, the hoof of the Minotaur came down hard. All the girl could do was brace her slender body for the impact. No, she barely dodged it at the last moment but lost her balance when the ground shook. The girl rolled to the dungeon wall. Bell went on to break the speed of sound. He launched himself forward like a silent arrow into the massacre that was about to occur. The Minotaur trapped the girl at the back of the room. The creature's lips curled upward, forming a grotesque smile. Her golden hair became filthy, tears filling her eyes of the same color. All this princess could do was wait for the beast's jaws to swallow her. Filled with a strong sense of déjà vu, Bell launched himself towards the beast with a white stripe leading the way. View. The girl sounded as surprised as the Minotaur. With the first attack echoing, Bell slashed at the Minotaur again and again at godlike speed. The sword gleamed after the final cut. Gyubua, woa. The Minotaur remained there completely intact for a moment before falling to pieces. The creature roared before collapsing to the ground in fragments. The blood sprayed out in all directions, then their eyes met. The golden eyes were in shock, very different from the distant ruby-red ones. She stood there as if time had frozen. Bell tried to break the silence. "Are you okay?" He leaned over her, but the girl didn't even flinch. She just looked at him as if she had forgotten how to speak. Bell didn't know how to react, so he tried to speak again. "Excuse me, are you okay?" There was no reaction. The girl had been caught in the blood explosion and was currently drenched in it. Bell felt bad about that. Tears began to flood her eyes once more. All her exposed skin turned pink as if she had a fever as she stared directly at Bell. Bell began to feel genuinely concerned for the girl, so he wiped the remaining blood off his sword, sheathed it, and reached out to her. "Can you stand up?" Bell wasn't sure if he was being heard. The young woman looked at her outstretched hand and then back at her face. The ears, the neck, and everything else turned redder a second later. What? He didn't have time to bow his head when the girl suddenly awoke from her trance. Without prior notice. She escaped from Bell as fast as her legs could carry her. He was stunned. His eyes widened as he saw her disappear into the distance. The echoes of their screams faded away, moving further and further into the distance. Bell's face transformed into an expression no one had ever seen before, a face without words. He turned around to look at Bite, his whole body trembling as he tried to stifle the laughter that escaped his mouth. Bending over and clutching his ribs, he took a deep breath. Bell's face turned embarrassed and his cheeks showed a slight blush. The werewolf could only look at him. It had not been an easy trip. The long expedition of the Loki Familia had come to an end. Chapter 1, God of the Sword. Is he even human? Aina Easa Arian. As an advisor to the guild's administration, Aina Tool shifted her focus from the book in her hand and raised her head. He had realized who had spoken to him. It seems he's safe today too, he thought. It was something that happened almost 2 weeks ago. At that moment, that young girl had arrived with a sparkle in her eyes to undergo the procedure. She acted as his strategic advisor in the dungeon. That girl was still only 16 years old, and although adventurer is a job that didn't ask about race, hex, and age, many people died. Perhaps it was because she was responsible for her, but Aina missed that little girl from time to time. When she confirmed that he was still alive, her face softened slightly. She remembered that his name was Aiz Wallenstein. He lifted his glasses and turned his head toward the source of the voice. Aina Easa Arian. The figure of a girl covered in blood appeared in his field of vision. "Wow, please give me information about bellcranel." "XXX. Aizchan, if you're covered in blood when you get back, you should at least take a shower first." Yes, sorry." Young Aizu lowered her head in shame at Aina's words. Currently, the two women were in a small, separate, soundproof room for private talks between advisors and adventurers. They were both sitting facing each other, separated by a table. Aina, unlike Aizu who had taken a shower in the guild bath, sighed. "You were actually able to carry that unpleasant smell and appearance straight through the streets from the dungeon all the way here. I have my doubts about your brain." about that. Ina's words pierced Aizu's heart as small tears welled in her eyes. The pretty half-elf gave a wry smile, pointed a finger at her and said, "You need to pay more attention next time, okay?" Aizu nodded repeatedly. "Also, you just said you want information about bellcranel, right? Why, about that?" Aizu's face flushed before she began her explanation. In somewhat clumsy words, she recounted that she went down to the 5th floor and that the moment she entered said floor she encountered a minotaur, then was chased by it. Her excitement soared when she reached the part where the monster was about to kill her, but a second before she had been saved by the sword god bellcranel. Finally, he sadly remarked that just as he wanted to thank her, the moment he extended his hand, his head stopped working. Shame and nerves overwhelmed her and she ran away from him, from her hero. "Ah, why don't you listen to what I'm saying? Not only did you enter the dungeon by yourself, but you also went to the lower levels. Haven't I told you many times, taking risks is absolutely forbidden? Why? Adventurers shouldn't go on adventures." Ina said those words very often. While it might sound contradictory, it was also perfectly logical. When going on an adventure, you should always be well-prepared, careful, and prioritize safety. It was even more so with newcomers like Aizu who were just experiencing the presence of the dungeon. If he hadn't arrived, then I would be dead. Just imagining it made Aizu feel his spine tremble, followed by a sensation of needing to urinate. She swore in her heart that she would never forget the words Ina had spoken to her. "Fu, it seems you always have a fantasy about the dungeon. I suppose that's also the reason for what you did today, isn't it?" Ahiha. Correct, Aizu wanted to have an encounter with a hero in the dungeon, so she wanted to take a little risk, even though if she said that she would get beaten up. However, his bet had paid off. The encounter with that person, that's about Kranelson. As a member of the guild, I can't leak information about any adventurer, but I can tell you what is officially known. For some reason, Ina's cheeks flushed, but it went unnoticed by the eager Aizu who was waiting for valuable information. However, that excitement crumbled when the information he received was mostly the same as what he already knew. Real name, bellcranel, god of the sword. A top executive of the Loki family and the strongest adventurer in the city. His swordsmanship was at the mercy of his alias, god of the sword. Something that pleased Aizu was that he was the same age as her. What else is there? The rest is almost all about their looks and appearance, Ina said. She herself seemed to realize that Aizu already knew about everything that had been said before. Isn't that just from an adventurer's perspective? What about his hobbies and favorite food? And there's something you haven't mentioned. Seeing the young woman's face becoming increasingly red, Ina opened her eyes in surprise, which then turned to irony. "Well, here's another one," she thought, feeling a bit depressed. "Aizchan, could it be that you fell in love with bellcranel?" he asked. "No, well, yes." At that moment, Ina gave him a compassionate and sad smile, one that even rivaled those of widows at a funeral. What? Why are you looking at me with such pity, Inasen? You're scaring me. Hahaha, sorry, I couldn't help it. I totally understand. I'm even madly in love with him. I understand what? Why you are in love with Kranelson. Aizu's eyes opened to their maximum, staring at the embarrassed and blushing Ina, who slightly averted her gaze. "Well, yes, it's normal after what he did for me, although don't worry, when I confessed my feelings he rejected me." "No, that worries me even more. Why did he reject you?" Now she was truly lost. She had even gotten up from her seat and slammed both hands on the table, glancing furtively at Ina for an answer. "Besides, what was that about after what he did for me? Why did you reject someone as beautiful as you, Inasen?" There was that too, something that worried him a lot. This person, Ina Tool, was actually very famous among adventurers. Her popularity was high. With her kind, clear eyes, a pointed chin, and a beautiful straight nose, she had all the necessary qualities to be a beauty. It is said that many people liked him. As a half-breed, she possessed the typical beauty characteristic of elves, but at the same time, she had an unexpected and profound affinity for caregiving. So. Why had she been rejected? And no way, he already has a partner. It was the only reason the golden-haired girl could think of, the same idea that shattered her heart into 1,000 pieces. Ina playfully teased the young woman about her current emotional state, then gently said the following words with a smile on her lips. "Bell is not currently dating anyone." Aizu let out a large amount of air that his lungs were holding in and after a few seconds gave a gesture of victory combined with hope. Then doubt returned to her face as she stared intently at her advisor. "So why?" he asked. "I don't know, he just told me I can't reciprocate your feelings, I'm sorry." Ina seemed a little uncomfortable as she answered. The sadness in her eyes did not go unnoticed by Aizu. "What did he do to make you fall in love?" This time Ina smiled warmly as if she were filled with joy just by remembering it. "Thanks to him, my mother was able to be cured of her illness." Disease. "Yes, my mother suffered from a dangerous illness, and thanks to Bell she's still alive." He ventured alone into the depths of the dungeon, into unexplored levels, and very luckily obtained a medicinal plant that cured the disease in my mother's body. The half-elf's eyes moistened with the memory. He paused for a second, then after a sigh continued, I am so grateful to him. Even after being rejected despite knowing it would be, I still love him. My heart isn't interested in anyone else but him. Aizu was speechless. She felt animosity towards her advisor, and she couldn't help but be fascinated and captivated by the story behind their love. It's incredible, Kranelson, she murmured, then raised her eyebrows. But what do you mean by knowing you'd be rejected? Oh, you don't know, huh? I had a feeling something bad was about to happen. And don't tell me he doesn't like women. Aizu's entire being trembled with fear. Bel has rejected thousands of women since his days as an adventurer. His other nickname besides Sword God is Woman Killer. If you look at it that way, well, it's comforting to think he has his reasons for not having a partner, but thank all the gods it was just her imagination running wild. What a relief, Aizu sighed then. W8M thousands. You mean he's rejected thousands of women? Aina nodded. I'm happy that she doesn't have a partner, but I'm also worried about why she doesn't have a partner. It was of utmost importance for Aizu to know the reason for such massive rejections. He never answers when asked, but due to rumors about his liking for men after rejection 5205, Lakasama became enraged and announced, Belton has his reasons. Stop making things up for your own convenience, idiots. That's what he said. Aizu let out another sigh of relief, but more worries assailed her. So I don't have a chance. He murmured, looking down at the ground. If she thought about it, it was all a dream or fantasy to expect that her love would be reciprocated. If you ask me, I'd say give it a try. Aizchan, you're very beautiful. No one can know what will happen, so just give it a shot. Do you know anyone who's been rejected? She asked. He had cheered up a bit, and wanting to confirm something, he inquired. Aina seemed to understand what Aizu meant. Purely beautiful woman who has been rejected. Her lips pursed slightly. Her biggest rejections are Astria-sama and Freya-sama. There are also rumors that Reveria-sama is secretly in love with her and others that she has already been rejected, though those are just rumors. Aizu's jaw dropped to the floor, her eyes widening in shock, her entire body trembling slightly. It was good while it lasted, she murmured, her voice trembling. Tears began to form in her eyes as she thought about what had just been said. Bellcranel had rejected a goddess of beauty, and not just any goddess of beauty, but Freya, the one who sat above all those goddesses. Not only that, but also on her list of rejections was the name Astria, a virgin goddess whose beauty rivaled that of Freya. And to top it all off, there was a high elf royal whose beauty rivaled that of goddesses. Even if Reveria's love for Belle was just a false rumor, it didn't put her at ease. If it was true, she was very dangerous because she belonged to the same family as Belle. How did that happen? I wanted to know. I needed to know everything. Aina thought about it for a while, really undecided, but in the end she nodded. I'll make some tea. This will be a long talk. XXX. Finally, Aina offered Aizu tea and biscuits, then began her story. If you want to know about all of Belle's feats, I understand, but I'll have to start from the beginning. Why, yes, thank you. Aizu nodded, taking the teacup in both hands and taking a small sip. She was noticeably nervous. As you may know, Belle is the strongest adventurer in the city and belongs to the low-key familia, yet there are more public things that I am not forbidden to talk about, such as his achievements throughout his career as an adventurer. Aina did the same as Aizu, noticing the nervousness in the young golden-haired girl and smiling a little because of it. First of all, the first level up he had. He holds the current record for leveling up from 1 to 2 and all subsequent levels. Current record. How long is it? 1 month and 15 days to reach LV. 2, 1 month to reach LV, 3, 3 months to reach LV, 4, 1 year to reach LV, 5, 1.5 years to reach LV, 6 and 2 years to reach LV, 7 he is along with Otter the second LV, 7 in the city and the strongest. Aizu almost dropped the cup in her hands. She opened her eyes in surprise and spoke, that's incredible. She knew from her goddess that leveling up was one of the hardest things, and worse still that the difficulty increased as you leveled up. Reaching LV2 wasn't a big deal in itself unless it was achieved in a time like Bellcranel's. And it hasn't reached level 8, he asked. No, there hasn't been a reported increase in level for years. Maybe it's the same problem as Otter. The same problem, yes. As you know, it's harder to get a level boost if your level is already high. The problem with that is not being able to find an adventure that reaches the feat rank required to grant the boost. As Aina had said, Bellcranel had not reported a level increase, possibly having hit a wall along the way. I understand. So what achievements has Belson attained? And what led him to reject Freya-sama and Astria-sama? If you want to know about his achievements, we won't finish today, so I'll tell you the most important and outstanding ones, including the reasons for those rejections. Aina raised her right hand with all 5 fingers extended. Aizu nodded and waited for her words. First feat, he is the hero who ended the dark era of Amorío and defeated gluttony and silence 5 years ago. Thanks to that he rose to LV. 7. Although Aizu knew the identity of his hero, the information he had wasn't complete. The fact that he was questioning Aina was proof of that. Second feat, he was the one who saved the Astria family from an irregular year after defeating silence and gluttony. Records of the monster were not made public, but it was powerful enough to decimate the mighty daughters of Astria-sama. Another incredible surprise for young Aizu, and in this case the recent words gave her a clue about one of the rejections, was that when she rejected Astria-sama, Aina nodded, yes. The goddess Astria was very grateful, so much so that she began spending more time with Belle, or so people say. 1 year after the incident where he saved her daughters, Astria-sama confessed that she had fallen in love with him, but she was rejected. The shiver that ran down Aizu's spine was so immense that previous ones, like the one she had when she was almost killed by the Minotaur, did not compare to it. Similar to comparing land to the ocean. I feel sadness and joy at the same time, she commented ironically. Haha, don't worry, Astria-sama took it very well. She simply left the city and hasn't returned. That doesn't sound like they're taking it very well at all. Aizu refuted her advisor's careless comment, sweating profusely at Astria's reaction. I just hoped the goddess would return to the city. Third Feet Aina brought her back 3 years ago. There was an irregular among the irregulars, a fearsome monster that tormented the lower floors and the adventurers who entered. An irregular monster. Aizu felt the atmosphere change. Aina's frightened expression frightened him a little. It was named the Bloody Troll, a monster that consumed magic stones and evolved into a ferocious beast, an enhanced species that killed dozens of adventurers. I said it was on the lower floors, but it frequently moved between floors 37 and 17, according to reports. In the pause of a second, sadness shone through her eyes. My first adventurer in charge died at the hands of that monster. Even when elimination squads were sent with second-class adventurers as members, they were eliminated. I am sorry, Aizu offered his condolences to Aina, noticing her on the verge of tears. So did Belson kill that monster? Aina nodded, patting her cheeks lightly and replying. Originally, the request had been made to the Freya Familia, but before they could even answer the guild's plea, Bell was seen leaving the dungeon that same day, dragging the live monster with one of his hands. What, did he bring it to the surface? As if it were a day of strong emotions, Aizu stood up and slammed both hands down on the table, staring incredulously at Aina. Yes, people panicked when they recognized the monster from the posters the guild had put up on the bulletin board. Everyone backed away and became alert as Bell advanced toward the main square. Then, under the gaze of the entire city. Why yes, he cut off his head. He carried out a public execution and left. Aizu's body fell limply into the armchair, his eyes fixed on the ceiling of the room, and he thought carefully. Cranelson is amazing, he murmured, then adjusted his position and asked, but he just left without saying anything. That's right, but Lakasama announced that Bell had done it as a sign of respect for his fallen fellow adventurers, and that he apologized for bringing a monster to the surface. Although people didn't care, they were touched by his actions and sent gifts to the Twilight Mansion for Bell. I was one of them. I would do the same, Aizu said. She was smiling slightly. She had noticed the smile on her advisor's face, possibly because her first adventurer under her command had been venerated at that execution. Then let's move on to the 4th feat, Aina said, focusing the conversation on the main issue. His victory over the Freya family. I think I know why he had that fight. Aizu wasn't stupid. She hadn't been in the city long, but her goddess had told her about certain things. Among them was Freya and her actions of snatching children who were of interest to her from other families. It's as you think, Aina said. Freya-sama went straight to the Twilight Mansion escorted by all her executives and confessed her love for Bell, also saying that she wanted him in her family. I guess he rejected her, Aizu blurted out, certain that nothing would surprise her anymore. Aina nodded again. Yes, like all women including me, he told her, I'm sorry, I can't reciprocate your feelings. For some reason, all of the executives of the goddess Freya became enraged and attacked Bell, but they were defeated. That's too crazy. The Freya family is the second most powerful family in the city. While it was true that Bell was strong and a symbol of hope for the people, the fact that he defeated the executives of the most powerful family was something very unnatural. It doesn't end there. After having decimated warlord Vana Freya, Hildeslave, Daneslave, and Bringer by himself, he declared a war game. Aina sighed and took a breath, hinting that she'd said too much. She was tempted to say that was all for today, but just seeing the stars in Aizu's eyes ruled that out. Well, the war game took place. If Bell lost, he would join the Freya Familia and reciprocate the goddess's love, but if he won, they would stop bothering him. Among the onlookers nearby, he was heard to say, sooner or later, it'll get boring beating up your executives. That sounded great. In this instance, Aizu blushed, whispering words and making Aina smile. The advisor recounted more about the war game, giving exact details about every moment that passed. After all, it had been broadcast to the city. As you might guess, Bell won the war game and stopped being bothered. Oh, and thanks to that, Warlord got his boost to LV7, becoming second only to Bell. It can't be pleasant to boast about a level increase for such reasons, a total defeat. The biscuits and tea were running out, so Aina decided to give one last achievement. albeit briefly summarized. 5th feet Bell, he's the only one who has reached the deepest floor of the dungeon, the 70th floor. What? The change in atmosphere and emotion was remarkable. The Golden Princess's pupils dilated as she stared at Aina in bewilderment. The half-elf shook her head slightly. His other companions, the members of the Loki Familia, couldn't cross the 59th floor without his protection, Lakasama declared. Bell ventured in alone and reached the 70th floor, and despite being asked for information about those unexplored floors, he refused to give it. Aizu's throat went dry, so he nervously drank the last of his tea. Then he asked, "Why did he refuse? Any information about the dungeon exploration is supposed to be of vital importance." Bell isn't much of a talker, but he declared before the guild, "Until an adventurer capable of reaching that floor appears, I will remain silent. To maintain order, ignorance can be bliss." That's what he said. Nobody, not even his own colleagues, knew what Bell had seen on those unexplored floors. He was not bothered after saying such a thing about keeping that information to himself, nor could even Finn Damney, his captain, get him to talk. That completely surprised Aizu, however. Something sparked. "That's it, you should go home or your goddess will be angry." Aizu nodded, said goodbye, and ran through the city streets. Her back burned, her soul burned, her will to grow kindled both her heart and her love. XXX. "I'll catch up with him, then I'll confess." From then on, the girl started running. Chapter 2, Yearning, a Jeuji American maniac. He ran towards that place he called home. Driven by the wandering, refreshing wind, Aiz Wallenstein ran with great excitement towards her family headquarters. He had so many things to tell his goddess, so many things to ask her, so many things to ask her. But now, among all those ideas, one stood out above all the others. I need to update my status. With the excitement of a child visiting a candy store, she ran, jumped, and navigated the streets until she reached the designated place. When her golden eyes took in the place, her lips formed a smile. It's not very aesthetically pleasing, but it's certainly cozy. With hurried steps, he entered the ruined church and went down the stairs to the basement, then opened the door. "I'm back, Hestia-sama." Her voice echoed through the small space called a room, reaching the ears of the only other presence besides her. "Welcome, Aizu." A girl of average height greeted her with a big, wide smile. That girl was actually a goddess, the goddess of Aiz Wallenstein. Unlike many unfortunate souls, Aizu was not rejected by the families. Rather, they seemed to offer her a free pass. However, due to the teachings of her grandmother, Aizu was looking for a respectable goddess or god. In this case, Hestia fell into that category. When she was looking for something to eat and bought a Jugamaru-kun at Hestia's stall, the conversation somehow turned to the topic of shopkeepers and families, and then it ended up being her first daughter. "How was your day at work today, Hestia-sama?" Hestia may have had the appearance and personality of a child, but she had a part-time job at a potato croquette stand. "Excellent. My favorite customer came and bought the last few dozen Jugamaru-kun I had left. Thanks to him, I got out early." Aizu sweated nervously at his words. "Dozens? Jugamaru-kun are delicious, but I can't imagine someone buying that many. Was it for a party?" No, they were for him, a true Jugamaru-kun lover. She still didn't believe it, but if her goddess said so, then it was true. Likely. "So Aizu, how did it go in the dungeon? Were you careful like I always told you to be?" Well, yes, I was very careful." What? I don't need to be a god to know you're lying, Aizu. Divine punishment." Without giving her time to answer, Hestia lunged at her and slammed her perfectly to the ground. Aizu groaned slightly as she felt her rear end hit the ground. "Tell me everything or I will give you another divine punishment." "Okay, XXX. As expected, she had been punished. Hestia gave him an hour-long sermon talking about how reckless it had been to go down to the 5th floor of the dungeon. When he heard that a son of Loki, his eternal rival, saved his only dependent, he certainly bit his finger. "I would have to thank that boy later." Is something wrong, Hestia-sama?" "Oh no, it's the same old thing. I was currently performing a status update, but there was something different than before. Unwavering desire." When she read the part "accelerates growth, the effects last as long as your feelings don't change," she thought. Wow, what a hack. Sitting on Aizu's waist, who was lying face down on the bed, Hestia asked, "Tell me, Aizu, have you fallen in love with bellcranel, Fugi?" Aizu let out a sound of surprise mixed with embarrassment. Such a question was unexpected while they were updating their status, a surprise attack. "So that's it, falling in love with a clerk from that damn board. WL." Hestia could notice the blush on Aizu's cheeks and ears, even though she was burying her face in the mattress. He also felt a slight tremor in the blonde's body. "Does Hestia-sama oppose my first love?" he asked. Aizu, as a good Hestia dependent, talked a lot with her goddess. During those conversations, Hestia sometimes criticized her sworn enemy Loki. That is why she was afraid that her goddess, whom she trusted most in this city, would oppose her first and only love. Don't talk nonsense, it's obvious that's not the case. Hestia denied that possibility. "My hatred for that useless Loki has nothing to do with her dependence, it's something completely separate." Unconsciously, a sigh of relief escaped Aizu's trembling lips, then a smile formed. "I see. Thank you very much, Heshia-sama. It's nothing really. In fact, you could charm him and get him to ditch that plank and join our family. Having the strongest adventurer in town would be great for us, don't you think? Ahaha, it's easier said than done. Aizu smiled at her goddess's carefree comment. In fact, it might be a selfish desire to be in the same family as his longing, but he knew better than anyone how difficult it would be to conquer him. Okay, I've transferred your status to the sheet. As she thought about that, Hestia climbed down from her waist in the bed, taking a seat on the sofa a short distance away and extending the status sheet. Aizu became excited, getting up and sitting on the edge of the mattress and reaching out to take the statement sheet. When it was in her hands and she watched its progress, her eyes, golden like the most brilliant treasure, widened. What is this? Your status? Hestia seemed to be mocking him with a smile on her lips, but her face showed just as much surprise as she did. After all, he had acquired a terrifyingly convenient skill. State of Aiz Wallenstein, LV 1 Strength I 6679, Stamina I 20, Dexterity I 9498, Agility I 48 H 152, Magic I 0, Magic. Hidden. Skill. Unwavering Desire, Hiddens. It accelerates growth. The effects last as long as your feelings don't change. The effects are determined by the strength of your feelings. Hestia truly hoped that nothing bad would happen from now on. Her concerns for her only dependent had risen. Even so, she knew that attracting attention would be inevitable. XXX. As night fell, they both took a seat at the small table that served as a dining room and enjoyed a snack before going to sleep. Jugamaru-kun, Aizu wasn't really a fan of them, but he did admit that they tasted amazing, although 7 was his limit. Hestia-sama, when will I be able to use magic? In front of the calm Aizu, Hestia devoured the potato croquettes with a voracious appetite. Her breasts bounced from the exaggerated movement of her mouth and arms. Hope you have more time. Please don't speak with your mouth full, Hestia-sama. He had to sigh in defeat upon seeing his goddess's carefree personality, so he decided to leave the matter for later. Of course, he didn't realize that Hestia had acted foolishly on purpose. After finishing their evening snack, they both dressed in their pajamas and got ready for bed. Good evening, Aizu. Good evening, Hestia-sama. The little goddess threw herself onto the only bed in the small room, while Aizu settled into the armchair. With calm expressions, they both wished each other good night and closed their eyes. Especially Aizu, she kept a blush on her cheeks and a smile on her lips, hoping she could dream about her hero. XXX. The next day, everything was normal. Her clothing was one that enhanced her beauty, but she wore no armor other than the breastplate provided by the guild. It was the same with his weapon, being a low-quality rapier but functional for the apartments he frequented. What? As he walked through the city streets toward the dungeon, he felt his body shudder as a gaze pierced him. Unconsciously, she went on guard and looked around, cautious in case an attack was about to unfold. Was it my imagination? But nothing happened. People walked along the street without incident and nothing suspicious entered Aizu's field of vision. He finally concluded that it was all in his head, but the instant he turned around and resumed walking. This? Here? Aizu's shoulders jerked at the sound of a female voice. She had been frightened, nothing unusual considering what she had experienced before. When Aizu turned her golden eyes towards the source of the voice, what entered her field of vision was a young human woman with gray hair just like her eyes. She wore a green suit with a white apron over it, revealing that she worked as a waitress somewhere nearby. She maintained an innocent and tender aura around her, but her jovial and cute face turned surprised at Aizu's sudden reaction. I got scared by a harmless girl, how pathetic can I be? She definitely didn't want Belle to find out about this. She couldn't bear it if he said she was scared of a civilian, how weak, rejected. Yes, he would definitely take his own life. Sorry for scaring you, you didn't scare me, not at all, seriously. Even if the negative response was somewhat regrettable, it was full of purity, which made the waitress smile. Okay, I didn't scare you, I'm sorry. She apologized for having misunderstood his reaction, lowering her head slightly and then offering him a kind smile. Yes, Roman 2, something wrong. They were in the middle of the street and there were passers-by around. So Aizu changed the subject from being scared to one that would help her move the conversation forward. After all, he was in a hurry. He needed to become stronger, and for that the dungeon was indispensable. Ah yes, you dropped this. She extended her hand, displaying a purple stone. It was a magic stone. Didn't I exchange the stones yesterday? Oh, that's right. I chatted with Einasen until sunset about Kranelson and completely forgot to make the exchange. How careless of him. When she glanced over her shoulder towards the back of her waist, she certainly noticed that her bag was slightly showing, the zipper open. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Don't worry. The young woman gave him a friendly smile, which completely eliminated any trace of nervousness in Aizu. She had been taken by surprise, which prevented her from catching up with the progress of the conversation. After exchanging a few more words, Aizu was about to say goodbye when... Gurus. Her stomach rumbled in a way that was embarrassing for a lady. Instantly, Aizu's beautiful face distorted with embarrassment and burned a deep red that spread all the way to her ears. "Oh, your stomach, are you hungry?" Nod, nod, nod. How could she have been so foolish? She had forgotten to eat breakfast because of her excitement about entering the dungeon. Idiot. He mentally scolded himself. Now there was something else he didn't want Belle to find out about. He might well die of embarrassment if he did. Wait here. When the young waitress said that with a smile, she ran off before Aizu could stop her. He didn't wait long for her to return, except this time she was carrying a lunch box in her hands. "Here, it's for you, huh?" Aizu was very confused. She was new in town, but she was sure she hadn't heard of people giving away food to strangers. I can't accept that. Besides, isn't that your lunch? Don't worry, I can eat once the tavern opens, so take it with you. Even if you say that, it's impossible. There was a brief exchange of words, with Aizu refusing and the waitress insisting, which ultimately ended up taking up valuable time for the golden-haired girl. Finally, the waitress said, "I'll feel bad if I let someone like that go," which made her sigh in defeat. Saying okay, he held out his hands and received the food. "I don't know how to thank you really," Aizu bowed respectfully. "Oh, about that. Huh, you could repay me by coming to my workplace at night and spending a lot." The young woman with gray hair smiled sweetly as she pointed to the place where she worked, which made Aizu sweat. I've been deceived. I had been fooled by such a basic marketing strategy. Aizu was wondering if she was the only idiot who had fallen victim to such a cruel tactic. Okay, she made a mental note of the third thing Belle shouldn't find out, which was that she was naive. When he finally gave in with tears in his eyes, the young trickster smiled triumphantly and spoke. "You still haven't told me your name, could I know it?" "Oh yes, my name is Aiz Wallenstein. I'm Sir Flover. Nice to meet you, Aizu-san." On this morning, the young woman with golden hair and eyes had a fateful encounter, one that would develop disastrous events. XXX. Aiz Wallenstein. What a beautiful shine. The soul of a maiden purely in love, the feeling that made beings called human bloom in their maximum splendor. It's not as brilliant and majestic as his. A soul he could not possess, one so brilliant and yet so transparent that it blinded those who looked at him. A beacon of hope, a light in the darkness, a refuge from the storm. She was sure she would never see a soul as beautiful as that of the white-haired human who ruled over her heart. But I could develop it, make it grow, help it, and encourage it to overcome difficulties and thus shine brighter, so that it would become as bright as the sun, so that it would at least resemble that boy somewhat. I won't make any mistakes this time, Aiz Wallensteinson, you will be mine. I would be patient, I would be cautious and careful. I wouldn't make the same mistake of rushing into things as I had with that young man. This time she could handle the emotions that overwhelmed her. She wouldn't be like that irresistible boy who forced her to rush headlong into things recklessly. The soul collector smiled blissfully, unfolding the future scenarios she would cause. XXX. Night fell, the sky was painted a beautiful orangerd, showing faint trails of the approaching night. Aizu, who had already finished his invasion of the first floors of the dungeon, reported to Aina and changed his magic stones, was walking in one direction, the Lady of Abundance. She was undecided, but considering that she was a woman of her word, she ended up going. While wondering what his hero was doing, Aizu arrived at the gates of the place that the girl named Sir had pointed out to him in the morning. "Welcome, Aizu-san." Thinking of the King of Rome, the trickster appeared before his eyes. Thank you." Aizu's lips curled into a forced, ironic smile as she slowly entered the establishment and was guided by Sir towards the bar. As he took his seat in the corner of the place, Aizu thought, I should be saving money to buy good weapons. Her outfit itself was very nice. She was aware that she always stole people's attention when she ran through the city. However, my clothes won't protect me from an attack, I only have the vest covering my chest. In addition to that, there was also his weapon, a low-quality rapier that the guild had kindly given him. He needed to upgrade his equipment if he wanted to become stronger. Aizu-san, huh? Oh sorry, I got lost in my thoughts. He had focused too much, not noticing the young sir who had been talking to him a few minutes ago. She smiled and shook her head, saying that nothing was wrong. I'll take your order in a moment, okay? Yes, thanks. Well, now that I had no way out, I would have to spend as little as possible. I'll go for the cheapest thing on the menu and tap water. Just as that foolproof plan crossed her mind, the sound bam snapped her out of her thoughts. He was startled again by the unexpected and sudden sound, but his fear turned to surprise when his eyes met those of a woman. You're Sir's friend, aren't you? She said you'd be coming and spending a lot, so enjoy. She looked like a dwarf woman, and she also seemed to be the owner of the place. Wait a minute, is she really a dwarf? The woman was much taller than Aizu, which made her break out in a cold sweat. Although such a cold sweat was nothing compared to when she lowered her gaze to the bar in front of her, observing several dishes served. Spaghetti, fish, various rice dishes, and a jug of drink, apparently grape juice. I didn't ask for this. Aizu wanted to cry tears of blood. The pressure the dwarf exuded made it clear that this was what she would eat and there was no room for objections. Thank you for the food. As she twirled the spaghetti around her fork, she made a reminder not to trust strangers from now on. XXX. Maybe I should ask for any leftovers to take home. About half an hour had passed and Aizu still couldn't finish the food served, which made him think about bringing his goddess dinner. She was also worried about the total amount of the bill she would have to pay. Then, the reservation has arrived, Naya. A waitress's exclamation, Catman, echoed through the bar, catching Aizu's attention. Turning his golden eyes towards the entrance, he noticed several adventurers walking towards several tables together. Impossible. Leaving aside the short hobbit, the bearded dwarf, the beautiful tall elf, the Amazon twins, a golden-haired elf, and the wolf, Aizu's attention focused on one person only. C.C. Cranelson. Beautiful white hair that danced in the air caused by her slow and refined walk. A pair of beautiful rubies flashing an enchanting, captivating brilliance. Aya. Aizu's face exploded in a bright red as steam billowed from his head. Bellcranel, god of the sword, was wearing casual clothes, and it looked great. No, it looks incredible. It's so beautiful. A loose-fitting shirt in an ash-black color that contrasted with the color of her hair, and light brown pants combined with going-out boots. However, she was brought out of her infatuation by an unexpected development. The god of the sword. Cranel-sama. It's him, the real one. All the hustle and bustle in the bar vanished, and in its place there was a quiet silence, with all eyes turning towards the white-haired man. Suddenly, everyone stood up from their seats. Hey. What? And they showed their respect to the adventurer with the title of strongest, bowing deeply. Thank you for your hard work, god of the sword. This was Bellcranel, a symbol of hope and an object of admiration. EA. Everyone in the place, without exception, said those words in unison, waiting for a response from the boy. Bell, who was the center of attention, smiled. Thank you for the warm welcome, so kind and noble, a smile that would make any woman in the world fall in love. Badum. Badums, really. Badum, I'm head over heels in love. Aizu, who was the only one who did not bow in respect, stared blankly at Bell. Her beautiful golden eyes continued to reflect that kind smile, burning it into her mind. The state engraved on his back also burned fiercely, fulfilling the longing of his soul. Someday, surely someday, she would reach him. XXX. When Bell took his seat at the table that the rest of his family shared, the patrons of the establishment who had paid their respects did the same. The noise and chatter returned, although Bell was constantly being mentioned in them. As famous as ever, Bell. Beside him, a beautiful elf commented in a somewhat mocking and cheerful tone, making Bell nod calmly. Somehow I feel like I'm not worthy of your expectations, Reveria. He wasn't being modest, and Reveria, who was the woman closest to Bell, understood that perfectly. I was never able to protect anything. She still remembered those words that an 11-year-old Bell told her, one who cried like the child he was. Don't worry, if you have any insecurities you can count on me, okay? She offered her support in a whisper, making sure no one else heard her. When Bell returned to see her, she gave him a slight smile, one that enhanced her beauty. Thank you so much. Bell did the same, thanking and smiling. That caused the elf to blush slightly. Why, you're welcome. She had to avert her gaze and hide that slight blush beneath the profile of a reserved and noble woman. Hey, bring beer for everyone. Suddenly a shout rang out coming from one of his companions. Just like the dog said, bring in a whole barrel to get my captain drunk. Tioni Finn broke out in a cold sweat. The waitresses, Anya and Chloe, approached and began taking everyone's orders. Hey Belle, are you going to share a beer with me or are you going to chicken out like always? You idiot, do you want me to destroy the city? Yes, zero alcohol for Belson. Bette's proposal was rejected by Tiona and Lefia, who argued that alcohol and Belle were not the best of friends. I'll have some juice, thank you. Belle ignored the fight between his colleagues and spoke to Chloe, showing a slight smile as he gave orders. Right away. A very embarrassed Chloe went to the kitchen to get him his drink. Tap, 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 crash, stupid cat. Cho Naya was eliminated from the game in record time. Naya haha. Apparently she was so nervous that she knocked over a stack of plates in the kitchen, earning herself a hell of a scolding from Mia and a taunt from Anya. So she'll be washing the dishes this time. Lunwar seemed to be implying that they had a kind of game among the waitresses. XXX. Time passed quickly and at no point did Aizu take his eyes off the white-haired boy. She was acting like a total stalker, but she really didn't care. Now he had bigger problems. All the waitresses, even Siasen, are blushing. She was impressed by Belle's ability to make the women who looked at him blush. Since Aizu was one of those women, she understood that it was very dangerous. But on the other hand, she was discovering that she had fallen in love with the right man. Strong, kind, modest, cute, very cute and simple. As should I go and thank him for saving me? He was also currently engaged in an internal debate. She wanted to go and thank him for saving her from that minotaur, but she wasn't sure she could keep her sanity if she got too close to him. Her heart was not yet prepared for such strong emotions. Then, Hey Belle, tell them about it. About that, you know the girl who was bathed in the blood of the Minotaur. A very drunk Bite was shouting at the top of his lungs a song that Aizu knew very well. She felt her limbs losing strength, cold sweat running down her skin, her chest throbbing with pain and her lips trembling. In a crowded bar, the princess would be humiliated. Chapter 3, Perfection. Thanks to Tenma-sama from whom I took the image. Hey Belle, tell them about it. Silence fell, allowing the werewolf's voice to reach everyone in the bar. About that, you know the girl who was bathed in the blood of the Minotaur. A tremor seized her heart, squeezing her from within to the point of making her body tremble. Aiz Wallenstein was afraid of what awaited her. Her limbs trembled, she felt dizzy and her ears rang. Her teeth chattered as the humiliation began. XXX. Please stop. I wanted to form those words with my trembling lips and throw them at that silver-furred adventurer, however. What does he think of me? Doubt, like water destroying a sandcastle, overwhelmed and silenced me. I wanted to know, and at the same time I didn't want to hear it. I was just a newcomer to the city, not recognized by anyone, whereas he is the hero of this era. His strength, his kindness, his gentleness, everything reminded me of my father. That's why. Remembering the words they said to me in that tragic farewell, my inside screamed, "Stop." In the end, I didn't want to hear their opinion about me. One day I would know, one day I would ask her myself, but not today. Ah, her, what do you want me to say? When I made up my mind, I heard his voice. As serene and gentle as the shore of a constantly calm lake, it crushed me. This time in the end, despite not wanting to listen to it, I stayed in the same place in the corner of the bar, my body trembling in a ball. I listened to him. XXX. Belle, aware that he was the target of a different kind of gaze since he arrived at the bar and oblivious to the emotional state of the owner of that gaze, spoke. Ah, her, what do you want me to say? He sounded indifferent, but in reality he had spent yesterday thinking about her, the young woman with the appearance of a princess whose life had been endangered because of his mistake. What, you ask? Of course, I mean how she was lamenting about to be murdered, but in return she ended up looking like a tomato. His companion Bite was drunk. Belle knew it instantly when he saw his red face and his vacant eyes, something that was actually very common in werewolves. With a soft sigh, she closed her eyes and declared, "I see, then I have nothing to say." He opened his eyes again but directed them to the jar of juice in front of him, observing the red surface inside. Riveria beside him looked at him somewhat confused, trying to decipher the indecipherable thoughts of the young white-haired man. Bite, seeing that he was being ignored, was about to shout at him. So, a girl bathed in Minotaur blood. Belle, what do you mean Tianason? Why are you calling Belson Belle? The flat-chested Amazon Tiona and the golden-haired elf Lephia spoke. The first question is about what Bite said, and the second is about how Tiona called Belle her idol, Minotaur, one of those who escaped to the upper floors. Yes, those ones. Leaving aside her younger sister, Tione effectively concluded what Bite was talking about. The werewolf smiled amusedly, deciding that if Belle didn't want to talk, then he would. When we located the Minotaur, it was chasing a weak, novice adventurer brat. Gareth and Finn, who were enjoying their drinks, raised their eyebrows as they noticed the same thing as Riveria. That scene made me laugh while I was holding my stomach. That little brat was shaking pitifully to the point that her face was twisting. Belle's gaze focused on the liquid surface of his juice. So how did that girl survive? Tione asked. Just when his pathetic life was about to be claimed, Belle sliced the Minotaur to pieces. Right, Belle? The aforementioned did not answer the wolf's question. Apart from Finn, Gareth, and Riveria, the rest of the family, including Loki himself, were unaware of the boys' suspicious silence as they continued to defame that adventurer. Then the brat was bathed in cow's blood, turning into a tomato girl. Ha ha ha, I laughed until my stomach hurt. It was undoubtedly a good story. The surprised faces of those present in the bar said so. Belle, you did it on purpose, didn't you? Did you? Please tell me you did it on purpose. No, without looking up, he replied. The people in the place began to show their teeth, barely managing to contain their laughter at such an anecdote in the dungeon. Bite, disappointed by Belle's answer, with tears in the corners of his eyes from laughing, continued. That little brat, instead of thanking us, screamed in fear and immediately ran away. Ha. She fled completely terrified from the hero who saved her. Ah ha, quite a change. They usually always fall in love. It's progress, isn't it, Belton? Ha, I'm sorry, Belle, I can't go on anymore. The goddess and the elder Amazon unleashed their playful teasing. The Loki family was quickly surrounded by laughter. Not only Belle's colleagues but even the customers around him laughed with glee and mockery at the story. XXX. I see, then I have nothing to say. Not understanding the words of her longing, Aizu sank into an abyss of agony. I'm not interested in talking about someone so weak. His mind, as derailed as it was, deciphered Belle's words in that tragic translation. Then came the cold and cruel comments of that wolf, the jeers and laughter of the people in the bar. They broke her. As her body trembled with humiliation and desolation, crystalline tears began to form in the corners of her golden eyes. What was I thinking? Someone like her trying to catch up to Belle Cranel. Ha, what a joke. Her heart clenched and she screamed, making her chest throb with pain. Thinking about leaving this place, she was stopped when she noticed that the trembling in her legs was so intense that she couldn't move them. His throat went dry, Aiz Wallenstein. He heard his name, but the girl's voice passed him by, so. Anyway, I hadn't seen such trash in a long time, which put me in a bad mood. She was undoubtedly an adventurer, but she was crying and trembling. The humiliation resumed, XXX. The laughter stopped as they listened to the werewolf's words. What a piece of trash. What do you say? If she's going to start crying, she shouldn't have become an adventurer. It was very unpleasant, wasn't it, Belle? Faced with their silence, Belle felt the gaze that had been watching him since he arrived instantly turn away from him. However, he didn't bother to look back for the source of that look, one that gave him a feeling of sadness. Right now I had an annoying problem with Bete to the point that it was starting to bother him. That's enough, shut your annoying mouth, Bete. Riveria, who could see slightly through Belle's silence, spoke up to stop the whole show. Letting the Minotaur escape was our fault. We should be apologizing to the young woman involved in that unfortunate incident, and we have no right to discuss her as a topic of conversation at dinner. His intervention seemed to work to calm the white-haired man's mysterious state. Seeing that, he delivered the final blow. You really don't know any shame. Yes, as expected from Elfasama, but why is it wrong to call trash garbage? While his words worked to help Belle with Bete, it was a different story. The wolf grinned brazenly. Enough. Bete and Riveria. That way the wine will start to taste bad. Loki, who had been laughing, stopped and diffused the conflict, commenting that he did not like hostile environments. Belle, what do you think? That brat who could only tremble in front of your eyes. Could that piece of trash still pretend to be an adventurer? I already told you, I have nothing to say. Again, as he made his comment, he felt that the gaze that looked at him and then stopped looking at him this time was pleading with him about something. What, pretending to be a good person? Haha, do you like her? Don't make me laugh. The laughter and smiles in the place vanished, even the bitter and disgusted expressions at Bete's words. The wolf had touched a sensitive spot. When Riveria noticed the vein in Belle's temple, she quickly spoke. Bete, you're very drunk. Control yourself and be quiet. No one except Loki knew Belle's reasons behind the countless rejections he had made, but they understood that it wasn't something the boy liked to mention. Riveria, being the closest to him, could only speculate and create possible scenarios. That's how little information Belle provided. You're so annoying, you old hag. Hey Belle, answer me. Did you like that tomato girl? Will you finally accept a woman? What terrible taste you have. The werewolf did not listen to Riveria's words, insulting her in return. The beautiful elf's eyes narrowed and gleamed dangerously when she was called old witch. Of course it's not possible. However, with a sigh, Bete retracted his previous words, ignoring Riveria's murderous glare. He gave a mocking and cheeky smile, showing his fangs. She's weaker than you, a coward and incurable like a trash can. She's definitely not fit to be by your side. That's something you can't refute. They were simply one of the many theories in the city, but the rumor was circulating on the streets that bellcranel would not accept a woman weaker than him. When the news reached the female population, the city certainly went into a state of mourning. As long as they're trash, they won't be qualified to stand next to bellcranel, the perfect adventurer. It had remained a simple theory, but of the different ones that existed, it was the most feasible. Belle, who was being watched by everyone in the bar, slowly looked up and observed Bete. His partner continued smiling, waiting for him to confirm his words. However, all those theories. Bete, shut up, they were wrong, XXX. In the corner of the bar, at the counter and on the bench, Aizu's golden eyes were dull. I already told you. I have nothing to say. After that declaration, she gave her hero a pleading look, one that begged him to be silent, to say nothing, to not hurt her. For her, whether Belle spoke or remained silent, she felt completely rejected. She had let her face fall against the bar to hide the tears that were silently sliding down her cheeks. I was a fool. Suppressing her sobs, Aizu began to berate herself internally. She wasn't even paying attention to Sir, who was sitting next to her. The young waitress just watched her with a complicated expression, having guessed the identity of the tomato girl. Cranelson, he wouldn't love someone like me. Their spirits, so high in heaven, descended with the speed of lightning and plunged into the depths of hell. So. Haha, do you like hers? What? Aizu's mind went blank, then plunged into deep blackness. Please don't answer. He raised his head, directing his tearful eyes towards the sword of that boy, the one he wanted to reach. It was thanks to the werewolf scandal that she went unnoticed by anyone but Sir. I know the answer, but don't tell me. I won't bear it. She needed to get out of here. She came to that quick conclusion herself. To flee from his answer as he fled from him in the dungeon, his heart declared it to him. He quickly stood up from his chair, causing a sharp noise at that time. Bete, shut up. The demand from the young white-haired man froze his body, preventing him from moving. XXX. His beastman instincts made his fur stand on end, warning him that he was in danger. When Belle demanded and insisted on silence, Bete settled back in his seat, remaining silent. It was no wonder, even his other family companions and Loki herself had done the same, observing Belle's expressionless face. The customers did the same, feeling chills from the strange pressure in the air that made sweat run down their backs. Finally, after confirming that no one would speak, Belle declared softly, "That girl, the one you and the others are talking about and making fun of everyone here, has something in common with that girl." Huh. His rubbered eyes were directed towards Bette's amber ones, that being proof that only he could answer. "And what is that something you have in common?" he asked. Bellcranel had a reputation for being a man of few words, and in reality it was absolutely true. Because of that, his family and acquaintances always listened attentively when he did. And to the wolf's question, Belle replied, "Everyone is weaker than me." Not only Bette, everyone in the place shuddered. The air suddenly became so heavy that it seemed to be loaded with tons and tons of lead, making it difficult for them to breathe. "Don't make fun of someone who shares something in common with you, it's dishonorable. That girl like you, the others here, and me at one time is just starting out. Don't compare the first flap with the last," that's what Belle conveyed. "We all start from the bottom, weak, that trash you despise so much. So don't mock us, you don't have that right." His words dried the wolf's throat, making it impossible for him to respond or refute. Sobriety returned to him. Her amber eyes hesitated and trembled at the undeniable truth that Belle was telling. "That goes for everyone in this place. Nobody has the right to make fun of what once was." Raising his voice to be heard, Belle stood up from his seat and turned 180 degrees on his feet. Observing the customers at the place, he began. "My partner Beteloga said I'm the perfect adventurer. Do you agree? An unexpected change of scenery." His companions Finn, Gareth, Tyone, Tiona, Lefia, Beta, and Belle. Reveria could not contain her confusion at the boy's peculiar reaction. After all, Bellcranel is a man of few words. That was a golden rule. Loki alone watched and listened in complete calm without showing surprise like the others. "Please answer." Nobody said anything, everyone was silent. When Belle realized this, he relaxed his body, and at that moment the pressure in the air disappeared, allowing the others to breathe. Immediately everyone nodded in agreement, saying, "Yes, you're the perfect adventurer." "Well, I have to be completely honest with you. In this world, nothing is perfect. It may be a cliché, but it's the truth." Belle flashed a slight, ironic smile. "That's precisely why ordinary adventurers desperately seek perfection to feel superior, but deep down I always wonder, what is the meaning of being perfect?" Coming from the strongest, from the one considered the hero of this era and a symbol who carried the hopes of the world, the answer. "And the answer I get is nothing. It means nothing." Her ruby-red eyes traveled around the place, slowly settling on the corner of the bar. So it was her. When she saw her observer, she smiled. She hid behind a waitress, a girl named Sir. Taking his eyes off the also blushing waitress, Belle turned his gaze to the others and continued, "The truth is I despise perfection. If something were perfect, it would be over." For a single instant her eyes reflected regret about a distant past. It would mean there's no room for imagination, no space for intelligence, for ability, or for improvement. Do you understand? That same past was the core of his current being. The reason why he was Bellcranel, god of the sword. For adventurers like us, perfection is a dead end. We should always strive to be better than everyone else, but not perfect. I wanted everyone to stop desperately aiming at the place that would ultimately be their downfall. What everyone needed was ambition and ideals, not despair and lamentation. Adventurers torture themselves with the idea of achieving perfection. That's the kind of beings we are. Hoping his message was received, Belle took a gentle breath and gave his final words. "We delight in trying to go further, trying to reach something that in the end we must accept may be unattainable." Leaving a quiet silence, he gave a kind smile. "Thank you for your time." When it ended, the place was filled with applause. There were even a few bearded adventurers shedding manly tears, showing that they had been captivated. XXX. Then, Aizu was the only one who noticed. I was happy, overflowing with emotion. The depressed princess was nowhere to be seen. She had been killed by the excited Aizu. Right now I was sure that it was the same representation of a tomato as that wolf had said, ironically enough, because of its blush. Her cheeks were burning and steam was rising from the surface of her head. "He defended me." Those were the only two words that Aizu's mind could formulate. He defended me, he defended me, he defended me. Honestly, right now I looked like a little girl on her way to the candy store. Badum, badum. His heart was beating so hard it could burst his chest. Her eyes, once teary, now shone and burned with pure, strong determination. There was no trace of tears on her face. She had made sure to wipe them away with a handkerchief offered by Sir. It was good that she cleaned her face before Belle noticed. I don't know what would have happened if she had been seen with tears and snot running down her face. He would kill me. Well, maybe he did know what he would do. But at that moment, when Belle thanked her for her attention and gave a smile that made her heart race, she noticed. When everyone applauded excitedly, he seemed sad. For a second, he noticed that feeling of sadness reflected in those beautiful rubbered eyes. As if to say, I didn't say that to get praise. Perhaps Aizu thought there was a hidden message, something between the lines. What is it? Putting aside her immense emotion and happiness, she thought, but nothing, his inexperienced mind couldn't think of anything. XXX. An hour had passed and everything was going smoothly. Some customers had left after saying goodbye to Bell and his family, and a few others were still there. Among those few. Excuse me, a determined and very nervous Aizu stood in front of the low-key familia. The young golden-haired woman stood in front of Bell, who was sitting at the end of the table, staring at him intently. Ever since Bell had finished speaking, he had been debating whether to thank him or leave without saying anything. In the end, he decided to say thank you. Yeah, Bell recognized her instantly, smiling and asking, you are. And Bite, who was now calmer, squinted, trying to recognize Aizu's familiar face. I've certainly seen her, but where? The wolf wondered. Perhaps it was because he was drunk again that he couldn't recognize her. Aizu, upon seeing him, frowned but instantly calmed his expression and took a slight breath. This is bad for my heart. Yes, I was very nervous about what I would do next. You can do it, Aizu, you just have to do what Grandma taught you. Her cheeks turned a lovely pink, and her bright golden eyes sparkled with a mixture of embarrassment and excitement. Oh no, I know that expression, Tione sighed inwardly. Well, there goes another one. Tiona offered her condolences to the soon-to-be fallen comrade. What number is it? I've lost count, Reveria commented ironically. That human, she wants to confess to Belson, I'm sure of it. And Lefia burned with jealousy and murderous intent. They all admitted that Aizu's beauty rivaled that of goddesses, especially when she was blushing. However, beauty was not a requirement, the whole city knew that. The men at the table, including Loki, simply watched the scene with bitter smiles. Me too. Yes, it was the same old thing, a statement that would end with the same result. I'm sorry, I can't reciprocate your feelings. A kindly cruel rejection. Tione, Tiona, Reveria, Lefia, they all noticed it instantly. Oh, Gareth. Loki, bite, fin. Suddenly, with a second light inhalation to catch his breath, Aizu's nervous atmosphere transformed. What arrived was elegance, which made Reveria open her beautiful jade-colored eyes wide. Bellcranel, god of the sword, for saving my life I thank you, you have my eternal gratitude. The movements of a maiden know of a princess. Grasping gallantly and subtly with her fingertips, she extended the hem of her skirt and gave a slight bow. Her eyelids were gently closed, forming a delicate and enchanting smile with her lips. Grandma Hera, thank you so much. She never thought that the mandatory etiquette classes she received from her grandmother would help her. Right now, she was more than grateful to her tyrannical grandmother. It's time. After a few seconds, he undid his position. He noticed Belle was still looking at him. Oh no, the nerves are back. Yes, as I had thought, I couldn't stay steady for that long 1 minute near Belle. As her eyes filled with embarrassment again and her cheeks turned pink, Belle spoke. You're welcome, I'm glad you're okay. She gave him a sincere smile, the same smile that pierced Aizu's loving heart from side to side. May I ask your name? Aiz Wallenstein. Aizu, I see, that's a good name. It's a pleasure to meet you, Aizusen. And no, the pleasure is all mine. She wanted to extend her hand to greet them, but stopped instantly upon feeling the penetrating gazes of the women in the place. Yes, better another day. Even so, she was very happy and excited. Aha. Control yourself, Aizu, control yourself. Resistance was useless. His heart could not rest in the face of the kind face of his longing. As soon as emergency self-oxygenation began, a refined voice sounded. Belle, is she? It's as you think, Reveria. She's the girl who was a victim of the Minotaur on the 5th floor. I understand in that case. Now it was Reveria who stood up from her seat, focusing her jade-colored eyes on the bundle of nerves that Aizu had become. Aiz Wallenstein, right? Yes. On behalf of my family, we offer you our apologies. The High Elf served as a focal point for Aizu, helping her to eliminate her nervous state. Slowly observing the others at the table, executives and goddess, she noticed that they were nodding in agreement with Reveria's apology. Even Bite, who was under Belle's watchful eye, okay, I accept your apology. There was no need to foolishly refuse, he simply had to accept. Thank you, Reveria said, then took his seat again. Now being the center of attention at the table, Aizu gave life to his last words. I won't disappoint you, Belle, to whom the statement was addressed, tilted his head. Aw, how cute. Wait, no, concentrate. For a moment, just for a moment, he almost lost control. Not for defending me, no, for defending the weak. I won't let you down. It'll become as strong as you. It was no lie that almost everyone, except Belle and Reveria, wanted to spit and laugh at his words. Of course, it was the seriousness with which Belle listened to Aizu that prevented them from doing that. There's nothing wrong with being weak, what's wrong is staying weak, so I promise you I'll become strong. Honestly, where was I getting the will and strength to tell her all this to her face? Aizu didn't know. The only thing she was sure of was that her back was burning. As never before, it burned fiercely and vividly, reacting to the intensity of its longing. I see. Belle sensed the truth in his words and the weight of his will behind them, so once again he smiled. Badam, Aizu blushed even more if that was possible. Does he do it on purpose? Regardless of whether it was true or not, Belle stated, if there's something you want to achieve, then stand up, fight, and take it by force. After all, you're an adventurer, aren't you? Her golden eyes focused on the ruby-red ones, concentrating solely on those beautiful gems that attracted her so much. Belle recognized her. The recognition of the strongest, of the one sitting at the top of the adventurers. Yes, he gave a broad smile. Her flushed cheeks added more beauty than one might expect. At that moment, the princess ran. Leaving the bar after saying goodbye, he ran under the starry night. His destination, the dungeon, XXX. The girl's back had disappeared as she passed through the exit of the place. Now only the last customers of the night remained. Luck. Did you say something, Belle? No, nothing. Belle had offered his support in a light whisper that was carried away by the faint breeze from inside. When Reveria asked him if he said anything, he gently shook his head and said, my throat hurts, I talk too much. Reveria smiled and let out a light laugh at his comment. Seriously, I was getting worried. You talked more than you would in a month. You're right, I'm tired, I want to sleep. Resting his right cheek on the table, Belle lazily closed his eyelids, making it clear that talking had exhausted him. Reveria looked at him, somewhat amused by his actions, then turned towards the others. Guys, it's time to go. Belle needs to rest. Oh ho, Reveria-sama is worried about her boyfriend. Herald of the End, White Snow. I was just kidding, please spare my life, Reveria-sama. With Loki's final joke, the family paid the bill and left the place. XXX. Morning was rising across the vast, dimmed sky. In a certain abandoned church, Hestia was walking around in circles on her feet. He hasn't returned. It was after 5 a.m. and their only employee, Aizu, had not yet returned home. The first thing that came to his mind was that something might have happened to him in the dungeon, but he could still feel the connection with Aizu through the fauna. Therefore, it is the only possibility. Did he abandon me? It was the most likely thing to happen. They lived in a ruined place. They didn't even have the requirements to be considered a low-ranking family. Expenses were more than income. No. Aizu isn't like that. Hestia shook her head, dismissing that possibility as her pigtails flapped with the movement. If that's really what happened, I'll have to kidnap her. There would be nothing wrong with looking for her and approaching her from behind with a cloth dampened with alcohol, so it was a good plan. No, one moment. Hestia dismissed the idea, cupped her chin with the fingers of her right hand, and narrowed her blue eyes. Now that she thought about it, was it legal to kidnap a mortal? She, a virgin goddess newly arrived in the city, didn't know. How useless I am. He shrugged and gave a bitter smile. Then, ready to grab her tools and look for Aizu, a silhouette entered her field of vision. Golden hair was predominant. It no longer had its usual beautiful shine as it was slightly stained by dust and drops of blood, more about the monsters than about her. Aizu. Recognizing the girl walking slowly but surely towards the church, Hestia ran on her small feet and soon caught up with her. It was just in time as Aizu's battered body was stripped of strength, falling like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Hestia-sama. Narrowing her eyes, the young woman named her. Aizu, why are you like this? Who did this to you? Not knowing whether or not she was being heard, Hestia exclaimed. It wasn't just her beautiful hair that was damaged, but also her arms, legs, and parts of her clothing. Everything was full of cuts. I went to the dungeon. For so long. Whispering as softly as a faint sigh, Aizu reported on his previously unknown whereabouts. She did not react to her goddess's reprimand. Instead, her eyes flashed with a burning flame through her golden pupils, then she transmitted it to him. I promise I will become strong. He conveyed the weight of his will in those few words. Aizu. In the arms of her goddess, Aizu's eyelids fell. The smile on her lips was the only thing that didn't disappear. Chapter 4, Dreams and Nightmares, Killer, Twilight Mansion, headquarters of the Loki family. After leaving the fertility hostess and arriving home, Belle was ready to take a nap in his room. Or that had been his goal. What's wrong, Loki? He was tired. Lately, he had been plunging into the depths of the dungeon very often, and the use of his dimensional movement exhausted him to extreme levels. But Loki had something important to say, possibly. Follow me, let's go to my room. Isn't this another one of your jokes? I might as well chain you up in the yard if it is. How cruel, and no, it's serious. Information about her has surfaced, I understand. There was a short, deathly silence. Loki was not someone who would bring up the subject openly and lightly, especially because Belle emanated an aura that could suffocate even a god. Remembering that fact, the red-haired goddess walked through the mansion's corridors until she reached her chambers. Belle followed her in silence, his expression giving no clue as to what he was thinking. XXX. The next day, abandoned church. The sun was already high in the sky, illuminating the city streets. Hestia, who was sitting with a distressed expression, looked towards the only bed in the small room. He still hasn't woken up. A young woman with golden hair stood there, covered in bandages from head to toe. Not many hours had passed since her only dependent, Aizu, had arrived in a terribly serious condition. Of course, Hestia had administered potions and called her good friend Mayach, who finished healing her. Hestia waited a few more minutes while she thought about the statement Aizu had made to her before falling unconscious. "I promise I will become stronger." Her will and determination were such that it moved the little goddess. Perhaps I should tell her about her magic. It's too soon, but if Aizu wants to become strong as her goddess, what I must do is... I was in a dilemma. On one hand, there was the enchantment Aizu possessed, an innate magic. However, there was also that deceptive ability that resulted from her love for the man named bellcranel. No, I have to do it. Hestia lightly slapped her cheeks. It had been decided. He would tell Aizu about his magic. After all, he didn't want his only dependent to lose her life because of a mistake of his. An example was the Minotaur. Aizu would possibly have one if he had had his magic. But he turned his gaze towards the sleeping young woman. Ganesha's banquet will be tonight, so... The decision had been made. It seems he'll have to keep his head down for a few days. XXX. Her world turned a beautiful white. The emptiness, as beautiful as that hair, expanded and became colored in a matter of seconds. A beautiful blue sky stretched down from above, filling every last part that his golden eyes could see. The ground beneath her feet soon turned a refreshing green color. Herbs, plants, shrubs, and trees sprouted from below, creating a breathtaking landscape. Finally, a line divided the land, forming a crystal-clear stream that traveled constantly. Where am I? Aizu, who was in the middle of the entire landscape, looked around while wondering about his location. He walked for a while. He soaked his hands in the refreshing river, rolled foolishly on the green grass, and lay down on the trunk of a large tree. Under the shade of what appeared to be a chestnut tree, he gazed at the white clouds that moved slowly at the mercy of the wind. It's been a long time and I don't know where I am. Have I been transported to another world? She crossed her legs and closed her eyes, pondering what to do in such a situation. I'm sure this is a dream, but... You're still as silly as ever, Aizu. Hey. Suddenly her hair was being stroked, so soft and delicate that it gave me a feeling of drowsiness. Mother, there was no mistake, such caresses overflowing with affection and such a voice as beautiful as the whisper of the wind. He opened his eyes instantly, looking back and observing with great surprise. Behind her was an adult version of herself, and somehow she was sitting on her lap. Did I get smaller? His height had also decreased to the point where he appeared to be 7 years old. Relax, you're dreaming. Her mother's harmonious voice prevented her from panicking. You've grown so much, but I wanted to see my little Aizu one more time. Isn't that all right, mother? Tears welled up in his eyes and he immediately hugged her. Her small body was surrounded by her mother's arms, bearing her close to her chest and comforting her. Don't cry, your pretty face will be ruined. But I wanted to see you, mother. I've wanted to see you for so long. I've missed you so much, and you too, father. Yes, we also wanted to see you, Aizu. The beautiful woman smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. Little Aizu continued to shed silent tears onto her mother's white dress, then she became confused. What do you mean, mother? She raised her tearful eyes and looked directly at the woman, receiving a smile in response. Come on, it's obvious he's referring to me, isn't it? Little Aizu's world trembled. A deeply soft male voice came from behind. Recognizing that voice, he slowly turned around. Father. Hello, Aizu, an attractive young man of slim build with black hair and blue eyes. He wore light armor, a maroon scarf, and had a long silver sword sheathed at his waist. Father. Little Aizu got up from her mother's lap and ran towards the standing man. When he got close, she jumped up to hug him. XXX. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he didn't really care. He wouldn't complain if this dream lasted for years. So you found your hero, Aizu. Fuji, father, hahaha. Little Aizu's face turned bright red. They had been chatting happily amongst themselves, letting time fly by, smiles, tears, overflowing emotions, a reunion that Aizu had longed for. What's he like? Is he strong? Albert, slow down, look at her, she's redder than a tomato. Come on, Arya, I just want to know what the person who stole our daughter's heart is like. His father, Albert, was stopped by his wife. However, the young man with black hair insisted. Yeah, she stood between them with her father to her right and her mother to her left. The three of them were under the shade of the large chestnut tree. It's very strong. Oh, stronger than me. Yes, much stronger. You didn't even think about it. That hurt. Arya mocked her partner's dejected face, who looked as though he might cry from such humiliation. She also showed some interest in Aizu's hero. Could you tell us about him? He asked. Aizu looked at him for a few seconds, then looked down at his legs and with a slight blush began to tell her story. Her encounter with him saved her from an inevitable death, his reputation and fame, his place as the greatest hero of the current era, the endless rejections and broken hearts. The numerous achievements that categorized him as the strongest, and more importantly, their kindness. He defended me. He spoke up for me despite being weak, and he recognized me as an adventurer. I felt very happy. Both Arya and Albert remained silent, watching their daughter with smiles on their faces. Arya was especially captivated by the beginning of a great love story. Albert, despite being very happy about his daughters falling in love, couldn't help but think, I wish we had been born in the same era. A warrior like bellcranel would undoubtedly have been of help to him in his fight against that draconian monster. Aizu, why yes mother, good luck, now that you found him don't let him get away. Her beautiful golden eyes widened, observing the smile her mother gave her along with those words. Thank you so much mother, she fought back the urge to cry. Then before any of the three could say anything else the place shook. Aizu was puzzled, but the confusion in her mind was dispelled by Albert. It seems you're about to wake up Aizu, what? A sharp pain shot through little Aizu's chest as she looked towards her father. The dream ends here, Arya said. She and Albert stood up, holding hands and standing in front of little Aizu still sitting on the grass. They spoke. We loved seeing you again, Aizu. We loved seeing you again, Aizu. The young woman's body began to grow. She regained her 16-year-old body. Will I ever see them again? Her voice began to tremble. She got up from the grass and took a step towards them, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. Maybe, they both replied. That did not calm Aizu's restless heart. Pursing her lips to avoid sobbing, she took another step towards them. Her body was embraced by Arya and Albert, forming a hug between the three of them. Uwa, I love you so much, father, mother, please visit me again. Her back was caressed by her father's strong hand and her hair caressed by her mother's delicate fingers. We will, said Albert. Be very careful from now on, Aizu, Arya said. Aizu nodded to both of them. Watch me, I'll make you proud. After that, everything faded away. XXX. The sun was currently shining in the sky. It was just before noon, so people were congregating along the main streets. That's why Bell was currently walking through the alleys. I need to clear my mind. Last night he had received some information from Loki which put him in a bad mood. That's why he was heading to the place where he could get some peace and quiet. But that place was closed, hasn't he arrived? That's strange. He stared at the empty bench where Jugamaru-kun's stall should have been. The fact that his source of tranquility was not there caused his bad mood to increase several levels. I'll wait a few minutes. Thinking about that, he took a seat on a nearby bench and gazed at the vast blue sky. Aya bellcranel-sama, please agree to go out with me. And shortly afterwards, a beautiful young elf with blonde hair and jade eyes approached him, bowing and extending a letter. Under the bright sun, he broke another heart. XXX. State of Aiz Wallenstein. LV, 1, Strength I-79 H-153, Stamina I-2079, Dexterity I-98 H-195, Agility H-152 G-240, Magic I-0, Magic. A hidden skill. Unbreakable desire hidden. It accelerates growth. The effects last as long as your feelings don't change. The effects are determined by the strength of your feelings. Suddenly, Hesja's hands stopped. The grace of God that represents the growth of a human, Hesja looked at him with trembling eyes. Aizu had woken up a couple of hours ago and was just now updating her status. Is something wrong, Hesja-sama? Oh no, not really. She shook her head at her clerk's curious question, then after locking her status, she spoke. Aizu, can I tell you your progress verbally? I'm running late for work, it would help me a lot. That's fine, Hesja-sama. I apologize for making you late. Don't worry, don't worry. Hurriedly telling her about the progress she had made in her basic skills, Hesja got ready. What? For Aizu, who is used to seeing her wear her typical one-piece dress, it was strange that she took a more elegant garment and packed it. Are you going to a party, Hesja-sama? He asked. Yes, to a banquet fit for the gods. The goddess slowly explained that she had received an invitation and would take the opportunity to meet with an old friend. So I'm sorry, Aizu, but please don't wait for me for at least 3 days. What I'm going to do will take time. Will it be okay? Of course. Trust me a little more, I'm not that useless. I didn't mean that, Hesja-sama. Haha, I know, I was just kidding. Joking around a bit, Hesja finished packing and quickly ran towards the door, ready to leave. There will be an event in 3 days organized by Ganesha. If I'm not back by then, you should take a break from the dungeon and have some fun. Goodbye, it'll consider it good luck, Hesja-sama. Aizu was left alone in the small room. She remembered it was almost noon and decided she would explore the dungeon for a couple of hours. She also needed to check in with her advisor, Aina. Okay, maximum effort. Putting on his prison clothes, he sheathed his rapier and headed towards the Tower of Babel. XXX. More than 5 minutes had passed and Jugamaru-kun's stall still hadn't arrived. I'd better leave, more women might come. Thinking that he wouldn't be getting any of the Jugamaru-kun from his favorite stall today, Bell got up from the bench. He was more concerned about the statements, since after the young elf girl, 3 others had arrived and done the same. As he began his walk, his first-class senses picked up the sound of wood clanging against the cobblestones of the street. He turned around, knowing what that sound belonged to. A few meters away, a small goddess was pushing a cart with wooden wheels at high speed. He settled on the sidewalk that had previously been empty. So it arrived, thank goodness. The white-haired man's spirits lifted. With a slight smile that stole the hearts of the women passing by, she approached the stall that the little goddess was just finishing setting up. "Good day, Goddess Hestia. Oh, bunny boy, so you'll be my first customer. Will it be the same order?" The goddess Hestia smiled happily after having identified her number one customer. Bell nodded, confirming his request. "It opened late today. Did something happen?" "Oh, well, I had a problem with my only dependent. She arrived badly injured this morning from the dungeon. I had to stay with her until she regained consciousness." "I see, I hope it's okay." They talked amongst themselves while Hestia prepared the numerous potato croquettes. Although she was the one who did most of the talking, Belle gave short replies like "I see" or "I understand." After a few minutes, Hestia delivered Jugamaru-kun's order in a brown bag. "Done, 2 dozen mixed Jugamaru-kun, thank you." Bell received his order and handed over the money, which was 750 volleys, 40 for the good service. "You're welcome, bunny boy. By the way, I might not open Jugamaru-kun's cart for the next 3 days." He was ready to leave, nodding his farewell to the goddess until she mentioned non-working days. That, her body felt an unpleasant chill. "You see, my clerk's fallen in love. I don't know the idiot personally, but he's very strong. That's why I had the brilliant idea of getting him a powerful weapon." Belle nodded, understanding the message. "She wants to catch up, so I decided to give her a little push." "I understand. That's very thoughtful of you, Goddess Hestia. Also, I hope your dependent's feelings are reciprocated." Enough, you flatter me." They both said goodbye after that. Hestia continued selling at her stall and Belle left to gather information about what Loki had told him. XXX. The days flew by. The night before the monster festival, Belle was lying on his bed resting after a fruitless day. Her eyelids trembled rapidly, cold sweat trickled down her face, and her fingers were clenched into fists. "Not again." He spoke in his sleep, uttering words as loud as the faintest sigh. Inside his dream, everything was burning. The raging flames consumed the houses and burned the people who ran in panic. He was running. I was 11 years old. In the dark times when Evolus terrorized the entire city, he kept running. As fast as the wind, as strong as a mountain, and as agile as water moving between your fingers. Many wanted to kill him. They attacked him from all sides and screamed when they were repelled by his sword. Belle kept running and cutting. Her beautiful rubbered eyes trembled for the lives her sword claimed. He had lost count. One day he would simply see everything in red. Countless severed heads haunted him, but Belle kept running. Carrying countless deaths on her small back, she never stopped and kept running. "I'm a killer. I'm nothing more than a tool. I just need to follow orders." "So you're Belle?" Suddenly he arrived at his destination. He had located the target he would have to eliminate that very night. He turned his gaze towards the woman who spoke to him. Silver hair, a beautiful face adorned with 2 jewels, one jade-colored and the other silver. Her body was covered by a black gothic dress with green decorations. "Silence. Come on quickly." She was smiling at him, so warmly and happily. "Use your fists, your sword, your flames, and..." Her eyes of different colors looked at him affectionately, as if she saw in him the figure of another person. "Belle, kill me." The killer did his job. Flames of creation, origin of all. Unleashing hell on earth, he killed the woman who looked at him with great love. 3 days later, he eliminated the adventurer named Gluttony. Don't have any longings or desires. Fail at this and she would die. Anything for her. I would create a world where that girl could be happy. I could wake up in the mornings and observe a vast and peaceful blue sky. In order to create that world, I would first destroy the current one. He continued killing. When she managed to create a world of peace, she disappeared. XXX. The scenario changed. The burning houses and the desperate cries of the people faded away. A pleasant and peaceful morning greeted the city. Aurario had been reborn and Bell the murderer had died. Good morning, Bell Oniachin. He was considered a hero, the human who had ended the Dark Age and eliminated the city's 2 greatest villains. Evolus disappeared from the map thanks to the lives his sword took. Here say, moo, it's not fair, eat it all. She could go for a run through the streets lit by the bright sun without worrying about being kidnapped or murdered. She could smile with great warmth and happiness. Bell Oniachin, I love you. His hugs were warm, full of energy. They strolled through the streets, visited the lakes on the 18th floor, and ate Jugamaru-kun together. When Bell realized that his goal had been achieved, he sighed. Then, for the first time since taking on the role of assassin, I smile. He smiled and lived happily with her. And when he let his guard down, she became corrupt. Bell Oniachin, please die for me, hiya. The assassin he had renounced returned, but this time he couldn't do his job. As a result, she did it for him and then escaped. The nightmare is over. XXX. He stood up suddenly. His throat burned as he roared desperately. Her chest rose and fell. Ha. Her eyes opened in shock as her body trembled with cold sweat. He held his head with both hands, exerting force to eliminate the pain that tormented him. Don't remember them, forget them. The chills intensified and his breathing became erratic. Forget it, forget it, forget it, forget it. She held her white hair and pulled at it, trying to banish the memories through pain. Don't remember them, but it didn't work. The image of that silver-haired woman came to his mind. His memories were haunted by the smile of that girl. I'm not a murderer anymore, remember them. Countless corpses rose above a lake of blood, floating lifeless. Belle's eyes filled with tears. He was desperate and about to explode. Flames of creation, origin of all. His subconscious mind remembered that time, and his killer instincts forced him to activate his most powerful magic. With crimson fingers, it grasps and devours everything that comes its way. At this rate, the city was in danger of becoming hell incarnate. As his pupils dilated to the point of almost disappearing, Belle continued to sing, burning the earth and the skies in a firestorm. With trembling fingers and a body bathed in cold sweat, Belle shed tears tainted by despair. Bright flame dancing in the darkness. Bam! The door to his room was opened. Belle, stop, hellfire that reduces everything to ashes. Reveria ran towards him. He approached close enough and held her arms, pulling them away so that she would let go of her hair. She immediately hugged him, comforting him against her chest. Everything's fine now, there's no one left to kill Belle. Reveria felt the boy's tears dampening her pajamas, but she didn't pay any attention to it and tightened her grip on his arms. She stroked his hair and whispered soft words that calmed him. Please calm down, you don't need to do that ever again. Reveria. Yes, it's me, nothing bad will happen, control your breathing and avoid a will-o-the-wisp. Reveria's heartbeat traveled through her chest and reached Belle's ears, helping him to regain control. They remained in the same position for a while. Reveria refused to leave him alone after what had happened, so she waited until he went back to sleep. I wouldn't be at peace until that happened. Reveria. Yes, Belle, I must kill her. It's my responsibility, it was my fault, that's why I must kill her. Under the pale moonlight streaming through the window, Reveria heard Belle's desperate whispers. XXX. Two palms slammed on Finn's desk where the patron deity was seated. What were you thinking, Loki? You know very well that Belle goes berserk when he remembers her. Reveria was seething with anger. Her jade-colored eyes glared at the goddess standing before her. Calm down, Reveria, Loki must have had a reason. Finn, who was on one of the sofas, tried to calm Reveria's anger, however it didn't work. Calm down, you're asking me to calm down, Finn. What would have happened if I hadn't had the connection between my room and Belle's? Half the city would have burned to ashes. There was silence after his outburst. Currently, only Gareth, Finn, Loki, and Reveria were in an emergency meeting. 30 minutes had passed since Belle finally fell asleep, at which point Reveria, after putting him to bed, called the meeting. Reveria is right, the boy, however strong he may be in power or status, is emotionally very fragile when she brings up the subject. Gareth agreed with Reveria, turning his gaze towards the silent Loki. The goddess had not uttered a single word since the meeting began. Watched by her three most senior executives, Loki finally made a move. Narrowing his eyes and putting on a completely serious expression, he declared, "It was Belle's request, I'm just fulfilling my employee's wishes. Even if that same desire ends up hurting him." Reveria countered, "You don't understand, Reveria, you're the closest to Belle, but you haven't been able to grasp it. Belle will not be able to live in peace until he kills her." There was no lie when he declared that 4 years ago. His words left an awkward silence. Reveria's face contorted into a grimace, his eyebrows furrowing as he took a seat. "What can I do to help you to be as strong as him?" Chapter 5, Monster Philia, HOMEWRECKNGELF. 3 days before Belle had his nightmare and 3 days before the monster fair. Hey, how long are you going to be there, whoever it takes? In Hephaestus' office, a certain goddess lowly refused to leave until her demands were met. For better or for worse, Hephaestus was already irritated. "Staying here won't change my mind, and besides, what are you doing?" She was referring to the position of her friend, who was curled up on the floor with her palms facing forward. "It's called doja, it's the ultimate technique for when you want to ask for something or apologize. Take taught it to me, that idiot." Hephaestus had lost count of the number of times Hestia had asked him for favors. In a funny way, she had become quite the freeloader. That is until he removed her from her headquarters and sent her to live under a church. Since then, he learned that she had acquired a dependent. "What are your motives, Hestia? Will you listen to me? If I don't do it, you'll be harassing me with that doja for the rest of my life, right? Yeah, then I'll listen to you." Forced by obsessive harassment, Hephaestus decided to listen to what Hestia had to say. Depending on whether his motives were noble or not, he would forge that weapon. XXX. Current events the day of the monster fair. After getting up, Belle was summoned to Finn's office. As he walked through the hallways, he remembered being rocked to sleep by Reveria again. I'll have to apologize to her, he thought. It didn't take him long to reach his destination. Turning around a couple of times and continuing straight ahead, he was in front of the door in a couple of minutes. "Finn, come in." He only needed to mention his name to get permission to enter. Opening the doors 2 at a time, he observed those who were in the office of the captain of the family. Reveria, Gareth, Loki, and Finn. "Good morning. Good morning, Belle." He made sure to greet everyone, and of those, the only one who responded with words was Reveria. The others simply nodded. Then after walking over to the armchair where Reveria was and taking a seat, he stared at Finn, waiting for the reason why he had been summoned. Reveria told us about last night's incident. How are you feeling? Finn asked bluntly, observing him from his desk with utmost caution. Belle knew she was trying to diagnose his emotional state, which made him sigh and reply, "Better, I see. Do you know what I think?" "No." Loki had to hold back his laughter so as not to ruin the serious atmosphere. However, Finn himself let out an ironic smile. At least he was glad that Belle couldn't read minds. He had discovered something he couldn't do. "You should put all this aside about her. It's not good for you. She hasn't been seen in many years and little is known about her whereabouts." Belle did not respond. Instead, he looked at everyone else in the room. Gareth looked at him as if to say, Finn is right. Loki himself seemed to be saying, you choose. And Reveria, she looked at him with genuine concern as if to say, please don't hurt yourself anymore. Of course, none of them interfered with the decision he made. I refuse, it's my responsibility. He could clearly hear everyone's worried sighs, especially Reveria, who was by his side. I see, that's a shame, Belle. Your body is in the present, but it seems your mind is stuck in the past. What are you trying to say? We are no longer in the dark times thanks to you. It's ironic that the one who ended that era remains a slave to the past. The atmosphere in the place grew heavy, Finn himself acknowledged. Right now he was certain that his title, Braver, was no mere decoration. Under Belle's harsh gaze, she let out a difficult sigh and added, that's what I think too. Anyway, I'd like to ask you something else. What is it? The atmosphere calmed down, which caused Reveria to relax her tense face and Gareth to loosen his body. As always, they weren't used to Finn's dangerous moves as he risked touching a nerve with Belle. Are you still refusing to give information about the top floor of the dungeon? Yeah. The conversation was shorter than usual, for the same reason. Yeah, those present had lost count of how many times the topic had been discussed. Finn would ask and Belle would refuse. His reason was the same as always. He would talk until someone else came along who could get to that apartment on their own. Sighing in defeat, Finn was about to tell her that it was over, but Belle beat him to the punch this time. Unless. Everyone's eyebrows rose in surprise and confusion. Belle had never included a possible but, unless I can train you and the others to level up, past, really, that's a shame. It was a waste to refuse such an offer as all the adventurers in the city would pay a fortune to receive a single training session from the sword god. However, reality was very different from expectations. Gwahahaha. Gareth burst out laughing at Finn's quick denial. Dude, you traumatized him last time, myself included. What? Reveria smiled slightly as she saw Belle tilt his head, confused by the dwarf's words. That means your training is very difficult, the high elf explained. Difficult, but they did improve a lot the last time I trained them, Belle countered, at the cost of being hospitalized for 2 weeks. Finn felt a chill when Reveria mentioned her stay at Diane Sex Hospital. The only good thing about that bitter memory was that Gareth, Beta, Tiona, and Tyone kept him company as they were in the same vegetative state. In the Loki family, everyone refused to take Belle's Spartan training, where the boy didn't know the word hold back. Well, that's all. Belle, you can go, Finn said, calming his nerves. Understood, excuse me. Belle got up from the sofa he shared with Reveria and started to leave, but remembered he had an apology to offer. Reveria. What's up, Belle? Yesterday you had to hug me to your chest to calm me down. Sorry for the trouble. PFFWD, don't worry, I did it to help you. A surprise attack that was not expected. The beautiful elf was overcome with a blush that was difficult to hide, causing Loki and the others to smile amusedly. I see, thank you then, you're welcome. Belle ignored everything and thanked everyone, then left the office. When the place was empty, the others attacked the elf with their jokes. Fufu, Reveria-sama, you should cool your face. Jiwaha, the kid is as dense as ever. Now I wonder if Bete would call you tomato if he were here. Loki, Gareth, and Finn all mocked him without fail. Herald of the End, White Snow. I was just kidding. The day had a hectic and frozen start for the executives of the Loki family. XXX. The monster's agonizing shriek was followed by ashes and the sound of a magic stone falling to the ground. Okay, that was the last one. Aizu was on his morning exploration in the dungeon and had just exterminated a group of goblins. With her trusty rapier provided by the guild, she had advanced to the 3rd floor with the permission of her advisor, Aina. I need to hurry or I'll miss the festival. Maybe I'll be able to see him. As she collected the monster stones, her cheeks flushed. The only reason she had decided to attend such an event was for the small chance of meeting her white longing. His heart rate increased. Wake up, Aizu, I can't lose focus in the dungeon. But she regained her composure by patting her cheeks, telling herself that it was not the time to be distracted. He finished collecting the magic stones and continued his exploration. Just a couple more hours, I need to freshen up before attending the festival. If I happen to run into Kranelson, I don't want to smell bad. She was sure her heart couldn't bear Belle saying you suck. She really could die right then and there. Having decided that, he continued for a while longer before going up to the surface and exchanging his earnings at the guild. After checking in with Aina, he headed to the abandoned church to take a bath. XXX. At midday, city streets. The young woman wore a white dress with floral embellishments and purple trim. Will I be able to find Season? The white dress swayed slightly in the wind, the floral embellishment enhancing its beauty. Drawing many glances as she walked, Aizu wondered about her friend's whereabouts. She had bathed and dressed up to attend the event where they would tame monsters, but as she passed in front of the Lady of Abundance, the catman Anya asked her for a favor. But forgetting your wallet, Season can be very absent-minded, huh? She had accepted the assignment, but Aizu's real goal was to meet Belle. If she happened to run into Sir in the process, that would be great for her. On the other hand, the streets are very lively. It's my first time at this fair, but is it always this lively? Aizu looked around. There were food and candy stalls, children running and playing together, and adults chatting happily. There also seemed to be many foreigners present, which made it clear that Monsterphilia was a very attractive event. Oh, a crepe stand. Her eyes shone with a beautiful gold when she saw a candy stand. She didn't hesitate to run through the crowd and head out to buy a strawberry ice cream with lots of cream. After all, Aizu was a lover of sweets. Asen, a strawberry crepe with extra cream. XXX. 3 people were entering a premises near the stadium where the monster taming would take place. A human, a high elf, and a goddess. Loki, what did we come here for? Calm down, Belton, I have to meet with someone annoying. But with you here, things will be easier. You don't say. Reveria, in exchange for Belle, was the one who understood what was meant by ease in Belle's presence. After the morning meeting, Loki had forced them to act as his swordkeepers. Reveria agreed after Loki insisted to the point of being irritating, and Belle was blackmailed with Jugamaru-kun. It's as you think, Reveria, Loki confirmed the elf's suspicions. That nymphomaniac requested a meeting. That's why you brought Belle, huh? I kind of feel bad for the goddess Freya. Reveria sighed. Freya, is she the one you met with, Loki? The deceitful goddess nodded at Belle's words, then quickened her pace towards the second floor of the place. Belle and Reveria followed closely behind. They noticed the atmosphere was somewhat strange, to say the least. The customers had vacant stares and blushes on their cheeks. It was an expected effect if that goddess was present in the place. When they reached a table next to the window overlooking the streets, they noticed the presence of a woman. She was covered from head to toe in a dark purple robe, but strands of her beautiful silver hair were visible. Did I keep you waiting, Freya? Loki, no, I didn't wait too long, Belle. Ha, he fell. Loki smiled victoriously when Freya's refined and arrogant attitude took a 180-degree turn upon seeing Belle. Her cheeks flushed a bright red from behind her hood. Belle heard his name and waved. Freya, it's been a while, I'm glad to see you're okay. The boy's usual smile pierced the goddess's heart from side to side, making her let out a love-struck sigh. Yes, you're still so handsome, Roman too didn't mean that. Ooh, I'm glad you're okay. Steam began to rise through the robe that covered her head. The goddess became a bundle of nerves. She hadn't even noticed Reveria, who was looking at her with blank eyes and a compassionate smile. The beautiful elf felt bad for the goddess of beauty, who was now the goddess of blushes. I knew bringing Belton was the best option. Well, let's get down to business and tell me what you wanted to talk about. Loki scoffed, mocking Freya's attitude. When she took her seat in front of the goddess and her children, Belle and Reveria, who stood behind her, she asked for the information. About that. Freya's gaze never left Belle, who continued to look at her with a smile on his lips. How wonderful it would be to kiss those soft, beautiful lips. She thought, I didn't know, but I wanted to know. No, I longed to know. No, I yearned to know. For Freya, who knew it was impossible, it was a misfortune. Hey, I'm talking to you. Stop leering at Belton. Don't ask me for impossible things. The topic shifted to something completely different. Loki was trying to get Freya's attention, but Freya wouldn't let go of Belle. Bringing the white-haired boy had been a double-edged sword. Ah, damn it, fine. Reveria, take Belton away from here. Go check out the stalls or get some crepes. Are you sure, Loki? Yes, otherwise this nymphomaniac won't stop seeing him that way. Loki pointed at Freya, who seemed to have hearts in her silver eyes as she stared intently at Belle. Okay, Reveria agreed. Belle, let's go for a walk. I can buy you some Jugamaru-kun. You have my attention. Convincing the boy was the easiest thing of the day, which made Reveria smile slightly. As they walked towards the stairs to go down to the first floor, Loki yelled at them. You can consider this a date, Mama Reveria. No need to thank me. Shut up, replied the elf. Loki caught a glimpse of the bright red in Reveria's ears before she disappeared up the stairs with Belle. When he assumed they were completely alone and now had Freya's attention, Loki spoke. So, who's the unlucky one this time? You mean lucky, Loki, huh? Don't tell me Belton's rejection made you switch sides. Haha, it's hilarious. The goddesses continued their conversation, constantly interrupted by the trickster's jokes and the beauty's sepulchral silences. But in the end, Freya left before giving a name, saying that she was in a bit of a hurry. XXX. It had been a while since she bought that strawberry crepe with extra cream, and during that same time Aizu had met her goddess. Currently, both were buying a pair of Jugamaru-kun at a street stall. Heshia-sama, where have you been these past 3 days? And what is that box strapped to your back? I was with a friend, and about the box, Fufu, it's a surprise, Aizu. They both walked to a bench after receiving their potato croquettes, took a seat, and began a conversation. Although the answers from his goddess were anything but answers. I see. Aizu stopped insisting, taking a small bite of his Jugamaru-kun and observing his surroundings. Somehow the hustle and bustle in the streets was pleasant. What? Among the many people walking through the streets, Aizu caught sight of a beautiful head of white hair. It's him. Just as he had planned, he met his hero. Her heart began to pound and she could feel her cheeks starting to burn. Then, just as she was about to get up and try to greet him, she saw her. A beautiful head of jade-colored hair accompanied the white hair, which disconcerted her. Her legs gave way, preventing her from getting up from the bench. She could only watch. When the people dispersed and allowed him to see, his eyes widened at the scene. bellcranel walking next to Reveria Eljas Alf. His heart was attacked by a sharp pain. No, wait, they're surely together on a mission or assignment from their family. Yes, that must be it. Such hope was shattered when they both approached Jugamaru-kun's stall where Hestia and she had bought theirs. She looks happy. The smile on Reveria's delicate lips said it all. The high elf, whose beauty rivaled that of goddesses, was very happy beside Belle. This caused Aizu to feel unwell in her stomach and even developed a bad taste in her mouth. I'm jealous. That was a new feeling. Falling in love involved experiencing jealousy, so thinking that love was all rosy was wrong. There were dark, gray, and opaque colors. Those same colors painted scenes like the one we see now. A young woman inexperienced in matters of love and jealousy. Aizu, is something wrong? You only took a bite of your Jugamaru-kun. If you want I can eat it for you. Apparently his goddess had noticed his abnormal state. No, it's nothing. She wanted to tell him that right now the person she longed for was next to a beautiful woman, but the words wouldn't come out of her throat. He had lost his nerve. He felt inferior to the refined and noble beauty of that elf. Upon recognizing her feelings, a dry, painful smile formed on her lips. Hestia-sama, can love be so cruel, XXX. What? Belle felt he was being watched, but not in a hostile way. The gaze upon him lasted only a few seconds, but it felt somehow lonely. Belle, how many Jugamaru-kun do you want? Don't worry, it's on me. His attention was stolen by Reveria's voice and his tempting offer. 24, please. A bead of nervous sweat appeared on Reveria's forehead, her lips forming a nervous smile at the sight of a chibai Belle asking for 24 Jugamaru-kun. This is nice, Reveria thought. Maybe I should thank that idiot Loki. No, it wasn't necessary. XXX. The footsteps echoed through the cold, dark place. There were guards lying unconscious on the cold concrete floor. Their cheeks showed signs of enchantment. Fufu, which one will be suitable for this test? Freya, having finished her meeting with Loki and regained her queenly composure, walked in front of the numerous cells of the place. I was in the warehouse where the monsters were waiting to be taken to the stadium arena and tamed. Taking a quick look at each monster, he paused at the silverback. A monkey-like monster covered in white fur with silver fur across the center of its chest. It will be you, please don't break my expectations. Her lips formed a smile. Making his silver eyes sparkle like the most beautiful gems, the monster was enchanted. Make it shine brighter, okay? After giving the directions for the objective to follow, Freya released the monster. The others were also released to cause panic in the place, but they had the absolute rule not to kill any civilians. XXX. Chaos ensued instantly. Monsters, help, run for your lives, we're going to die, every man for himself. Like a tornado, the desperate screams swirled and caused an explosion of panic throughout the place. The streets were filled with terror. What is that thing, especially for a young woman with golden hair and eyes? In front of her stood a monster 2 meters tall with white fur and the appearance of a monkey. There were large chains attached to his arms. Aizu, we must run, move, crash. It was thanks to his goddess that he managed to react in time and get out of range of the blow, rolling to the right. Hestia-sama, here. Now that she was sane once again, she understood her priority, to keep her goddess safe. The little deity was jumping around and raising her arms, trying to reveal her location to Aizu. Hestia-sama, please forgive my boldness. Not caring at all about the deity position her goddess held, she took her in a bridal style and began to run with all her might. The princess and the goddess were immediately pursued. Turning through the streets, leaping across rooftops, and running through interiors, all was followed by destruction caused by his pursuer. XXX. Reveria didn't know the reason or the identity of the possible cause of all the chaos in the streets, but his actions were worthy of a first-class student. Helping to evacuate civilians, healing the wounded, and protecting them in case a monster approached. Belle, I'll take care of it. An instant later, a blade of wind sliced a frog shooter in two, reducing it to ashes. Reveria, use your area magic and heal all the civilians. Don't worry, I'll be done soon. Understood. As if he were someone else, Belle's face lost all signs of emotion and he cut through all the monsters in his range. Once again, a wind blade cut 3 monsters in half. With his sword in hand, the sword god disappeared. Screams and shrieks of monsters in the distance were heard by Reveria and the others. Even in the places where Belle arrived, the panic dissipated, with everyone placing their trust in the hero of the current era. Belle continued eliminating all the monsters, however, he stopped his actions when he found the last one. She is Aiz Wallenstein. A girl was fighting a silverback, XXX. After her tactical retreat, Aizu was forced to act as bait to bring her goddess to safety. I told you to escape, Hestia-sama. However, the little girl with adult-like attributes paid no attention to him whatsoever. Okay, calm down, Aizu. I have a plan. Your plan is to make us both die. They were currently in hiding, but their time was limited. Somehow the monster always managed to find them, so they probably had a couple of seconds, at most a minute. No, that's not it. You'll defeat that gorilla, Aizu, huh? The blood drained from the girl's face as she stared in disbelief at her goddess. Me, impossible. I only started as an adventurer 2 weeks ago. Fighting that monster is impossible. It's not impossible. I'll update your status right here. With your high stats, I'm sure you'll be able to defeat that little monkey. Do you know it's 4 times your size? Besides, didn't you see my previous attack? My precious rapier, a gift from the guild, shattered into 1,000 pieces. She seemed completely dejected. And Hestia didn't know if it was because of the monster that was chasing them or simply because of her weapon that she would have to buy later. But he put that aside and, shaking off the unnecessary thoughts, he turned to his daughter. You just need a stronger weapon, right? Huh? Hestia smiled at her daughter's incredulous face, then took the long box strapped to her small back. This. He extended the gift towards Aizu. With this you can defeat that monster. When Aizu opened the box and took out its contents, her face was filled with surprise and shock. What was there was a golden rapier inside its sheath. Aizu was stunned. Drawing the rapier from its sheath, he was surprised that everything, even the sheath, was a beautiful golden color, just like her eyes and hair. It was a straight weapon, dyed entirely a golden color, and it had engravings that I could understand along the blade. She's beautiful. It seemed like the embodiment of his soul. As she held it in her hand, the blade gleamed. The engravings in the language of the gods flashed a beautiful white and the rest of the blade a lovely gold. The weapon had recognized her as its master. Aizu, have you already forgotten your objective? Where is that reckless girl who plunged into the depths of the dungeon just to have an encounter with your hero? Hestia-sama. Now she was ashamed. Hestia smiled, deciding to use her final card. Your target, that Loki boy. I'm sure he'll be surprised when he hears rumors of you defeating that monster. What? Believe me, he might even congratulate you and take an interest in you. Isn't that a good reason to kick that monster's ass? Yes, it is. Great. So what's your decision, Aizu? I will defeat him. Her back began to burn, corresponding to her desires and feelings. XXX. So that's how it all ended. He was fighting the monster one and on without flinching or retreating, only moving forward. His feelings, his courage, his will, his longing, all burned fiercely in a golden flame. His body felt lighter and stronger. Now with his new weapon, he could cut through the fur that his rapier had previously destroyed. I will defeat him here and now. Using agile footwork, Aizu moved out of attack range, slipping into the monster's defense and making a large cut in the back of one of its legs. Inasen said that to defeat large monsters you should attack their legs. She was grateful that her advisor was so strict in her dungeon lessons, covering both monster species and tactics for defeating them. Jie. The white ape let out a roar of anger, annoyed by the pain caused to what he considered a simple and weak prey. Aizu didn't even flinch and made another deep cut in the remaining leg, causing the monster to fall to its knees. All that remained was to deliver the final blow, the magic stone. Acting before the monster could get up, Aizu ran like the wind and leaped high, landing on the gorilla's back. He planted the sole of his shoe on the fur, crushing his enemy further against the ground, then raised his rapier towards the heavens. Gorilla, you lose. He instantly lowered it and plunged it into his back, piercing through the fur, the skin, and even reaching the magic stone. GAA. Crack. After a cracking sound, the base where it stood disappeared into ashes. Aizu's victorious smile made her look more beautiful than usual, and as she sheathed her rapier and listened to the applause of the crowd hidden in their homes, she raised her gaze. I felt like I was being watched while I was fighting. She hadn't paid much attention since her priority was to survive the previous battle. But now that she had plenty of time, she set out to find the source of that look. He looked around over the crowd gathered around him, then. Aiz that C. Kranelson, he watched my fight from the beginning, Owawawa. There was no mistake with his vision. Right now, the one looking at him from afar was bellcranel himself. Aizu's cheeks turned a deep crimson red and her golden eyes filled with embarrassment. Bell seemed to notice he'd been spotted, then with a slight movement of his lips and a faint smile, he said goodbye. As if he had never been there, the boy disappeared. Oblivious to the cheers and the embrace her goddess was giving her, Aizu remained frozen in place while Belle's words flooded her mind. Good job. What was this feeling of warmth and self-sufficiency that was attacking her? Aizu didn't know, but it was certainly pleasant. Can love be so wonderfully cruel? Aizu didn't have a fixed answer to that, but she knew what she had to do, a goal to strive for. I'll catch you, I swear.
XXX.
When Belle witnessed the girl's victory against a monster that should have been out of her league, he had a faint idea. Could it be that she? I wasn't sure, but if that was the case, it would have been worth waiting so many years. The young woman with golden hair noticed it, and she seemed to be ill because she was as red as a tomato. He fought even when he was in bad shape. That's admirable. Bellcranel was amazed by such boldness and dedication in the girl, so he couldn't help but praise her. Good job. With a weak murmur, he congratulated her. Belle smiled slightly at her, waving goodbye to the girl who was staring at him. His highly developed hearing had picked up signs of a fight in the distance, so he quickly disappeared from the scene. In less than a second, he reached his destination. It almost seemed to have supersonic speed. Then, observing the battlefield, what came into his field of vision were his comrades fighting a plant monster. That is. Rage filled his body, and with a single slash of his sword, he destroyed everything. Disappear. The speed at which the blade traveled could not be perceived by a normal person, and as the cutting wind tore his enemy to pieces, Belle noticed his outburst. I did it again. He reprimanded himself, then sheathed his sword and walked towards his companions. Are you okay? He asked. Facing him were Tione, Tiona, and Lefia. I could have killed him myself. Thank you so much, Belle. That thing was extremely hard. B. Belson, what was that a moment ago? You were so far away, but you still managed to cut the monster. Leaving aside Tione and Tiona's comment, Belle looked at Lefia, who seemed to have suffered a couple of blows. How do I explain it? Belle was a bit dim-witted when it came to giving a good explanation of his technique. It's simply brute force, Lefia. Belle swings his sword at unimaginable speeds, creating a blade of wind that slices through space as he pleases. Our Reveria-sama, you could call it space cut. Luckily for him, Reveria had arrived right after him. Chapter 6, Your Other Half. Aizu, all for the sake of the white yearning. Her eyelids trembled slightly for a couple of seconds before opening completely. Aiz Wallenstein had woken up in a room she was very familiar with. The worn wooden ceiling, decorated with cobwebs, acted as a tranquilizer for her newly awakened self. Ah, home sweet home. She felt relieved. She had no idea how long she had been asleep, but simply waking up at her family's headquarters freed her from worries. It would not be at all reassuring to open her eyes to find an unfamiliar scene to her thoughts, as she barely knew the city. However, I'm very happy to be home, but Aizu was soon overcome by memories of her battle, one in which she had defeated a monster stronger than herself. He recalled the sword dance he used with his new rapier, whose whereabouts he had no idea about, as well as he recalled the praise of his longing. But Aizu kept observing the worn-out, obsolete wooden roof. Was it even safe? That thing called a roof wouldn't fall on her, right? Sometimes poverty overwhelmed her. On the other hand, everything hurts. Aizu was suffering the consequences of his victory, one that had cost him dearly, however strange that might be. My legs, my arms, my neck, my back. What am I 99 years old? She continued to complain mentally. She would never accept it in front of people who influenced her, like Bellcranel, especially him, but Aizu was a young woman who hated pain. She still had nightmares about the beating she had received from a couple of baby goblins when she was just a child. If it hadn't been for her grandparents, Aizu was sure she would have died that very day. That's why she genuinely hated pain. If only I had enough money to buy a suit of armor, god of fortune, please let me find a bag full of volleys lying in the street. Aizu sometimes tended to over-exaggerate things. The need for armor was a given, as the breastplate provided by the guild barely alleviated the excruciating pain. However, even though she accepted it herself, she repeatedly prayed for things without offering the slightest effort on her part. If only I were level 6, everything would be easier, or to have magic that appeared out of nowhere. Yes, that would make things so much easier. I want to have powerful magic. Aizu considered the possibilities. God of magic, give me super strong magic, please. And he came to the conclusion that praying for good magic was the shortest and safest way to have it. After a few minutes of being immersed in a state of excitement, where her golden eyes shone with innocent sweetness and her cheeks were painted with a lovely pink tint, Aizu slept for a couple more hours. XXX. I have a new magic. By the time she woke up, Aizu couldn't believe it. Her prayers had been heard and answered by the god of magic, and she could not find the right offering to thank him. What could be offered to the god of magic? Only magic came to mind, but that wasn't an option. I'm sorry, but I won't give it to you. You must understand, Magic Kamisama, I can't give a gift. Therefore, she would make sure to find the right offering in due time. I could even give him the second spell he obtained if that happened. There was no limit to the possibilities. Hey Aizu, is everything alright? Wake up. Oh Heshia-sama, were you here? Guess who just updated your status and told you about your new magic? Ah sorry. It was midday and things were already starting to get hectic. After waking up, Aizu brushed his teeth and ate half of a Jugamaru-kun, leaving the other half for his afternoon meal. These were difficult times and he understood very well that he had to adapt, at least until he could venture deeper into the dungeon. All it would take is obtaining a little more excelia, practicing his fighting style and saving up enough money for a respectable armor. It was essential that it largely cushioned the pain. Then I'm off. I must use my new magic as soon as possible, otherwise I'll go crazy. See you tonight, Hestia-sama. Stay right there. Aizu's run was stopped by one of Hestia's small hands who had grabbed her excited dependent by the collar of her shirt. Aizu, looking over his shoulder with square, blank eyes, asked, "What's wrong, Hestia-sama? You are forbidden from going to the dungeon today." Aizu was having trouble controlling her impulses to squeeze her goddess's nose and escape while confusion and surprise distracted her. What should I do? She really wanted to go to the dungeon and use her new magic, however, it wouldn't look good to poke both of Hestia's eyes and run away. What should he do? Aizu thought hard for a couple of seconds. His reaction remained expressionless. Until.
Because.
Her face went from incredulous to tearful, and between tears she asked the origin of such divine punishment that she was receiving. Throwing a tantrum was her only option. Hestia, looking into the scolded puppy-dog eyes of her attendant, sighed long and deeply. Listen, Aizu, I need your help at work today. I've come up with a new strategy to sell everything in a very short time. I'm already running late, so I'll explain everything on the way. I don't want to. I want to go to jail. Don't be selfish, Aizu. Just this once, help your poor goddess. Believe me, I wish I could, but I don't want to. I can't lie to myself, Hestia-sama. How direct. In the end, the streets witnessed Hestia carrying a gagged Aizu on top of Jugamaru-kun's cart.
XXX.
Even Aizu herself was shocked by the marketing strategy Hestia had devised. She, wearing a rare Jugamaru-kun outfit, stared blankly at the long line of people waiting their turn to buy. On the other hand, there was Hestia, who prepared Jugamaru-kun with almost divine skill, doing everything possible to serve all the customers she had left. One point Aizu wanted to emphasize was obviously that they were all men. I feel betrayed and used, she thought. He didn't like having to shake hands and smile at every male customer who bought a Jugamaru-kun, but there was little he could do to escape it. It was her duty as a shop assistant to help her patron deity, even if that patron deity used her as a visual attraction to increase sales. I'm being exploited at work, and they don't even pay. There were complaints. She didn't have a personality like the elves, but she wasn't happy about shaking hands every 10 seconds either. Especially if those hands belonged to men who sometimes looked at her with unpleasant and perverted faces. Next time I'd better prepare the Jugamaru-kun. Hestia-sama could very well take my part in whatever this costume is. However, she would be lying to herself if she denied not wanting to shake hands with bellcranel, her white crush. Even in their fanciful dreams, they already had a happy life with 10 children. Little by little, Aizu, Grandpa said I could very well chain him to me with a son, so there's no problem. One thing to make clear is that Aizu did not know about the process of procreating children. And neither the pain that came with having them, something she wouldn't like in the slightest. XXX. Deep floors, agonizing screams echoed through the dungeon walls. To say that the current scene was a battle was a huge understatement and unfair to the monsters who were being sliced up without even noticing. With a simple flick of his sword, Bell sent dimensional slashes at his targets, splitting them in two. The indifference in their eyes remained even as the monsters turned to ash. He was only thinking about one thing: I'm hungry. Yesterday had been a bad day for him, having seen the nasty plant beasts at the freak show. That's why he had ventured down to the lower floors to pass the time. However, his displeasure at that moment was so great that he had forgotten to bring rations. I'd kill for a couple of Jugamaru-kuns, she thought sadly. He needed to return to the surface, but no matter how much he wanted to hurry, he had already spent a large part of his magical power on dimensional movement to get out of the last floor of the dungeon. Therefore, according to his calculations, he would reach the surface after midnight. Ingvild. The young hero with distant eyes wandered through the dungeon floors while thinking about that young woman from his past. XXX. The night was at its peak. After being brutally exploited, Aizu lay face up on the old sofa under the abandoned church. It was around 11:00 p.m., and the only reason he hadn't slipped away into the dungeon was Hestia. Her goddess Loli, blessed with great attributes, would arrive from her second job at approximately 11:30 p.m., so it was a requirement that she be there to receive her. After all, she had been forbidden from going to the dungeon that day. Aizu knew things wouldn't go well for her if Hestia arrived and she wasn't there. Patience has never been one of my strong points. However, Aizu was already shedding tears of blood. There were countless times when he very nearly succumbed to temptation and headed for the dungeon, all to finally try out his new magic. It was in moments like these that Aizu remembered one of his grandfather's many pieces of advice. She remembered, the best way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. He also remembered the scene where seconds later his grandmother Hera broke a broom over his grandfather's head. She never understood why her grandmother got so angry when her grandfather said such words. Ah, I want to see it. But his thoughts went off the rails. All of her energy was focused on that young man she hadn't seen a day ago. I want to talk to him. Aizu was well aware that the boy wasn't known for being a good conversationalist. In fact, he was quite the opposite. The way he looked at someone in complete silence was often intimidating. I want to know more about him. But it was the only way. I wouldn't know about his tastes if I didn't talk to him. I wouldn't know about his past if I didn't talk to him. I wouldn't enjoy hearing about his plans for the future if I didn't talk to him. It all came down to talking to him. Why do I feel so happy? My chest is pounding too fast. Aizu was in love. She was a novice when it came to matters of love. Having that person on your mind, wanting nothing more than to talk to that person, not wanting to see anyone else but that person. It was the good side of the feeling called love, the side that for the moment was the only one Aizu knew. I'm here. Aizu, have you had dinner yet? By the time Hestia arrived and pulled her out of her fantasies, Aizu had a wide, cheek-to-cheek smile on her face. His chance to slip away to the dungeon was getting closer. He just had to be patient and wait for Hestia to drift downstream like a log. Yes, I ate a whole Jugamaru-kun, Hestia-sama. Oh, you seem to be enjoying life. Well, I'll treat myself to a whole one too. One thing Aizu needed to consider was getting out of his worrying financial situation. He couldn't continue like this. Otherwise, he was very likely to become ill and suffer financially. She began to make her sofa while she thought about it, the way to overcome the poverty that was currently suffocating her. He couldn't stop thinking about it even as the crunching sound of a Jugamaru-kun being massacred by Hestia's teeth echoed through the small room. The only way is to go down more floors in the dungeon, he thought. One of her wishes had already been granted by the god of magic, so she really didn't expect the god of fortune to bless her with the bag full of volleys lying in the street. She didn't consider herself that lucky, and she wasn't so conceited as to demand her remaining wish. The night passed while his thoughts wandered into meaningless things. Everything until... Good evening, Aizu. Good evening, Hestia-sama. The goddess Loli had finally succumbed to sleep on the mattress of the only bed in the place. Her snores were proof that she was completely immersed in the world of dreams. Hee, it's time to escape. Aizu curled her lips into a malevolent smile. Even her eyes took on a sinister gleam that blended perfectly with the darkness of the small room. 121212. Walking on tiptoe, Aizu successfully escaped. His new jet-black rapier at his waist, the breastplate given by the guild now almost destroyed on his chest, and an impatient smile adorning his pretty face. Aizu ran through the moonlit streets. XXX. When Hestia-sama had given me my sheet of this and I read it, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it even as the brightness in my eyes intensified and my lips spread in a smile. I could feel it, but I couldn't believe it. I could feel my body vibrating and tingling, filled with emotion and feelings I didn't know existed. Never before had I been granted one of the many wishes I've made since I can remember. That's why I couldn't believe it. Even as my eyes scanned the words that explained my newfound magic, I still couldn't believe it. An enchantment. Mother. I didn't know how to categorize it. You could call it a blessing, a miracle, or a gift, but it all came down to one thing, a bond. I felt it was the greatest of ironies and the silliest of coincidences. Keep protecting me, mother. Wind element enchantment. That was my magic, one linked to my mother's power. I had all my memories. My grandparents told me everything about myself and about this era to which I didn't belong. That's why I was happy even if I couldn't believe it. My mother's bond with me had transcended time. It didn't matter if it was mere coincidence or not. Ariel. I thought of a name for my wind magic. I remembered the specifications and what it did. I remembered the verses of its activation. Wake up. I smiled foolishly, Tempest, and I began my adventure on the 5th floor of the dungeon. XXX. Hayayeg huar, agonizing screams, muffled roars. The vibrant sound of the wind cutting through everything in its path became the natural symphony of the 5th floor of the dungeon. Blood was splattered on the walls, heads with lifeless eyes rolled across the rocky ground, and a lake of ash slowly expanded. How incredible is magic! Aizu was out of control. The edge of his rapier was covered by a layer of wind, his body was protected by a kind of windy armor, and he felt his strength, agility, and dexterity increasing. She was blinded by emotion and her newfound power. With this, Yufufu no monster is a match for me. While he laughed in victory, his dance of slaughter continued uninterrupted. Goblins and kobolds were born, roared, attacked, agonized, and died. Aizu was no longer afraid of them at all, not with the barrier of cutting wind around his entire body. She was the sovereign and the monsters were subjects awaiting their condemnation. MHHGH. His reign over the fifth floor of the dungeon remained thus until the moment his eyes turned vacant. Her vision became blurred and she experienced symptoms of dizziness and drowsiness. Ah, what's wrong? My head hurts. His bloody run came to a halt, and slowly the wind armor faded away both from his body and his rapier. He fell to one of his knees. What the? She could vaguely hear the metallic sound of her rapier hitting the ground. That was bad, being stunned, disoriented, and disarmed. Ah, I think I made a mistake. Their thoughts slowly came together, and at that pace they reached a terrifying conclusion. She had been using her magic for a long time, and as a beginner in all aspects of being an adventurer, she was unaware of the fact of a zero mind. His body grew heavy and his strength was not enough to support him. Why am I so stupid? The rough sound of his body hitting the ground was the last thing his dazed senses registered. He was left vulnerable to any monster or attack. XXX. Light footsteps echoed off the walls of the fifth floor of the dungeon. Soft and quiet, without breaking the peculiar silence of the moment. The person responsible for the light footsteps stopped. They turned their head to the right, focusing their gaze on a certain shape in the distance. Hey, is anyone here? He showed curiosity. The ruby-red color of her eyes increasingly focused on the dark lump lying on the rocky ground. Her white hair twitched slightly as she walked forward. Oh, if it isn't her. When he was close enough, he smiled. He recognized that beautiful golden hair. She was a young adventurer who had recently been added to his list of people of interest. Her lips curled even more. She seems to have suffered a brain freeze, poor thing. He knew perfectly well that the girl wasn't dead. Just by looking carefully, he could see her chest rising and falling. She was just in a zero mindset. What did Reveria say about scenarios like these? Oh, right, a lap pillow is perfect for relieving tiredness. He took a few more steps forward, getting close enough to take Aizu's head and place it on his lap. Okay, wake up soon. There's a lot we need to talk about. Aiz Wallenstein. The young woman's eyelids remained closed, which he found very endearing. Without hesitation, he raised one of his hands and began to comb her hair. XXX.
Hey,
While everything was spinning around me, I felt my hair being stroked. I don't know exactly how long I was unconscious, but I had the feeling that I had been dead for quite some time. That's why it comforted me to have my hair caressed so gently and delicately. Fingers intertwined their fingers through my strands, bestowing their warmth upon me. That's when I remembered. I was alone when I came to the dungeon. In fact, I had secretly run away from my goddess. So who was stroking my hair? I started sweating cold. I shouldn't panic, so it was best to keep my eyes closed and pretend I was still unconscious. Nothing assured me that the person stroking my hair was not a deranged, murderous, psychopathic abuser of women. That's why she had to be cautious. Also, it looks like he's giving me a lap pillow. KHHH. My first lap pillow was supposed to be from Kranelson.
What?
Evaluate the situation. I couldn't let myself be carried away by anger, so I calmed my instincts to cut off the hand of whoever this stranger was. Right at that moment, I heard his voice. Hey, I know you're awake. Why don't you open your eyes and we can talk for a bit? It felt very familiar, yet strangely foreign. I felt my lips form a nervous smile and my body react to the touch of this person's fingers. I slowly opened my eyes. They gradually focused, giving me a blurry view that slowly cleared. As that happened, the person's silhouette entered my field of vision. My quick conclusion was that I was hallucinating, because if that weren't the case, reality would be very embarrassing for me. The silhouette had a pair of beautiful ruby-red eyes. I didn't believe this was real. In fact, there was a possibility that I was still unconscious and fantasizing in my unreal world. I knew myself well, and I was mature enough to recognize that I had had strange dreams about Kranelson once or twice. The silhouette had beautiful white hair, pure as snow. I grew impatient, urging my eyes to focus more quickly. It's him, it's Kranelson, I'm sure of it. My heart raced. Just thinking that the person stroking my hair and giving me a lap pillow was Kranelson made my whole body tremble with excitement. However, there was something irregular. Oh, your cheeks turned red, Fufu. Are you mistaking me for someone else? His voice, so familiar yet strangely foreign. It was similar to Kranelson's voice, but it lacked that masculine tone. Yes, the voice didn't belong to a man. When my vision became completely clear, my soul trembled. It's a pleasure to meet you, Aiz Wallenstein. His lips formed the smile of a demon. Her sinister expression terrified me to such an extent that I couldn't move my body. I felt like the pressure she exerted on me was comparable to all the lead in the world. You were mistaking me for Belle Onishin, weren't you? Fufu, don't worry, that happens to everyone I've met. I couldn't form words or give life to my thoughts. No, that was incorrect. I couldn't think clearly of a response to her sinisterly intoned words. Her rubbered eyes were adorned with an elliptical pupil similar to those of reptiles. Her pure white hair was just like Kranelson's, however, it was as long as mine. Is it just me, or are you being really quiet? Come on, it's lucky we ran into each other, say something. She kept talking. I could only tremble as his sadistic smile filled me with terror. I couldn't believe someone could smile like that. Her face was delicate and beautiful, but it retained enough fierceness to make me swallow hard. I see you're a man of few words, just like Wallenstein, don't you think? He only talks a lot when he's with me, hee though he's cute when he doesn't say a word either. I wanted to cry. I didn't understand why, but every word this person said made me want to sink into despair. I had never seen death, but if it had a face, this person would be its perfect reincarnation. That's what my instincts told me. I got a little nostalgic, sorry. I tend to talk a lot, it helps to quiet the voices in my head, don't you hear them? They're a bit annoying, heh, yeah, although sometimes it's good to listen to what they say. They can surprise you with their witty remarks. The smile widened. I could see 4 fangs, 2 below and 2 above, similar to those of a bloodthirsty beast. I wanted to get up and run, but my body wouldn't respond to my desires. I had turned, in every sense of the word, to stone. I observed the curve of her lips and the way they moved to bring her words to life. Right now, QHQH. His laughter evolved into something increasingly sinister. The voices tell me, Ekihekiha. May she kill the new bitch who took an interest in my cute older brother Bell. My soul screamed in terror. XXX. Aizu began to shed tears. Her whole body trembled and the crystal-clear water continued to wet her cheeks. She wept silently. Please let me go. His spirit had been shattered by the immense bloodlust unleashed by the girl who claimed to be bellcranel's younger sister, especially her eyes and her smile. Just seeing them made Aizu start breathing erratically. SHHH, SHHH, SHHH. The white-haired girl smiled sweetly, stroking Aizu's hair and wiping away the tears running down the scared girl's cheeks with the thumb of her free hand. Yes, everything will be all right. The ruby-red background resembling blood stared directly at the gold moistened by tears. Cruelly, she murmured in a charming tone of voice. You have nothing to fear, I like you, so I'll kill you painlessly. You won't feel anything, you won't suffer anything, you won't see anything, haha, that's a blessing, isn't it? I've tortured the others to the point where they begged for death.
Me too.
Aizu's heart pounded, accelerating to such a scale that it could break his ribs and leap out of his chest. Under the predatory gaze of the white-haired young woman, Aizu asked between whimpers, because even consumed by terror, she wondered why. She couldn't think clearly because of the panic, but she understood that this girl was completely crazy and unhinged. Even so, I wanted to know the full reason why he would die. Why do you want to kill me? Her voice mingled with her crying, making her sound a little pathetic, but Aizu didn't really care how she looked right now. I didn't think anyone could show a cool side when their life was in the hands of someone as macabre and sinister as the girl who was giving them a lap pillow. Oh, the young woman reacted and showed an enthusiastic smile. Aizu didn't know if that was a good or bad thing. She was only certain that her question would be answered. Do you want to hear the story? Kaya, I really like the story. I know you'll like it too. The emotion she displayed was so innocent it was almost frightening. She didn't seem any different from Aizu, who got excited about things she liked. It's sad and tragic, but the ending is beautiful. As she herself had said, she was someone who talked too much. Knowing the reason, Aizu feared what those voices might say to this girl. Okay, hee, oh, how exciting. So are you ready to hear the best story of your life? Aizu nodded, still shedding tears and trembling with fear. The smile she sent in response began an unrevealed past, a forgotten past, forgotten by everyone except her and him. I know you know my older brother, and I also know you're in love with him. I saw a tie of eyes all over the dungeon the way you looked at him when he saved you from that minotaur. Oh, it must have been incredible. The feeling of being saved by him. I stopped being saved by my brother a long time ago. Her eyes hinted at tears, but her smile said otherwise. Her expression was a combination of constantly contradictory emotions. It was years ago, he fought for me and I waited for him. He's considered the hero of our time, you know. My older brother is amazing. He's very strong, very kind and gentle. Yes, he's perfect. As the story progressed, Aizu concentrated all her being on calming her trembling and gathering the courage to move. However, there was little he could accomplish. He stood helplessly, listening as the tears slowly dried on his cheeks. I, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. I was born with a blood disorder similar to our mothers and aunts. I was weak. I could only dream of gaining the same strength as my brother and walking beside him. Yes, all I wanted was to be able to walk beside him. She didn't seem to be having fun as she recounted all the events of the past. It was, as she herself had said, a sad and tragic story. Aizu didn't know how a story with that beginning could end with such a beautiful conclusion. For some reason, that made her tremble. But the wishes of a poor, sick girl like me couldn't change the harsh reality. While my brother fought against the darkness of the city for me so that I could enjoy a world of peace, my health only worsened. I knew it. I knew I didn't have many years left to live. The ruby red became distant as if they had traveled to the past. I tried to hide it. Wallenstein would visit me and tell me bedtime stories and fantasy tales. Fufu, I missed the sound of his voice when he read those stories to me. I would pretend while he read. Then, when he took his sword and went out to fight once more, I would cough. I coughed so hard that blood mixed with my saliva. I knew it. I would die soon after my brother achieved a peaceful world. There was regret, pain, and sadness in the soft red depths of her eyes. Even her smile had softened. That's why I mustered up my courage. My brother Bell always left 2 members of the family to watch my room, but I managed to slip out unnoticed. I had heard rumors that were my only hope. I managed to get outside, after so long locked in my room, and as best I could, I ran through the streets and into different alleyways. Aizu noticed that little by little the murderous gleam was returning to the nostalgic depths of the rubbered eyes. I wandered for a while, I don't know, maybe a couple of hours, until a god dressed in black found me. It was a dark time, you know. It was common for children to be attacked and killed, as well as recruited by evil gods. Well, it was precisely through that god that I confirmed the rumors were true. I grew stronger. The slight smile subsided and slowly began to curve into a crescent moon. My illness was gone. I could move at speeds I'd only dreamed of. I felt no pain, I no longer coughed up blood, I was no longer a weak little girl. Of course, I'm not an idiot. I knew my reasoning had shifted slightly and that I saw other people's lives as insignificant, but hey, isn't all life insignificant? The smile of a demon reappeared, and with it the tears and trembling returned. Fear, terror, panic. Aizu was being flooded by negative emotions. Earth you are and earth you will be. You are born as earth, you die as earth. You come from the earth, you end in the earth. That is a cycle, my dear friend Aiz Wallenstein. A cycle impossible to stop, impossible even for my older brother Bell. Anyway, I'll continue with the story. The best part is yet to come. Well, after that I returned to the Twilight Mansion. Everyone was worried about me, especially my brother Bell. He was so upset. Seriously, my brother is scary when he's angry, you bet. Aizu didn't understand the constant changes in personality. She seemed happy, then sad, and then happy again. No one noticed any change in me. I was still that sick little Ingvild who needed the protection of others. The dark age was also numbered, all because of my brother Bell. He even killed our aunt, you know. He pierced her heart with his shining sword. He did the same to the man who was our father's friend. He massacred him without mercy. Fufu, just imagining the scenarios makes my heart flutter. But I don't have a heart, Yuho, how silly of me. That was a turning point. Aizu's heart stopped for a few seconds, and her thoughts somehow brought back the memory of the tavern. The time Bell defended her and the time she saw such deep sadness in his eyes. Could that have anything to do with the events that the newly appointed Ingvild was now recounting? Aizu observed. He watched in terror the sadistic crescent-shaped smile that formed on Ingvild's lips. While I continued pretending to be sick and waited for the stories my brother Bell told me almost every night, suddenly the dark era ended. My brother swept away the darkness with the swish of his silver sword. Isn't that pretty cool? Oh, I asked, it's really cool, don't you think? Nod. Suddenly Ingvild sharpened her gaze and grabbed Aizu by the neck, squeezing lightly. That pressure was enough to make Aizu's face turn pale blue and tears began to flow once again. After a few seconds he released his grip. He was going to kill her, that was written in stone. However, he had not yet finished telling his story, and I couldn't cut it at the best part. Well, be a good girl and listen quietly. The best is yet to come. Yes, the most beautiful thing about this story is its bloody ending. Doesn't that excite you, Aiz Wallenstein? Aizu nodded. She didn't want Ingvild to strangle her again. Well, as I said, as soon as my brother kicked the Evelis guys' butts, the streets overflowed with joy once again. The streets were bustling, children played and laughed on every corner, shops thrived, and things returned to normal. Everything was perfect. Do you know how many times my older brother Bell has smiled with genuine happiness? Aizu shook her head slightly and Ingvild smiled contentedly. Once. The information hit Aizu like a ton of bricks. Her golden pupils trembled. I remember that day. We both climbed to the top of the tallest tower in the Twilight Mansion. We watched the people, talked about nonsense. I laughed and hugged him, and I even fed him the Jugamaru-kun we had bought. At that moment he smiled. It was so beautiful. I didn't think anyone could smile like that while a line of tears ran down his cheek. I was truly captivated. I had never seen him smile like that before. He said, I did it, Ingvild. I built a peaceful world for you. Now let's both enjoy it, shall we? I burst into tears and sobbed against his chest for hours. All I know is that sunset had arrived, and I was still nestled against his chest as he stroked my hair. Everything indicated that we would be happy for the rest of our lives. However, the problem arose a few days later. He had arrived. The moment of the story's end was right in front of Aizu, and as a consequence, the end of his life as well. Unable to do anything, she listened in silence. My brother kept receiving love confession after love confession. Since he was so nice, he had a hard time refusing invitations to go out or gifts from those bitches. Oh, sorry, I got a little carried away, hee. Look, he's a liar. He said so, didn't he? That we'd enjoy the peaceful world he created, yet he accepted those sluts' invitations and left me, his little sister, all alone. Maybe I resent my brother a little for that, for lying to me. It's normal, right, to get angry when someone lies to you. Oh, of course I still love him with all my heart, but hey, I have a right to be angry with him. She exhibited various changes in her personality, but Aizu was already very clear that Ingvild was not a good person. I could almost feel the lives this girl had taken. Anyway, one day I reached my limit and exploded in anger. I waited patiently, stalking and noting down all the girls interested in my brother. And just when he went to the dungeon with most of the men in the family, I made my move. I started with the bitches who weren't part of the family, visiting their rooms and cutting out their tongues to kill them slowly. Seriously, you have no idea how many there were. My brother's pretty popular, isn't he? And when I was done with them all, I went after the members of the family who loved my brother. Yufufu, I wish you could have heard their screams. No one could escape me. I massacred them mercilessly and reveled in their blood. I tore off the ears and gouged out the eyes of the elves. I removed the limbs of the Amazons. I stripped the beast girls of their tails and fur, and finally I skinned the humans alive. It was wonderful. The feeling I got from killing the harpies behind my brother's back excited me. Aizu couldn't breathe. Ingvild's bloodlust and madness were suffocating her. The Twilight Mansion was transformed into the Mansion of Terror. It calmed me to hear the desperate, agonizing screams of those bitches. Bathing in their blood also refreshed my skin. Have you tasted blood? Oh, you should. Once you taste it, you can't stop. Although if anything went wrong on that beautiful crimson night, it was that my brother arrived just before I killed Reveria. Seriously, that conceited bitch was so lucky. I only managed to cut off one of her arms before I was run through by my brother's sword. It's not fair, it's not fair. Silly vigilante rabbit. Well, I'm not complaining, I still have a chance to kill her. Anyway, I was annoyed with him. He yelled my name so loud it shook the main hall of the mansion where he was killing everyone. I was trembling with fear, you know. My brother is super strong. Although maybe I wasn't scared of his strength, I'd never seen him that way. No, he'd never looked at me like that. My brother, the killer, had returned to carry out his last job. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces and my sanity might have been slightly warped, but only slightly. That's why I decided it was best to kill him. After all, I'm super strong too, you know. Of course, I couldn't do it. My brother's sword technique is magnificent, the pinnacle of everything, absolute mastery. It's no wonder he's nicknamed God of the Sword. I just wanted to kill him and then take my own life. I was sure we'd meet on the paths of death, but he wouldn't let me kill him. He clung to life and all I could do was cry. Of course, he was crying too. After all, he loves me very much. I'm the most important thing in his life. Yes, I'm proud of that.
What?
In the end, concluding that I couldn't kill him, I had to make a strategic retreat. He didn't make it easy for me, but I'm very clever, yep, very clever. I used Reveria's dog who was dying and escaped when my brother came to her rescue. I felt jealous. Of course, I know my brother will never protect me again, and I know he'll never come to my rescue, but it's the path I chose. I won't stop, not until I've plunged my sword into his heart. Aizu wondered how much had this person suffered. I didn't agree with him at all, but I understood well that he had simply made the wrong decisions. It must have been hard to be compared to her brother, a young prodigy. That's what Aizu thought. I think that's all. After that, I fled to the dungeon and sank into the depths, building up my strength and keeping watch to make sure no woman went near my older brother. Oh, and I also heard about the rumors of his liking for men. Pfff. It was fun, and I made sure to skin alive the person responsible for starting it, of course. Foolish, ignorant girls, if only they knew that the reason my brother rejects them is because he wants to keep them safe from me. Sometimes people are so stubborn, don't you think? Once again, Aizu nodded. Of course he was going to die, that much was clear in his mind. The only reason he remained obedient was because he desired a painless death. She hated pain, anything for a peaceful death. Well, the story's over, and as you know, your life will be too. Any last words? I'll grant them because you're so obedient. Oh, but don't think I like you, got it. I am so sorry for what you went through. You suffered a lot, that's why I'm sorry. Ingvild thought those were terrible last words, but she wouldn't judge her. There were all sorts of lunatics roaming the streets after all, I see. Ingvild let out a small sigh, then her smile released a predatory essence. This is goodbye, Aiz Wallenstein. He took her by the neck once more, watching Aizu close her eyes, which were beginning to shed tears. Apparently she was ready. Ingvild was pleased by this, and as promised, she gave him a painless death. Quickly, so that the brain signals wouldn't reach his nerves. Then,
Tab tab.
footsteps echoed, then the flash of a sword.
Exact.
Just when I was ready for my imminent death, I felt very light. No, saying it that way was incorrect. Rather, I felt like I was floating in the air without actually floating because something was supporting my back and legs. In short, they were taking advantage of me. I opened my eyes once more, and to my surprise, this time it was Kranelson who had me in his arms. He was carrying me like a princess. Aya. I wanted to say something, but when our eyes met, I noticed the emptiness in his eyes. He seemed angry, however, at the same time he seemed sad. It was the same look he had in that bar where he defended me. I just remained silent, watching from below her expression as she glared at Ingvildsen, her sister. Ingvild. He said, Bel Anashan Fufu, what are you doing here? Isn't it very late? You should be sleeping. I had a bad dream. I see, so you've come to me for refuge. Fufu bad, you're supposed to comfort me, not me, Bell Onishin. I was being crushed by the density of their forces colliding with each other. Neither of them moved, they just looked at each other carefully. I soon noticed Cranelson's beautiful rubbered eyes beginning to water. Then he put me down from his arms. I'm sorry I've caused you trouble once again. He turned around, facing the smiling and blushing Ingvild. A fight was about to break out, I sensed it. So unable to stand it any longer, I asked in a low voice, "See, Cranelson, is she your sister?" I could speak. Perhaps it was because I felt safe behind Cranelson's back, who stood between me and Ingvildson. I received a murderous glare. I immediately knew who it was from. Ingvildson looked directly at me, her eyes full of hostility, clearly telling me, "Don't talk to her, you climbing boar." It was a Bracona. I trembled a little. Perhaps I felt safe with Cranelson here, but Ingvildson was still terrifying. Then Cranelson looked over his shoulder at me. With an expression indecipherable to me, he answered, "She's my twin sister." I wanted to scream in surprise, but the atmosphere wouldn't allow it. Of course, Ingvildson had made it very clear that they were siblings, but I couldn't trust a psychopath who gave lap pillows to her victims. After that, the battle began. And my body was thrown against a wall by the shockwave of their weapons hitting it. I couldn't even see them, but if I had to describe the scene, it would be like an unstoppable object crashing into an immovable object. The collision made the entire dungeon floor rumble. For my part, I understood the moral of my story. Never go out without permission, you could very well end up being murdered. Chapter 7, Laments of a Hero. I missed a Ricardo Arjona concert. It was a clash of colossal forces. Both Ingvild and Bell wielded so much power in the area that the walls were beginning to crack. The dungeon began to scream, terrifying Aizu in 1,000 ways. She was a novice, but she knew from Aina that when the dungeon screamed, nothing good was going to happen. How did I get involved in this? She thought in terror. The 5th floor of the dungeon continued to rumble as the two swords clashed. The intensity of the gusts of wind caused by the impacts was such that Aizu clung to a rock to avoid being blown away. She stared towards the center of the floor that was falling to pieces. I don't know what's happening, but I'm going to die if I stay here. Still clinging to the rock that was slowly cracking, Aizu thought that a tactical retreat was the best option. Besides, I'm a hindrance to Cranelson. They could take me hostage and that would make things difficult for him. Yep, it's best if I leave. Just as she thought of that, ready to let herself be carried away by the air currents, she felt her abdomen getting hot. His arms lost strength by the time he felt a dagger pierce his stomach and blood gushing out. Jiga. Blood seeped from her mouth, staining her pink lips a deep red. Aizu's body lost strength and was carried away by the strong blizzards caused by Bell and Ingvild's fight. Contrary to his desire to retreat, his body crashed against a cracked wall on the 5th floor. The force of the wind kept her pressed against the wall, unable to do anything to stop the wound in her abdomen. Ah, what an idiot I am, he thought. XXX. Ingvild had thrown a dagger that Bell could not block, and the same dagger pierced the abdomen of the novice she had recently saved from a minotaur. The injured body against the wall of Aizu entered Bell's field of vision, and he immediately went to her aid. If necessary, he would use his dimensional movement to bring her safely to the surface. That was his intention, however. Don't look at her. His sister, Ingvild, launched an attack with the edge of her sword. The speed was so great that Bell couldn't afford to ignore it. Slash. He stepped to the side, avoiding the sword that formed a crater in the ground, and launched a counterattack. The edge of his sword collided with Ingvild's second sword, causing a screeching sound to echo through the room. Face to face, struggling with each other, Ingvild screamed furiously, "Do you care more about that bitch than your own sister? I see as always you're silent. Why are you looking at me like that? Do you think I'm pathetic? I don't want your pity, you idiot." Bell looked sadly at his younger sister. The memory of a little Ingvild, excited by the bedtime stories I read to her, fractured and fell to pieces before the current Ingvild, one who radiated murderous madness and absolute evil. Ingvild, she felt like crying, his chest hurt. I was sure I wasn't bleeding or injured, but it still hurt. The pain never stopped. It's grown so much. I hadn't seen her for almost 5 years. Her height was almost the same as his, her hair fell like a great waterfall down her back and reached her hips. His eyes, once full of life and kindness, now radiated unbridled hatred. Ingvild. "Stop looking at me like that, you stupid brother." A sharp pain pierced Bell's heart. The struggle broke down and both jumped back, creating a distance of 5 meters between them. It seemed to be enough, but they both knew that those 5 meters wasn't even 1 millimeter for their speeds. At this distance, long in reality but 0 compared to their speeds, Ingvild spoke in an irritated voice. "What are you so sad to see me? It shouldn't surprise you, should it? I just wished I could be like you. Everyone in the family compared me to you. Those bastards, they saw me as nothing more than the shadow of the great hero Bell Cranel. Haha, I remember the faces of those bitches when they saw me rip their hearts out." Bell gripped the hilt of his sword, recalling the massacre Ingvild had carried out at the Loki Familia headquarters so many years ago. His heart suffered from the agony. "Tell me, Oniachin, what level are you currently?" "A little bird told me you're still at level 7. It's right, you fufu liar. The atmosphere deteriorated to such an extent that it was suffocating for any person or monster present. The unconscious Aizu was proof of that. Under such an atmosphere, Ingvil raised his right arm and pointed at Belle with the tip of his sword. Her lips curled into a twisted smile. My power is that of a LV9. If you say you're level 7, how come you're on par with me, dear big brother? It's just technique, it's not all about brute force, Ingvild. I see you fufu so you fufu hehehehidi. Are you saying I've already surpassed you, dear older brother? The tension was rising, but despite the news of his 2-level disadvantage, Belle didn't even flinch. He remained expressionless, gazing with great sorrow at his beloved younger sister. Ingvil noticed this and frowned. What, are you still feeling sorry for me? I don't want to keep it to myself. You've always been like this with me, indifferent since that day when all I want is your approval. I was rotting away in my room because of my illness. My own weakness drove me away from you, and I couldn't be strong. I couldn't be like you. Not being strong is not a weakness, Ingvild. Heh, sure, you say that because you're strong. You always have been, my lovely older brother, more talented and prodigious than anyone. Glaring angrily at her brother, Ingvild realized that her cheeks were beginning to get wet. 2 lines of silent tears ran down the surface of her skin, originating from the corners of her eyes. In that state where memories of the past attacked her, she revealed one of her greatest sorrows. You knew I wanted to fight by your side. You always knew it, but when Armid said she was sick, what did you do, brother? What did you do? She launched her attack, closing the 5-meter distance in less than a second. Her swords clashed with Belle's, and the powerful gusts of wind echoed once more. The floor shook and the walls began to crack. Then the dungeon resumed its wailing. Ingvild glared at her brother with barely contained fury. Nothing, he slashed, but Belle deflected it. His sword technique was so beautiful and sophisticated. He responded to his sister's outburst. I didn't know about your illness and I never wished it on you. It's not my fault. He said that, however, Belle was the one who blamed himself the most. She blamed herself for having received everything from Ingvild while still in her mother's womb: strength, talent, and health. Ingvild bit down hard, grinding her own teeth. Then she roared loudly, wasn't it your fault? Who filled my head with tales and stories? Who told me about training and techniques? Who said they'd be by my side forever? Who gave me false hope and then shattered that hope? Tears running down Ingvild's cheeks made Belle's expression distort with pain. They continued exchanging attacks, and each one produced a tremor throughout the floor. The burning sparks created by the impact of metal on metal jumped and danced through the air before disappearing into nothingness. Everything I did was to make you proud. I'm level 9 now, I'm so strong. Tell me you're proud, brother, tell me. A stronger impact than before made Belle stumble back, and Ingvild took advantage of that small opening to advance and plant a kick in his brother's chest. Tell me. Belle's body was sent hurtling through the air, forming a parabola before impacting and shattering a 5th-floor wall. Debris rolled down and dust was raised, creating a smokescreen. Ha ha, tell me please, brother. Ingvild watched the cloud of dust, wiping away her tears. After a few seconds, a figure rose from the dust and debris. It slowly walked to the front and Belle emerged from it. His face was slightly smudged with dust, but apart from his shattered adamantite breastplate, he showed no injuries. They both observed each other from the distance that separated them. Belle, with sad eyes and a lonely expression, murmured with his lips forming a slight smile. I was always proud of you, Ingvild. You're my little sister, my greatest treasure, my greatest pride. For the first time in almost 5 years, Ingvild witnessed the tears of the strongest human in history. He looked so sad, alone, and abandoned. He seemed more like a dead man than someone alive. But everything you've done is wrong. That's why, as your older brother, I must punish you. In this case, the punishment is death. Don't worry, you won't be alone. I'll come as soon as I can because... Little sister, you're not a bad person. You just had bad luck, and I was a complete idiot for not understanding your suffering. Before she knew it, she was crying again. Ingvild fought back the urge to fall to her knees and sob, longing for a hug from her brother. She wanted to bury her tear-covered face in the chest of the young man she loved most in this world. At that moment, when she wanted to scream between sobs for him to hug her, a chant echoed through the cold 5th-floor room of the dungeon. Flames of creation, origin of all. An absurd amount of refined magical power flooded the 5th floor of the dungeon. Ingvild looked bewildered, observing her brother's cold gaze. With crimson fingers, it grasps and devours everything that comes its way. Belle intoned in an emotionless voice as he positioned his sword vertically in front of him. It just can't be. Ingvild recognized the chant instantly. It was his brother's infernal magic, the one with which he had incinerated so many of his enemies to ashes, including Gluttony, and the reason why many nicknamed him Hell's Messenger. Burning the earth and the skies in a firestorm, brilliant flame, dancing in the darkness. He would invoke hell on earth, his most powerful magic and the one for which he was feared in the Dark Ages and seen as a murderous demon, Gehenna Infernus. Hellfire that reduces everything to ashes.
Brother,
Even she understood, she had to retire, and as much as she wished to die, she wouldn't do so until Belle died first. More than anything powerful, more than anything ruthless. Burning brightly, burning fiercely, I see, so that's how it'll be. Ingvild smiled bitterly and sadly, observing the composure and determination of her older brother. Then he sheathed both swords and pointed his index finger in another direction. May your raging flames weave a trap and consume my enemy in the fierce fire of hell. Did you forget about her little brother? She asked with a sweet smile, Gehenna in fur. By the time Belle looked and remembered Aizu's body, the immense magical power disappeared in an instant, as if it had never existed. Hee, I figured as much, you're so absent-minded. Don't get me wrong, I want her dead, I want to see her turn to ashes by your own magic, but the situation changes if I get involved, hee. Her face was haggard from the dry tears that had previously run down her cheeks, but Ingvild did not stop showing a twisted smile. Oh, I almost forgot. Is it alright if I tell you that all my weapons are imbued with vermis venom? For the first time, Belle seemed surprised. He wanted to attack Ingvild, however, he had to help Aizu, who was not to blame for the life-or-death situation she was in. Well then I'll go, I loved talking to you again, Belle Oniachin. Belle watched his sister's back, powerless to stop her. Her footsteps echoed off the cracked walls and reached the hero's ears. One day, Ingvild, I will grant you eternal rest, I swear. Fufu, I agree, dear brother. You are a hero after all, but remember that heroes of wars in times of peace are simply mass murderers. Ingvild stopped and looked over her shoulder in Belle's direction. You can make the impossible possible, you are the idol of all living beings with reason, but tell me, have you ever asked yourself who you really are? With a tender smile, she asked. Are you the strongest because you're bellcranel, or are you bellcranel because you're the strongest? You've lost all sense of your true self, dear older brother, and that saddens me. See you soon, everything will be decided next time. Remember that I love you with all my heart, Belle Oniachin. By the time Ingvild's back disappeared into the shadows of the dungeon, Belle had fallen to his knees. His fingers released the hilt of his sword and it fell onto the cracked rocky ground, making a metallic sound. He wasn't tired or exhausted, nor was he hurt or injured. He was sad and he regretted all the decisions he had made in the past. If only I had been stronger. The irony of the strongest is that he was still weak. He understood very well that the more he took, the less he had. XXX. After healing her and ensuring that she was not in any danger, Belle took the unconscious Aizu in his arms and began his return to the surface. It was upon reaching the first floor that Aizu regained consciousness, becoming embarrassed and turning as red as a tomato when she realized that she was being carried like a princess by her longing. He wanted to remove it and flee, but his body was still weakened by the repercussions of the poison that had already been eliminated. Furthermore, Belle had spoken to him in a low voice. Please don't say anything about what happened here. Can I count on you, Wallenstein? Of course, whatever you want. She didn't hesitate for a second to nod. Her ears were burning, her cheeks were burning, her body was burning. Aizu herself was burning. He's touching me, he's touching me. She liked the sensation of Belle's fingers holding her legs, as well as the arm supporting her back and the chest where her head rested. And they're watching Yuzi. Belle hadn't even stopped when leaving the dungeon, and he headed towards the guild to leave Aizu with some employee who would take care of her and call her family. All the passers-by stared at them. Looks of astonishment, envy, jealousy, and anger. It was almost 4:00 a.m., but being on the street of the adventurers, there were people going to or leaving the dungeon. Why do I feel like half the city is going to be my enemy? Aizu broke out in a cold sweat, fearing the murderous glares she felt from the female audience. He sensed that nothing would be so easy from now on. However, despite everything working against her, she smiled inwardly with joy and happiness. It's a risk I'm willing to take. Being carried like a princess by Kranelson is worth it, hee. The stares didn't stop even when they arrived at the guild, where all the receptionists on duty stared in shock at the strange scene before their eyes. Among them, Aizchen, Ina was working a double shift today. Oh, Inasen, hello. Ina stared completely stunned at the happy Aizu who was waving her hand in greeting. The smile on her lips was so radiant it blinded her. Belle approached Ina, assuming she was Aizu's direct supervisor, and smiled slightly before greeting her. It's been a while, Miss Ina. Why yes, it's been a while, Belson. Ina turned as red as a tomato, staring at Belle in embarrassment. Her half-elf ears turned bright red as smoke billowed from them. What's going on? Why does Aizchen seem to be in heaven despite being all beaten up? There were so many questions and so few answers, and before I could even ask about the situation, Belle explained. I found her badly injured in the dungeon. I've already healed her and brought her here, so I leave her in your capable hands, Miss Ina. Ah, yes. Ina watched as Aizu went from being the happiest woman in the world to the saddest, because Belle had stopped carrying her. I have some things to do, see you later. Belle said goodbye as soon as he could and turned his back on them both, slowly walking away. Both of them, gazing at the back of the young man they loved, sighed like true lovers. After a few seconds, "You must explain everything to me," Aina said. "Let's go to a private room," Aizu replied. XXX. Twilight Mansion. While a certain pair of young people were chatting in a soundproof room, Bell had arrived at his family headquarters. He passed through the gate guarded by some low-ranking officers who greeted him respectfully and crossed the garden until he reached the main entrance. There, on the stairs leading to the door, he ran into Reveria. It was early morning, possibly 4:00 a.m., and she stood in front of the door looking tiredly at Bell. "Hi," Bell greeted, trying to ignore her and get to her room. Faced with that attitude, Reveria smiled. "Welcome home, Bell." Bell stopped walking instantly, standing shoulder to shoulder with Reveria. After a few seconds, he murmured, "I'm at home." "How did your routine checkup go? I see, are you hungry? I can prepare something for you." Despite Bell's silence, Reveria perfectly understood what had happened. He met Ingvild, he thought. Reveria remembered that young woman very well, and despite almost dying at her hands, she cared deeply for Ingvild. Just when Reveria thought she wouldn't get an answer to her question about food, Bell looked her straight in the eyes. The ruby-red background exuded sadness, and the jade-green background worry. "Reveria, I am strong, right?" The beautiful high elf widened her eyes, slightly stunned by the meaning behind Bell's words. He was doubting himself, which made Reveria feel a pang in her chest, but having no other choice, she replied, "Yes, you are strong." See, Reveria lowered her gaze, observing the ground beneath her feet and the stairs that descended to the lawn of the garden. "Don't you want something to eat?" he asked again. At his insistence, Bell walked over and entered the mansion. "Thank you, but I have no appetite." "I understand, rest then." "Yes, likewise." Reveria stood alone at the entrance of the headquarters. She had kept waiting for Bell because she wanted to welcome him and thus let him know that he had a home where they were waiting for him. However, he still couldn't understand the burden on Bell's shoulders. "What can I do to help him?" After lamenting his helplessness for a few minutes, he entered the mansion and went up to his room. He wanted to sleep, but he couldn't fall asleep. XXX. So when he wanted to kill me and erase my existence from this world, Kranelson arrived. After being severely reprimanded for going to the dungeon at unreasonable hours and without her goddess's permission, Aizu told Aina everything. From his newfound magic, his escape from the dungeon at midnight, the mind zero he suffered, the story his good friend Ingvild told him, his rescue by Bell, and the battle that unfolded before he fell unconscious from a poisoned dagger. Aina was speechless, stunned, and in a trance from the overwhelming amount of information. Aizu was like a bird in the mornings that never stopped singing, because she had narrated everything with an amazing lip-syncing speed that Aina could barely keep up with. However, despite the heavy information, she now knew the identity of the serial killer of women almost 5 years ago. So it was Belson's sister. I thought the records listed her as deceased due to an incurable illness. Everything gradually made sense, and the fatigue of working double shifts had disappeared. "How crazy," he murmured under Aizu's tired gaze. She was equally exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Seeing her adventure in charge like that, Aina sighed deeply and pointed at her. "Go to Hestia-sama and rest. I'll inform her of your escape to the dungeon this afternoon. But he's going to punish me by making me wear that ridiculous Jugamaru-kun outfit again. Aina-san, are you going to betray me?" "Yeah, no way, how cruel, W.A. Stop throwing tantrums and go home. I'll try to make your punishment less severe, okay, thank you very much." Aina rolled her eyes at Aizu's sudden mood change. She stood up from the sofa and bowed slightly, walking towards the living room door. By the way, it was then that he looked over his shoulder at Aina. "This is top secret, please don't tell anyone, okay? Don't worry, I won't say, thank you." Aizu then left the room, leaving Aina alone. The beautiful receptionist took off her glasses and rubbed her eyelids, trying to wipe away the last traces of tears. "Belson has suffered so much. At last I understood a little more about the enigma that was the god of the sword, and about the weight he carried on his shoulders. Furthermore, she now knew the reason why she had been rejected by Bell in the past. She never imagined it was to keep her safe from Ingvild Kranel, a former member of the Loki Familia and Bell's twin sister. I'm happy but sad at the same time." Alone in the room, Aina was enveloped in a sad and melancholic atmosphere. Unlike Aizu, she knew how to keep a secret. XXX. Days later, when Hestia was notified by Aina about Aizu's escape, she burst into anger and applied her divine punishment upon the weeping golden-haired young woman. As Aizu had said, she was forced to work at Jugamaru-kun's job wearing that ridiculous potato outfit she hated so much for 3 days. 1 order of 3 Jugamaru-kun, coming soon. Today was the third and final day, and unlike the first 2, Aizu had begged on her knees to be the one to prepare the Jugamaru-kun. Since it wasn't very complicated besides putting the potato croquettes in oil and taking them out after a certain time, Hestia granted her wish. It was almost at the end of his unpaid workday that a certain customer arrived at Jugamaru-kun's stall. 2 dozen Jugamaru-kun with special dressing, please. "Oh, but he's my star client. Why didn't you come?" "I thought you'd betrayed me and gone off with another salesperson." "No, not at all. I was fixing some earrings. I see. Well, that's fine. 2 dozen Jugamaru-kun with special dressing to go. Aizu had recognized that voice instantly, and after seeing the culprit casually talking to his goddess, he hid behind Jugamaru-kun's cart. And Aizu, she heard Hesja's voice, but she didn't care in the slightest and continued curled up behind the cart. It's Kranelson, what do I do? I haven't seen him for 3 days and I'm so embarrassed after he carried me like a princess. In a situation where she hugged her legs and buried her face between her knees, Aizu went into a major breakdown. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you hiding, Aizu? Hestia-sama. By the time Hestia peeked out and found her curled up in a ball, Aizu already felt like running away and fleeing to her headquarters. However, is something wrong? He heard Bell's voice on the other side of the cart waiting for his order. Hestia turned around and answered, I don't know, Aizu is acting strange, but don't worry, I'll prepare your order, I just need to take off this cumbersome suit. Aizu, do you mean Wallensteinson? He discovered me. By the time she realized it, Aizu was already cornered. It didn't matter if she ran because Belle would recognize her by her golden hair. You know her. Hestia and Belle continued their conversation while Aizu grew smaller and smaller. What do I do? Uo? Yes, we've spoken a couple of times. Oh, I see, maybe that's why she's hiding, she's a little shy, you know. But she's very sweet. Once, the first day she went to the dungeon, she came running back to me after killing only one go. Stop it, HESTS. Say THAT. Tell CRANLSAN, it didn't matter if she objected to coming out and showing her face, but she would never ever let something so shameful come to light, especially not to the person she loved. Aizu, what haswawawa, I'm sorry, please be quiet. Aizu came out of his hiding place and knocked down his goddess, putting a Jugamaru-kun in her mouth so that she couldn't speak. Red-faced, Aizu gagged her goddess with a potato croquette before Belle's incredulous gaze. XXX. After Hestia was dragged into an alley by Aizu and the whole context of the situation was explained to her, she finally understood. She understood that her favorite client was the hero who had saved Aizu from death and the man she was hopelessly in love with. So you're the one who saved Aizu from that Minotaur, Rabbit-kun, thanks for that. No, it was our fault that the Minotaurs rose, you don't have to thank us. Hestia glanced at Aizu, who was performing a doujutsu due to her earlier outburst. After a few seconds of thought, she smiled malevolently and pointed at Belle. Yes, you're right, it's the fault of that family of that table you call a goddess. Seriously, did they want to leave me without a dependent? Very, very, very bad. I'm sorry, Hestia-sama, I have no excuses. Belle showed his regret and lowered his head. Then Hestia smiled more widely while ignoring Aizu's stunned gaze. Well, I could forgive you if you grant me a favor, he murmured suspiciously. A whim, if it's within my reach, I'll do it. Belle tilted his head, somewhat confused, but accepted the request. So. Smiling malevolently, Hestia puffed out her large chest and pointed at Aizu, who was still performing doujutsu while watching the conversation. Train Aizu for a week, how about that? If she's trained by the strongest adventurer in town, I won't be worried about anything happening to her, right? Aizu was the one who was surprised. She lifted her face from the ground and stared in disbelief at her goddess. Then she looked at Belle, who remained silent. After a few seconds of being observed by both Hestia waiting and Aizu stunned, Belle nodded. Sure, I have no problem with that, but... Are you sure, Hestia-sama? My classmates say my training isn't normal. Don't worry, my sweet Aizu likes pain, doesn't she, Aizu? Of course not, I hate pain. Aizu thought. He understood very well that Hestia was helping him and he was very happy about it, but he would certainly appreciate it if his goddess didn't invent strange fetishes for him. However, she could neither say no to her goddess's false declaration nor could she say yes. Because of that, looking for the best solution, he stood up and replied. I'll do my best to learn as much as I can and not be a burden, Kranelson. I beg you, please train me too. He bowed, waiting for a response and clenching his fists nervously. After a few seconds, Belle's voice sounded, all right. And so Aizu stood up straight with stars in her eyes, having received 7 days of training from the man she loved. Thank you very much, Kranelson. Her cheeks turned a lovely pink hue and her lips formed a radiant, angelic smile. Chapter 8, Confessions Behind a Mask. If I had to explain it in a few words, I would say it was crazy. From start to finish, from the first second to the last. The first fall and the last rise, an agonizing scream and a sigh of relief. What I was able to understand perfectly from my training was that Kranelson was on a completely different level. Looking at it is like looking at a sky covered in clouds, unattainable. Even so, knowing the vast difference in power, I longed to fly in that sky. XXX. The birdsong reached the basement where I live with Hestia-sama. The sun hadn't risen yet, but I was already awake. The time was around 5 or 6 in the morning. Eager to get to the place where I would see Kranelson, I washed my body and brushed my teeth. I walked over to the somewhat old mirror attached to the wall and looked at the reflection of my body, marveling at my new armor. This was a new model, and I really wasn't planning on buying one for financial reasons. Ironically, my terrible finances clashed with my aversion to pain. However, after being warned by Einasen and my own survival instinct, I decided to buy a third-rate one for training with Kranelson. Will this even be enough to protect me? I wondered. I would hardly do anything to stop the attacks of the strongest adventurer in the entire city and possibly the world. Even so, keeping my expectations high was the only option left. Enduring the harsh and cruel reality will be for my future self. Perfect. I smiled with pride. Today I looked as beautiful as ever, which gave me enough confidence to show up to training without embarrassing myself. I made sure my hair smelled wonderful, as did my entire body. Investing 5,000 volleys in moisturizing skin cream was definitely a good investment, as my whole body smelled perfect. Heshia-sama, I'm leaving.
Hewosi wea weens.
I ignored the attempt at dismissal made by a sleeping Heshia-sama and went up the stairs to the surface, escaping from this dreadful basement. The streets appeared before me, and the cool breeze of the approaching dawn caressed my cheeks and made my hair dance. Under the still dark sky, I ran through the streets and crossed alleyways until I reached the meeting point with Kranelson, the city walls. I'm going on a date with the love of my life. I'm awesome, I'm cute, I'm awesome. Of course, I was excited. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid it would jump out of my chest. This was normal. I was just a young woman head over heels in love, nothing unusual in this city. I was sure this would be a great day. XXX. Waha, my body sailed through the air and fell onto the cobblestones of the wall, rolling a couple of meters until it stopped. Yua. My body trembled with fear and agony. It hurts like hell. I think I can smell colors. Oh no, my hearing is getting blurry. Wait, what day is it today?
What?
Is this what Kranelson meant when he said his training was a bit tough? The word a bit doesn't even begin to cover it. This is bad. At this rate, I'll die a virgin. I had to do something, but my body wouldn't respond to my commands. The urge to move remained just that, and urgent. Instead, I lay motionless on the cold concrete. Goodbye armor, goodbye life, goodbye love. Today the legend of Aiz Wallenstein came to an end. That's right, she was dead. It was then, at the moment I accepted my death, that I heard his voice. Are you okay? Perfectly fine. My body stood up so quickly it was hard to believe, and looking at Kranelson with a confident smile, I nodded repeatedly. You're trembling. Because of the excitement of training with you. You bleed too.
Don't worry, it's just tomato sauce.
I had breakfast before coming here. Are you crying? Nope, I just moisturized my eyes naturally. Well, actually I was suffering so much that I could lose consciousness at any moment, but I couldn't afford to ruin this training. Even if all this resulted in my own death, I would accept it. Love was a feeling that powerful, driven by this great love that only grew stronger every day. I proudly declared. This level is nothing for me, seriously. I can handle 100 times more than this.
Whoa, you're amazing.
In response to his praise, I nodded repeatedly with emotion. Just thinking about the idea of receiving direct advice from the strongest adventurer was enough to make anyone happy. Well then. While I was enjoying my moment of glory, Kranelson said in a low voice, I'll stop holding back. Let's go from 1% of my power to 100%. Are you ready? Of course, 1% out of 100. I froze and could only pathetically watch as Kranelson was enveloped in a suffocating aura of pure, absolute power. The wall began to tremble, and with it my whole body. Was he holding back? The moment he raised his sword, all my senses loudly alerted me to flee from this place. I saw my death and the deaths of my dead. Just a single emotionless look or a hint of doubt in Kranelson's eyes was enough to make my legs go weak. Iswijai. I fell to my knees, unable to utter a word. I wanted to speak, to beg him to stop and show mercy, but only faint sounds choked with fear escaped my lips. My body tingled, my throat became drier than any desert, and my ears picked up a sharp, terrifying sound. I felt very similar to a rodent watching an eagle soaring through the skies. Absolute, immovable, powerful, and majestic, but above all, terrifyingly lethal. Dear Mom and Dad will probably be reunited sooner than planned.
XXX.
The world went black, or perhaps it was just my eyes unable to open. My body felt light, like a feather being smothered by the faint breeze of dawn. Tingling or prickling sensations ran constantly across my skin. The vague idea of resting on a cloud flooded my confused thoughts. Like a turbulent tide on a stormy night, my head became a poor shipwrecked vessel at the mercy of the raging waves. It was strange. To feel so much peace alongside so much painful confusion. Did I go too far again? Suddenly I heard a voice. Melodious and captivating, a voice I couldn't help but fall hopelessly in love with. Music to my ears, or the songs of a little Avellino perched on the window frame. Kranel-san, I opened my eyes. The dark world was pierced by a ray of light, and it was completely illuminated. You woke up. He resumed reciting harmonious chants with his voice, and I, fascinated, watched him without understanding what was happening or what had happened. Lying on my back with the back of my neck resting on something soft and warm, I looked directly at him. The beautiful pair of gems masquerading as eyes reflected my sleepy face. At the bottom of that rubbered sea there was a flash. Fleeting and incomprehensible, Cranelson's gaze was silent, revealing nothing to be deciphered. Hey. At that moment, my mind began to function properly once again. I noticed the strange position I was in and the way Cranelson was looking down at me. Why did I feel like I was on her lap? Am I on your lap? Yeah, Aiz Wallenstein was ready to die without regrets. My face was burning, my ears were burning, I was burning, and my underwear was burning. Was this my moment? To my fanciful doubts, he said. Reveria said it's a way of apologizing. I'm sorry I was so harsh, Wallensteinson, so considerate. Was there anything this beautiful being couldn't do well? Personally, I doubted it. On the other hand, I was grateful to Miss Reveria for that teaching. I am eternally grateful. If receiving beatings meant the reward was a lap pillow from the love of my life, I would gladly receive beatings day after day. It hurt me a lot, more than you can imagine. But thank you, being able to receive training from you, I don't know how to repay you. My words drifted like my mother's wandering wind across the hill. Beyond the shame and shyness that Cranelson's mere presence overwhelmed me, my gratitude kept me calm. With that serenity and a strong determination, I got up from Cranelson's soft lap and stood in front of him. Seeing him from the height that separated us, I lowered my skirt. Huh. He showed genuine bewilderment, and his cheeks gradually turned a lovely pink. I know how to thank you, I said. My heart was beating so hard that it could jump out of my chest at any moment. Now get naked too. On the wall that bordered the mountains beyond the sunset, I put into practice the wise writings of my grandfather that I read in secret during my childhood. XXX. There was a loud bang, and the rough sound along with a squeal of pain spread through the room. Why are you hitting me, love? What do you think you're telling the children? Bellcranel, glaring angrily at his weeping wife who was stroking his head, asked somewhat angrily. The woman attacked. Aiz Wallenstein looked towards her children and then at Bell. What, you ask? Of course, the story of how we fell in love. There was another bang along with a cry of pain. Aiz, that never happened, she said coldly. Stop telling those things in front of the children, especially made-up things. Even though Bell hadn't actually applied any force, Aizu appeared to be suffering from a seizure while lying on the floor. Seeing his wife making such a scene, Bell sighed wearily. Stop making such a big deal out of it, you're scaring the children. He looked at his children, whose attention was focused on their convulsing mother. Seeing them both, Bell said in a low voice, shouldn't you be sleeping? Tomorrow is your first day at the academy. Asahi, Haruki, go to sleep. Yes, sir, they both replied. His authority as a father and his status as the strongest adventurer in history with countless achievements behind him had the desired effect. Wait, you idiot, more or less. Amid the chaos of terror caused by her gaze, the stricken Aizu stood up and looked suspiciously at her husband. Why are you talking to them like that? Do you want me to punish you, you heartless, cursed rabbit? At the most unexpected moment, a battle of glances erupted. Haruki and Asahi watched from their beds and were surprised to see their father back down in the face of their mother's growing anger. What kind of punishment did his mother mention that would make the strongest man in the world back down? Let me finish telling you this chapter. I promise you'll sleep after that. Their mothers will move them, and they felt the purest admiration for her. Belle, hesitant and unsure what to say, sighed for the second time. All right, she said softly. But if they're late tomorrow, the punishment will be for you, Aiz. Good for me, now come out, ogre. Belle left the room and it was momentarily silent. After a few seconds, Asahi and Haruki jumped out of their beds and ran to their mother. That was incredible. Mom, what kind of punishment terrified Dad so much? Excited shouts rang out and a victorious smile spread across Aiz's lips. She responded to them with an arrogant air. Fufu, it's a secret. Okay, let's continue with the story. Where was I? He took them both in his arms and carried them to one of the beds, remembering the exact part of the story. Just as I was about to remember, Asahi said. Where you abused your father? Yes, right there, Haruki confirmed. There was a short silence which was broken by Aiz's amused laughter. Ah ha ha, that was a lie. Well, actually I did try to seduce him that day, but he didn't even notice. Whoa, Dad can be really absent-minded. It is, Aiz affirmed to her daughter Haruki. His eyes reflected the effort he had made in the past to conquer the frozen heart of the being called Bellcranel. That was scary just now, wasn't it? He asked his children. Asahi and Haruki looked at her for a second before turning their gazes elsewhere, and in small murmurs they answered. Yes, but he would never hurt us, they affirmed in unison. Their father could be strict and someone who hardly speaks, however, they knew for sure that if they were with him, nothing bad would ever happen to them. They trusted that he would give his life for them, even though they didn't want to. Aizu, seeing the happy faces of his children, smiled wickedly. He lowered himself enough to whisper in their ears and said, Have you already forgotten that Bell killed his own aunt? What makes you think that just because they're family he won't do anything to you? In retrospect and in her defense, it was amusing for Aiz to see her children's pale faces. Seeing them completely silent and unable to move was priceless, however. Just kidding, just kidding. You know very well from a reliable source that it was due to special circumstances. And well, Bell carries the memory of his aunt with him every day. Seeing them cry wasn't his goal, so he lightened the mood and revealed his tasteless joke. Even so, joke or not, Asahi and Haruki had received quite a scare. Ignoring that fact, Aiz took them in her arms and cuddled them close, beginning to stroke their hair. Let's continue with the story. I promised his father just one more chapter for today. The atmosphere lightened, and as Aiz's lips formed a happy and charming smile while holding her children in her arms, Haruki asked, "How many chapters are needed for the hybrid invasion?" The academy entrance exam emphasized that event as a major crisis where many people died. Mother. Don't rush, we'll get to that chapter soon. For now, let's get on with my rematch against the Minotaur, shall we? Smiling sweetly, Aiz resumed the story as her children listened attentively. XXX. The breeze blew at the height of the great wall where we stood. I looked ahead. There was Kranelson looking at me just as I was looking at him. My hands gripped my jet black rapier engraved with runes and pointed it at him. Unlike me, Kranelson wasn't wielding anything resembling a weapon. Her indomitable stance seemed to tell me that her mere presence was enough to deal with me, a low-class adventurer with no experience whatsoever. "Attack," he said, with no emotion in his voice. I took an offensive stance and with a war cry ran towards Kranelson with all my might. From my perspective, it seemed to be breaking the sound barrier, advancing relentlessly with the tip of the rapier as a guide. That unbreakable, icicle-sharp point threatened to pierce anything or anyone that dared to cross its path. But Kranelson stopped that ominous sharp point with just his index finger and thumb, as if he were grabbing a small insect to examine it closely. "You. Then, similar to tapping a close friend on the forehead, he forced a strong gust of wind against my body and sent me flying through the air. What the hell was that? I thought, completely terrified. As it bounced painfully across the hard concrete surface, I couldn't believe that the act of flicking a marble with your fingers could cause a typhoon of such magnitude and power. Are you giving up? The question reached my ears from the distance that separated us. No, I replied, trembling violently from the pain in my body. Even so, I clarified my reasons. I won't give up. There's someone I must reach. Nothing beyond that matters to me. I stood up, eyeing with suspicion his imposing figure imbued with the indifference of a not-so-human human being. A monster is a monster, I said to myself bitterly. Don't get me wrong. I love Kranelson, but ignoring the fact of his monstrous strength was something I wasn't going to do. Accepting harsh realities was the first step to escaping the fantasy world. That's how I came to terms with it. Okay, then attack. Kranelson took a defensive stance and, unlike before, drew his sword. I froze momentarily. I didn't expect my body to tense up at the mere sight of Kranelson holding his sword. The sword with which he had taken so many lives in the Dark Age, and which was a symbol of fear and respect in the city. To say that my soul was shaken abruptly and cowardly was an understatement. My teeth chattered slightly and my hands sweated with fear. Here I come, I stammered, but that was all. I immediately braced my trembling legs, pointed at Kranelson, and cast the spell. Awaken, Tempest. For a brief moment, Kranelson's eyes lost their characteristic indifference and showed interest in the air currents surrounding my body. Powered to its fullest by the magic I had recently acquired, I launched my attack. The concrete surface beneath my feet shattered, and my body became one with the wind around me. I emptied all my reserves of magic and gathered them into a powerful attack in the hopes of pushing Kranelson back. The hurricane I created struck Kranelson's sword, and huge shockwaves spread in all directions. Emotion filled my body, and along with that emotion, the hope that I had made him take a step back. However, when the dust settled and the wind currents calmed, the scene before me shattered all the illusions that my innocent and incredulous mind had created. It's a joke. Kranelson stopped my attack with the tip of his sword. I wasn't exaggerating. The tip of his silver sword held the point of my jet-black rapier, nullifying any advance. "You have an interesting kind of magic," he said simply, "but you haven't explored all its possibilities." After that observation, he lightly pushed his sword against my rapier and, unbelievably, created a massive shockwave that sent me into the dream world instantly. Demons. Between the tightrope of my subconscious, I cursed. So far. I felt frustrated, cornered, and defeated, like a mouse envying a powerful hawk. Why are you so far away? As everything around me turned dark black, I could feel a slight moisture running down my cheeks. Hero.
XXX.
The next day and the day after that, I received beating after beating, from morning till night. Kranelson usually tried to be considerate, but that consideration was non-existent towards someone of my level. His consideration meant nothing to me, a pitiful weakness. That very thing made it seem as if he had no restraint whatsoever. What level would be able to feel his consideration? Maybe a late level 5. A level 1 like me had no idea about that. Do you want to see my magic? Yes, I want to see her. One day, after receiving my daily morning beating and waking from a long forced sleep, I made a request. Kranelson seemed hesitant at first, but after a few silent minutes he nodded slightly. A wave of excitement washed over me, erasing any trace of pain in my numb body. I lifted my head from her lap despite not wanting to and stood up. With a few excited jumps, I put some distance between us and waited patiently. What are you doing? Kranelson asked, confused. I bowed my head. What do I do, you ask? Of course, by keeping a safe distance, so that I remained silent. According to stories told in bars or anywhere else in the city and the world, Kranelson's magic is compared to hell. Although no one had ever seen hell itself, they assured that if there was one, it would strangely be similar to Kranelson's magic. I didn't understand it at first, but I soon did. Or rather, it would be better to say that Kranelson disappeared in a flash of white light like snow falling to the ground and reappeared next to me. It was different from the super speed that his high level as an adventurer granted him. Foolishly, I turned to him. He was beside me, holding my right shoulder. Our eyes met and he said, "If you want to see it, it will have to be somewhere far from here." I said I understood, but the truth was my confusion escalated to an even higher level. I flashed a silly grin as if to say okay, and a second later my body transformed into tiny white lights resembling snowflakes. XXX. Similar to being born for the second time, I looked around. Where am I? Majestic trees rose high into the air. Lush and numerous, they gave the impression of being submerged in a verdant sea. Listening to the sound of the wind rustling the leaves of these majestic trees, I looked at Kranelson for an explanation. Sensing the question in my eyes, he replied, "We are on the outskirts of Amorío, about 4 days away on horseback. What the hell? I mean, I'm not bothered by the idea of being kidnapped by the love of my life. In fact, the idea fascinated me. Was this where I'd lose my virginity, then we'd build a cabin by the river and have 2 kids? Not bad at all." However, I looked at the vast forest once more. What the hell? By that I meant the unexpected part, 4 days on horseback. I just closed my eyes and in a split second we were here. "It's my ability," Kranelson said, noticing my astonishment. "Dimensional movement allows me to go to places I've already been in exchange for an absurd amount of mana."
Is there such a thing as a skill? That's crazy.
Rather, how monstrous were Kranelson's mana reserves to allow him to make use of this ability? Most likely, my eyes reflected so much admiration that they began to shine with a beautiful gold. This very unusual ability helped me to ignore the fact that I was alone with the man I love in a forest where no one could hear us. How many possibilities? I wondered deep down. "So will I be able to see your magic here?" Yeah, I stopped daydreaming and followed Kranelson. After walking a short distance, we emerged from the vast forest of majestic trees. Whoa. I was amazed. Before me lay the landscape of a plain. Vibrantly colored flowers and green pastures swayed in the breeze. Ready? I'll begin. I can't wait. I stood there, watching Kranelson's back recede as he walked into the center of the fairytale-like plain. Flames of creation, origin of all. Whispering like the icy breeze of dusk, Kranelson began to conjure. His ominous voice echoed across the plain and reached me. Wait. At that moment I realized something. What will happen to this plain? Suddenly, as Kranelson continued conjuring, my face turned pale at the image of the result in my head. Wait. Despite shouting as I ran towards him, it was useless. His spell was about to end, and my foolish self, blaming herself for asking for such a thing, could do nothing to stop it. However, Gehenna Infernus. The flames conjured by Kranelson illuminated nothing more than the tip of his index finger. There was no reincarnated hell, much less a scorching heat. "Ready," he said, as calm as ever. "This is my most powerful magic." I looked at the flame, no bigger than that of a votive candle, swaying on the tip of her finger. It seemed as if the slightest breeze or breath of wind would bring about its instant death. That's how fragile it looked. She's beautiful. I wasn't joking. That flame, as faint as it looked, completely captured my attention. I walked toward it, absorbed by the blazing reddish-orange color. "Do you think it's beautiful?" Kranelson asked. I could only nod in response. I took another step, followed by another, each time getting closer to Kranelson. Having almost reached a meter away, I replied, "Your flames are beautiful, Kranelson." Before I could fully reach out to embrace that enchanting flame dancing on his finger, Kranelson pointed to the sky and fired it. What followed, believe it or not, made me doubt everything possible in the world. The sun had been setting for a while, so the sky was showing dark tones, giving way to nightfall. It was unbelievable that this small, weak flame rose up to the clouds and lit up the sky. I wasn't exaggerating. It was as if I were experiencing a step back in time. The previous night had momentarily returned to a red sunset, the sky. I was mesmerized by the scene. Burns. Now he understood the concept of a reincarnated hell, or rather the name of his magic, Gehenna Infernus. The sky was on fire and I couldn't stop staring. My eyes refused to tear themselves away from that amazing and maddening sight. Incredible. Before I could even notice, tears welled in my eyes from the emotion I felt. The clouds were now flames and the sky glowed a fiery orangerd. "What a beautiful view," I said finally, before falling silent to witness the wonder of the scene until the end. Time became relative as I focused on the blazing sky, and at a certain moment, as the fire subsided and night returned, Kranelson said in a low voice,
You're the first to say my flames are beautiful. I immediately went back to see him. Her eyes, beautiful as the finest rubies, observed me with a strange feeling of complication. For the first time, his eyes didn't show that usual indifference. How to explain it? He seemed surprised, but at the same time relieved. What's wrong? I asked shyly with a silly smile. You're looking at me strangely. I didn't get an answer that day, and nothing like one in the future. I only sensed that my words, those that flattered his flames, had a significant effect on Kranelson. The possibility of a comparison crossed my mind. Perhaps everyone had shown fear in his flames, or something akin to the tearful respect born of trauma. Perhaps after using them so often in previous battles, he had convinced himself that his flames inspired terror. I didn't know. It's time to go back. Let's go. Okay. But seriously, you're amazing, Kranelson. You definitely deserve the title of hero. Oh, really? I simply followed him while offering a small compliment to him, who was holding my shoulder so we could reach Amorío once again. XXX. Okay, but seriously, you're amazing, Kranelson. You definitely deserve the title of hero. Oh, really? Wallenstein, you don't understand anything. How can I explain to you that I'm tired of continuing to fight? How can I explain to you that it's getting harder and harder for me to keep everything under control? I'd like to explain to you how I live each day with a mind that wants to die, but with a soul that has been fighting all its life. With a heart that to this day beats on autopilot. You should understand that a smile on my face doesn't mean I'm okay, much less that I'm the best. If you read between the lines, you'll understand that it's just a survival mechanism because it's better to laugh in public than to cry. That was the confession of a mask, one that he wore every day. XXX. A door opened, and after the creaking of the hinges, Aiz Wallenstein entered the room. She walked slowly and silently, managing to get into bed without waking her husband. Didn't you say just one chapter, Aiz? At least that was his intention. After hearing the question from the serious bellcranel, Aiz hugged him from behind and, while rubbing his body against his, answered in a joking tone. Well, it was just one, albeit a long one, teh.
Hey, don't get mad.
In what was a serious conversation between lovers, Aiz caressed Belle's marked body with desire under the sheets. The days had been peaceful since the end of the last battle, and she savored each one with joyful happiness. Having fulfilled her dreams was a way of living life, and relishing that victory, she murmured in her lover's ear. You should be gentler with the children, they'll think you're heartless, he spat. Well, you were, but not anymore, right? What are you so afraid of, darling? I don't know. I don't know how to deal with them or how to be normal. I think I'm afraid of letting my guard down, and that when I do, they'll suffer because of my carelessness. Distant memories drifted through Belle's train of thought. The struggle he had personally endured to make his sister happy, as well as his sister's own misfortune. He had no happy family experiences, as his mother and father had died shortly after his birth. On the other hand, the closest he had ever felt to family was running his own aunt through with his sword. For bellcranel, a lost and fearful young man who was afraid of beings called humans, it was difficult to play a good role as a father. I see, Aiz said bluntly without a trace of empathy. You're still clumsy, Belle. Have you thought about that, about how clumsy you are?
Hee, I was just kidding.
A playful giggle sounded, and Aiz let her hands wander between caresses over Belle's upper body. Look, you have to understand that being a good father isn't about acting like one. Just be yourself. They already admire the real you, so you don't have to pretend to be someone else. Even if you don't show emotion towards them, they know perfectly well that you love them. I mean, just like me, you'd give your life for them, wouldn't you? Love has many interpretations as well as many ways to show it. You talk a lot, you know. You still married me, you idiot, Belle smiled slightly. He enjoyed his beloved's delicate touches as he pondered her words. The truth was, he agreed with her. To show affection, it didn't necessarily have to be done in one way. There were so many possibilities that depending on each person they changed and were modified. Thank you, she said softly. I think I'm fine now. The truth is that bellcranel wasn't a bad father, much less a bad person. He was simply withdrawn and antisocial, unworthy of being able to express himself properly. Aiz, smiling sweetly, gently let go. I expected nothing less from my words. Now come, I'll give you your reward for tonight. The sheets shifted due to all the movement, and only the two of them knew what had happened that night. Chapter 9, So it's you. I like people who carry a storm in their soul. Those who have suffered all their lives, those who have something to say, Ingvild Kranel. XXX. The wind darted like a hair along the wall. It was midday and the sun was high in the blue sky painted with white clouds. Guha. Beneath that fairytale scene, Aiz was brutally massacred. It was almost ironic or terrifying. Her hair spread across her face like roots underground as her chest rose and fell in a vain attempt to catch her breath. Ha ha. Her whole body ached. Every breath that escaped her lips sounded like a groan agonizing under torture. Are you okay? But all that pain disappeared as soon as she heard his voice, bellcranel's voice, or so little Aiz forced herself to believe. Absolutely, love was capable of great things. In this case, it made a young woman who hated pain able to endure it for the sake of her love. Yes, I'm fine, that was a lie. Aizu wasn't well, and it wasn't an exaggeration to think she might be suffering from severe internal bleeding. Her golden eyes blurred and the sky before her eyes became hazy and opaque. She concluded that she was losing consciousness. "I'm fine," she whispered to herself. But even if she forced herself to believe that, and even if she bit her lip hard until it bled to force herself not to fall asleep, her body demanded rest. It wasn't a matter of will or determination, it was a matter of severe, unending exhaustion. I feel like I'm going to faint." His mind flickered into a vague drowsiness. She lay on her back against the concrete floor. She knew it was a hard surface, but her body was so numb from the pain and exhaustion that she felt as if she were resting on a fluffy cloud. "Let's take a break, you look like you're dying, and no, I can continue." She said that, but just moving her lips made her want to scream in pain. She felt Belle's gaze, and refusing to show a pathetic state in front of the person she loved, Aizu tried to stand up. But it was only an attempt. The instant he moved his arm, she had to clench her teeth tightly to stifle a scream. Rest, she didn't know when, but her head had been lifted by Belle's gentle hands and placed on his lap. On second thought, yes, I should rest. She was supposed to be writhing in pain, but Aizu's lips curled into a malicious, satisfied smile as Belle began to stroke her hair. Phew, what others would give for this. She climbed onto a pedestal and stayed there, believing herself superior to all the women who longed for the affection of the famous bellcranel. Her eyes crinkled cutely as she gazed at Belle's beautiful face and asked in a whisper, "Can I sleep?" "Of course, I'll take care of you, rest." Her voice was like a tranquilizer, granting her the greatest peace. Her heart calmed and her chest felt warm. She wanted to laugh tenderly, but she was afraid that would make Belle take it as a "I'm better now" and stop cuddling her. The price was high, but it was worth being beaten if I received a good deal in the end. "I'll wake you up in 20 minutes. Okay." Displaying a satisfied and adorable smile, Aizu fell completely asleep on the lap of the most coveted man in Amorío. If a woman saw them, the news would travel to every corner of the city in less than an hour, and within the next hour, alive or dead posters with Aizu's portrait would be hung up. Even so, her peaceful, sleepy face reflected no concern whatsoever about that deadly possibility. XXX. After 20 minutes had passed, they both returned to training. It was the last day of the 7-year engagement and the sun was already beginning to set. Even so, despite a hint of sadness on her face, Aizu was grateful. The training was bound to end, but she could feel that the 7 days within this wall hadn't been in vain. He felt it in his body. He was more agile, faster, and stronger. He could use a wide variety of attacks, and his swordsmanship was vastly superior to what it had been 7 days ago, all thanks to bellcranel. Here, I made it for you." Aizu held out a lunch box sealed in a blue rag, and Belle tilted his head in confusion as he looked at the outstretched box. As if noticing this confusion, Aizu explained in detail, "It's a lunch I made myself, a way of saying thank you, I suppose." She gave an embarrassed smile. Her cheeks were flushed a lovely pink, and her eyes darted around with a restless moisture. "Of course, if you don't want it, that's fine. No, I'll take it." Aizu was captivated when Belle flashed a slight smile as he took the lunch from her hands. She felt her heart stop at such beauty. At Belle's direction, and because training had ended, they both took a seat on the concrete surface and leaned their backs against the half-wall of the rampart. Aizu watched with anticipation as Belle slowly opened the lunchbox she had so painstakingly prepared. To say her golden eyes sparkled was no exaggeration. Yes, his heart stopped when Belle finally opened the box. Aizu waited silently for the first impression, but it stabbed him in the back. "Are you trying to poison me?" "Hey." He fell face first against the concrete of the wall. From the tone in Belle's voice, she could tell he wasn't mocking her, but it was that same purity in the question that hurt her so much. It wasn't an exaggeration either. The contents of the lunchbox were a toxic purple color, and every few seconds they bubbled in an unappetizing way. What was that? Not even Aizu knew. He could only say that it was the result of having followed to the letter a recipe from Jugamaru-kun that he got from Hestia. Why it ended this way was a complete mystery that not even the best detective could solve. "I'm sorry, I'm not very good at cooking." A dark, oppressive aura enveloped his entire body as he apologized to the quiet Belle. He continued to stare at the content of unknown origin with troubled eyes. He tended to be insensitive, but he rarely realized that his words could hurt people, as in this case. But realizing this and being aware wouldn't make him devour what was in his hands. All he could offer was a little comfort. "Don't worry, I'm not a good cook either." That was a lie, but Belle didn't have to be truthful. He just had to make Aizu believe he understood her situation even if it wasn't true. It was one of the few useful lessons Loki had given him. Oh really? Their deterrence worked perfectly. Aizu's body surged with enough energy to rival the sun. Her sudden mood swings were something Belle had grown accustomed to. Yeah, he nodded with a half-smile. He looked ahead, slightly upwards. There, a reddish sky painted by the sunset was visible. Belle knew that very soon they would have to say goodbye, but he felt reluctant to do it. "Wallenstein, yes, what is it?" Aizu looked at him with a lovely smile, but Belle was not reluctant to say goodbye for fear of never seeing that radiant, pure smile again. In these 7 days, he got to know her better, and could easily say that Aiz Wallenstein was not a bad person. She was a bit silly and absent-minded. She used to smile at the smallest things, and she used to get embarrassed when she realized it. He displayed great determination and an unwavering will of unknown origin. Despite being sensitive to pain, she gritted her teeth and endured it in order to become stronger. Bellcranel concluded that Aiz Wallenstein was a person worth getting to know. But all that was not the reason for his refusal to say goodbye. You. Looking her directly in the eyes, Belle asked what she had suspected for days. Do you have unwavering desire? There was silence. The radiant smile gradually faded and then transformed into a flat expression accompanied by a confused look. Then, with all the purity and stupidity in the world, he tilted his head. Unwavering desire, what's that? She wasn't lying or pretending not to know. Her eyes showed that she genuinely didn't know what Belle was talking about, but that didn't make sense. Belle didn't answer and looked up at the sky again. He was lost in thought, searching for a coherent response. His growth rate is 10 times higher than that of a normal adventurer. He's similar to me, so he must have the same abilities. His understanding of techniques and his fighting instincts are also extraordinary, so.
Yes, it didn't make sense. It just can't be.
The only possible explanation was that the goddess Hestia had deliberately hidden the ability from her own daughter. In short, Hestia's trust in Aizu was as small as an ant. It could be an indication of Aizu's honesty or of his stupidity, his inability to keep a secret. I see, hey, what's up? What's unbreakable desire? Belle turned his gaze back to Aizu. The little princess, ignorant of reality, tilted her head, seeking an answer, but Belle had no intention of revealing the truth. Instead, he asked, "Tell me, what is your desire?" Belle knew how to obtain unbreakable desire, and understood that depending on the desire of its bearer's heart, everything indicated whether it was good or bad. But he had no doubt that Aizu's desire was pure and sincere. Otherwise, he wouldn't know how to explain the naivete that Aizu exuded daily. But hey. She looked surprised as she opened her eyes as wide as possible and her face turned a fiery red. My longing. Her voice rose an octave as wisps of smoke billowed from her head and ears. It was in its purest form embarrassment and nervousness. What? Yes, your longing. What is it that your heart desires most? Wawa. Belle was confused by Aizu's reaction. She seemed to have stopped functioning and her body was shaking from head to toe. Why was she acting like this? Belle had no idea. The closest thing to an answer was thinking that saying what she longed for would embarrass her. But Belle didn't believe that a wish could be so selfless. If he took his example, which was to defeat the Black Dragon and save his sister, then Aizu shouldn't be so different. Aizu, on the other hand. What do I say to him? I can't tell him that my desire is to marry him and have children with him. He'll think I'm too intense. She was deliberating whether or not to tell the confused Belle what her heart longed for. No, besides seeing me as weird, she'll think I'm a pervert. Is that okay? I'm not a pervert, but I can't deny that I do want to have her children, Grandma. What should I do? On the outside, he was a bundle of nerves, but on the inside, his thoughts were developing at an overwhelming speed. She remembered that her grandmother Hera had once told her something like, if you ever fall in love with someone, tie them down with a child. Or was it her grandfather? Her memories were hazy. In any case, the situation was serious. She didn't want to confess her feelings now because she still felt unworthy of it, but she also didn't want to leave Belle without an answer. If that's the way things are then. The only possible solution was to give him an answer without doing it. There's someone. He didn't need to confess, but he could make it clear that he was looking for something. There is someone I want to reach. It is my desire to walk beside them. That's why I want to become stronger. I want to be able to look him in the eyes and tell him without any shame how I feel. That. He felt a pang in his chest. It didn't hurt, nor was it unbearable or uncomfortable. She felt that twinge was gradually making her smile as her nervous state eased. Little by little, that is my wish. Her lips formed a beautiful smile, and Belle noticed that smile. He couldn't fully understand it, but he thought it was a good wish. I see, he said, looking up at the sky. But he thought for a moment. She even considered saying something to him. Some advice, something to help her with the longing she carried in her heart. But she didn't think of a good one. Rather than motivating her, what she thought of would help her be cautious. Even so, I had to say it. Never say you admire someone if you have never seen their anger, their bad habits, their absurd beliefs, and their contradictions. Yeah, Bellcranel was the type of person who couldn't give motivational advice. The harsh and sad experiences of his life gave him the gift of offering skeptical advice that would help people not to feel so disappointed in the end. Advice that would protect illusions when reality shattered them. He thought about it while admiring the sunset. Everyone can love a sunset and joy, only a few are capable of loving chaos and decay. It wasn't hard to understand, so easy that even Aizu looked down at the concrete floor while thinking about those words. It's true, it made sense. Each person was a world unto themselves, millions of worlds walking on top of one. You couldn't be sure of the contents of one of those worlds, nor did you know if your life would be long enough to finish exploring it. However, but I think that's okay. If when that time comes I'm not able to love chaos and decay, I just have to learn how. It was a foolish ideal, and Belle would even go so far as to say it was naive. But Aizu didn't see it that way. If I am not capable of that, then I have no right to complain if in the end the beautiful sunset turns into a desolate and silent night. Belle looked at her. The reddish rays of sunset illuminated Aizu's entire body, including his face. The golden sheen of her hair and eyes stood out with an ephemeral beauty, giving the image of natural purity. Seeing her as such, Belle smiled. I see, and he could understand that his wait was finally over. So it's you. The person he had been waiting for, the one who would help him in his victory over the draconian nightmare, was already in the city.
XXX.
In the end, Belle didn't eat the lunch prepared by Aizu, and she wasn't offended by it either. After all, it wasn't something she ate. So Wallensteinson, actually I must confess something. It was when they were both going down the interior stairs of the wall. As they walked side by side, Belle stopped just before stepping out onto the city streets and under the protection of the wall, confessed. Actually, I'm not a level 7. It was too sudden and unexpected. My true level is level 10. He wasn't given a chance to process it properly either. It was unfair. He couldn't catch up, much less give a response. Aizu only knew that her body had frozen while Belle stared at her and continued confessing. Loki kept it a secret from the guild on my orders. I've been level 10 for a while now, and I've confirmed that it's the maximum level humans can reach. My statistics stop being numbers and only show the letters max in each development skill. I reached my limit. I can't get any stronger. My strength isn't enough to defeat the Black Dragon either. I tried and I failed. But you've arrived. I will be your teacher. I will help you become stronger just like I did. Then when you know the truth about your ability, I will tell you everything. That was all he said, but Aizu didn't understand. Level 10, he didn't seem to be joking, reaching his limit. The idea that the promised hero had a limit was absurd, but it didn't seem like a joke either. Did he try and fail? What did he mean? Aizu's brain processed everything as best it could, but refused to believe the conclusion it had reached. Wait. Finally, he could move. He stretched out his arm, trying to find Belle in more ways than one. I'll see you soon. But he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only Aizu remained inside the wall. He could do nothing more. His still body regained its mobility an hour later when night had already fallen. Kranelson. Her mind began searching for answers but failed. Nor did she realize that her body began walking on its own as her thoughts became turbulent in a futile attempt to understand what Belle had told her. He looked for him the next day but couldn't find him. This continued until in the middle of her daily exploration in the dungeon she was able to meet him again. Are you okay? But not in the best way. XXX. The morning after that day, I woke up as usual to get ready and go to the dungeon. Although I must say it wasn't like usual. Actually, I couldn't sleep. I spent the whole night thinking about the words Kranelson had said. My eyes were burning, but I couldn't lie in bed and ignore my daily tasks. I still don't understand it, but what I do know is. I brushed my teeth and washed my face. I undressed and dressed in my combat suit and light armor, and I also brushed my hair. I must become strong. I had a light breakfast, and after reaffirming my determination, I took my rapier and went out into the city streets. My destination was the dungeon. I had to further improve my recently upgraded status and reach level 2. She knew it, she was being arrogant. She'd only been an adventurer for a month, but she could feel it. Beyond my super high stats, I could feel that I was already capable of achieving a feat that would make me level up. Following that feeling, I had an encounter with death. Vuyuwarg. It was that beast, that monster that almost took my life a month ago. What was she doing here on the 9th floor? The information Einasen provided me made it clear that her home floor is the 16th. So what was I doing here? I am possible. I noticed my legs were trembling. The Minotaur carried a great sword. Why did he have a sword? Why was he in a state of frenzy and madness? Why couldn't I move? Lillison Kor Hoot. I can't leave her behind, Aizu-sama. When I became aware of being frozen, I screamed at Lillison, begging her to run away. She was a young Palom girl introduced by Einasen as a support character. Our relationship had only lasted about 10 days at most, but she was trustworthy enough for me to call her a friend. Also, according to what she told me, Kranelson had saved her from the Soma family a few years ago. Just run. I couldn't ignore her attempt to stay and forced myself to shout louder. She trembled instantly, but upon seeing me, she backed away slightly and ran toward the cave's exit. Lily will seek help. Please hold on. She was crying, and she was probably using the idea of finding help as an excuse. That was fine, if she was safe then. No, I felt chills running down my spine. A wave of strength coursed through my body, and clenching my teeth tightly, I forced myself to jump back. Bam! The next instant, the great sword fell like a guillotine on the place where it had been. Hey! The impact raised a cloud of dust and sent several pieces of debris flying alongside my body, pushed by the air currents. I could do nothing against the fierce air currents, and my body was thrown until it hit a wall and cracked it. Gah-ah. I felt my back crack from the impact, and my throat began to burn as a mouthful of blood shot out and stained the stony ground. Boosh! The Minotaur snorted as I fell to my knees, clutching my chest. The hand holding my rapier trembled while I could barely feel the other. Was this fear? I was seriously confused. I was supposed to be stronger, and my stats were at a level that even Heshiya-sama considered insane. So why can't I stop trembling? I looked up hesitantly at the monster before me. Its red eyes overflowed with madness, and its skin was different from that of the Minotaur that almost took my life a month ago. It just can't be. Was it a mutation? I'd never heard of an irregular Minotaur on the upper floors. It was crazy. Damn it, am I going to die? She kept trembling. I could tell it was a trauma. A trauma. Apparently I had one. I could accept that I was terrified the time the Minotaur almost took my life, but I was so shocked I froze that I'd actually suffered trauma from that experience. Damn it. I started cursing as I slowly backed away, but soon my back hit the wall of the 9th floor room. The only things I could do were move forward and die, or not move and die. It's not funny. It's not funny at all. Before I knew it, a feeling other than fear began to mix with my body. Do you think it was anger? She was trembling with fear, but she was also trembling with anger. You think you can stop me from marrying Kranelson, you damn cow? I clenched my teeth tightly and my hand on the rapier's hilt regained its firmness. My eyes bloodshot, and without a second thought, I launched my attack. I'll kill you. The tip of the jet-black rapier drew a firm, straight thrust, but it was not enough to pierce the monster's thick hide. Foowash. The great sword cut through the air horizontally, so I ducked my body low enough that my hair touched the ground, and I barely managed to dodge. I'll kill you and get over this trauma. I wasn't going to lie, nor was I going to boast. My body was permeated with fear, but anger propelled it forward. I used that anger along with everything I learned from Kranelson all this past week. So, awakened Tempest, I decided it was best to go all in, and my back started to burn. XXX. Reality was not so kind. Goo, it wasn't normal. The main characteristic of a Minotaur is brute strength, but it was still far from normal. This monster's strength easily tripled what was considered normal. My body. Aiz Wallenstein realized this when she heard the sound of her bones cracking little by little. The brute force was so destructive that, even when successfully dodging attacks, Aizu would receive cuts from the simple air pressure caused by centrifugal force. Ha ha. She raised her gaze weakly. The invincible opponent walked towards her, dragging the great sword. That rough metallic screech made her tremble with fear. One step, then another step, followed by another. Their rough, muscular legs made the ground tremble beneath their feet, and with that the trauma resurfaced on Aizu's broken surface. His spirit was broken, and not because he was weak. Haha. He just had the bad luck of facing a stronger opponent. XXX. It was just as Otter predicted. Watching from a safe distance, the enormous bows closed both eyes and sighed. He knew this would be the inevitable outcome. You do not deserve the goddess's love. Disappointed by this fact, just as he was about to leave the place without trying to save Aizu's life, he heard a voice. Are you okay? No, it wasn't a voice, it was that voice. It was thanks to his enhanced top-tier senses that he was able to pick up the murmured question even from a safe distance. But again, the problem was that that voice belonged to that man, bellcranel, XXX. Just as her vision began to blur, Aizu's eyes caught sight of a person's back. The great sword that threatened to take his life was repelled by that person's bare hand, and the strong impact sent the Minotaur flying. Kranelson. Her vision cleared. She was confused, yes, but she would never mistake that person's back. Beyond having spent a significant amount of time training with him, Aizu felt that nothing could harm him behind that back. It was a feeling of absolute security that only a man could cause in her. Are you okay? Belle turned back to look at her as she knelt on one knee and extended a hand to help Aizu. She was so absorbed in Belle's voice and face that nothing else mattered, not even her serious injuries. Seeing her in such a trance-like state, he grimaced. It was difficult and he thought he had hallucinated, but Aizu spotted the frown on Belle's face. If so, did that mean he was upset about her? He felt his chest suddenly grow warm. It was when he was thinking about it and even having fantasies in such a serious situation that Belle spoke again. Don't worry, I'll protect you. It was ironic. What Aizu longed for most was this. She desired the protection of her hero, that he be with her and take care of her like a prince takes care of his princess. I dreamed about it constantly, for covering myself. That's why it was ironic that her most cherished wish made her feel pathetic. He felt a pressure in his chest, and something similar to termites gnawing at every pore of his skin as Belle turned his back on him and took a step towards the Minotaur that had been sent flying, and now looked at the scene with fearful eyes. He seemed annoyed at being interrupted in his fight with Aizu, but he didn't have enough willpower to resist the terrifying presence emanating from the white-haired adventurer. No, was it even possible that anyone could resist such pressure? Aizu knew that, and if yesterday's confession was true, she was sure that there was no one who could oppose bellcranel. No, Therefore, even against her deepest desire, Aizu reached out and took Belle's hand. Despite the excruciating pain throughout her body, she forced herself to endure it. His throat was soaked with his own blood squeezed from his damaged organs, but despite feeling a torturous burning sensation, he screamed with all his might, "You don't need to protect me." Saying such words was absurd. Many would kill to have the place she now held, Aizu knew that, but she couldn't let herself be controlled by her desires. Not after hearing what he heard yesterday. He said, "I'm the person he's been waiting for." What kind of woman would stoop to being a protege when the man she loves expects so much from her? It was stupid, of course. Humans often didn't understand that retreating wasn't the same as surrendering. Sometimes to move forward forcefully you had to step back to gain some momentum. It wasn't a pathetic performance. It wasn't embarrassing, much less unpleasant. But Aizu, even knowing all of that, refused to back down. Even if it would help her in the future, she didn't want to retreat in this fight. Kranelson. For that very reason, despite it being difficult, Aizu told that all-powerful man to go away. It is forbidden to steal another adventurer's prize. The rubbered eyes didn't react. There wasn't a hint of pride, disappointment, or concern. They were perfectly indifferent eyes. It was a curt reaction, and that hurt Aizu's heart, but she knew she had brought it on herself. "It doesn't matter if it's you, don't get involved in my fight." What was she doing? Aizu wanted to cut out her tongue to stop saying so many stupid things. Outwardly she displayed a dignified and courageous expression, but inwardly she was crying like a lost child for being so cruel to her hero, who was only trying to protect her. That inner image even shed snot. "Please step aside." She pressed her lips together as if she didn't want to say the next word. "You're in the way." But she said it without any hesitation. Perhaps it was due to the adrenaline of the moment, but he would possibly commit suicide once he regained his sanity and the pain, which acted as a sedative for his body, faded away. They looked at each other for a couple of seconds, and despite being the victim of that cold, rubbered gaze, Aizu's eyes did not waver. "I see." At that moment, Belle closed both eyes and sheathed his silver sword. The metallic sound grated between the rocky walls of the dungeon, and as it was fully in the scabbard, he bowed. "I'm sorry to interrupt." After that, he walked slowly away from Aizu. She watched him go, and as his back receded, she pressed her lips together tightly. It was then that he realized the existence of more presences in the dungeon room. The vast majority of the executives of the Loki family were there. "Can I see well?" It was Finn Damney, alias Braver. "Captain, would you like me to rub your eyelids?" Argo-kun was rejected. They were Tyone and Tiona Hurut, Aka Jormungand and Amazon. "I respect your decision, but the tomato is going to die." Biteloga, alias Vanargand, Reveria Eljas Alf, Aka 9 Hells, and in her arms. Lillisen. An unconscious hobbit. Aizu was able to understand how they had gotten here and felt relief and joy upon seeing that her companion was all right. In any case, she now had an audience. Even knowing what she had said and believing that she had rejected a position coveted by many women, Aizu turned her attention back to the Minotaur. "I must win." Losing was not an option after he had cast aside the hero's protection. Even if he lost and died, he would not accept help. She was sure that if, being on the verge of death, she was saved, Aizu would later take her own life out of shame. That's why winning was the only option. XXX. There was silence. Aizu took hold of his rapier, reinforcing his grip so tightly that he felt the bones in his fingers grinding. Before her stood the Minotaur. A monster already too strong for level 1 adventurers, now abnormally stronger. "Now I said that, but how am I going to win?" His legs still hadn't regained the strength needed to assume a good attack stance, and the bones in his arms trembled as he held the weapon and himself. Everything indicated that he was at his limit, and that the result of this fight would end with his defeat. "No, don't think that." She sighed and took another breath. She needed to calm herself if she wanted to survive this battle. Even if she said she wouldn't accept help, she also wouldn't accept dying like a fool after refusing Belle's help. Thud, thud, a sound brought her back to reality. The Minotaur had lightly stamped its hooves on the rocky ground. It almost seemed to be challenging her, judging by the disgusting snort it let out. "You piece of." She had heard rumors, but the fact that anger acted as a painkiller was a fact. Having verified it for herself, Aizu gritted her teeth and raised the tip of her rapier against the beast. Awakened tempest. The shearing wind currents swirled around it and formed a protective barrier. The gusts gave the impression of a mini tornado with enough force to tear through steel. The Minotaur snorted with what sounded like a mocking laugh, and Aizu knew why. After all, she had already been defeated even using her magic. "This isn't enough. I need more destructive power." Even as the destructive gallop of the Minotaur, along with the edge of the great sword, drew near, Aizu did not stop concentrating. He remembered the training. The time he attacked Belle with all his magical power, as well as his words after stopping his powerful attack with just the tip of his sword. "You have an interesting magic, but you haven't yet discovered all its possibilities." It wasn't just empty words, of that she was certain. There was undoubtedly a hidden message, something like a sign. The best interpretation Aizu could give of those words in this life-or-death situation was, "It is malleable." Aizu remembered the spells of her mother, a primordial spirit. With just a swing of her arms, she was able to create powerful cyclones. The wind was powerful, extremely powerful. View. The Minotaur let out a roar that echoed throughout the dungeon room and the walls trembled roughly. Aizu's ears rang and he almost felt them bleeding. He wondered how a single Minotaur could exude such pressure with just a roar. Fiuush. The edge of the great sword sliced through the air. The iron blade sought Aizu's neck, but she barely managed to retreat. A pair of golden strands levitated in the air before falling to the ground like a feather. The monster was swift. Too fast for his large body. Calm down, breathe, don't lose your cool. But even if he thought that, his heart was beating so fast and hard that it could jump out of his chest at any moment. Her skin prickled every time the great sword grazed her body, as did the pressure of the slashing air that made her recoil. He took 2 steps back. Drops of crystalline sweat adorned his face and mingled with the traces of blood oozing from his wounds. Her labored breathing grew increasingly heavy. Maintaining good posture was difficult and painful. Her muscles ached. Ha ha. But he couldn't back down. He concentrated so intensely that the people watching from a distance ceased to exist. The world turned pure white and before her stood her only enemy, the Minotaur, weapon in hand. He became their target. It was like an indestructible rock fortress that his rapier could not pierce. If I can, he thought and dodged. The great sword drew countless silver crescent moons in the air and the blasts of air sent everything flying. Before he knew it, Aizu was in the middle of a barrage of attacks, and these attacks created gusts of powerful, cutting wind all around him. Just as he said if he could, she didn't know why, but her back was burning fiercely. Her blurred vision gradually cleared, and the excruciating pain that attacked her body with the slightest movement lessened with each passing second. Soon, there was a collision. The tip of the jet-black rapier struck with a powerful thrust into the flat part of the great sword, and a cracking sound was heard. The great sword was split in 2 from the middle, and both pieces flew off in different directions. The large, redirected piece of metal struck the rocky ground and raised a cloud of dust, as well as sending debris flying like fiery projectiles. Kahaha. The stone projectiles were reduced to dust by the wind shield surrounding Aizu. It was a relief as well as luck, but it still hurt. Its wind was still weak. That made her feel frustrated. Not being able to use cyclones like her mother saddened her beyond measure, and a feeling of helplessness took over her body. But if I can't exert power throughout my entire body, I can simply concentrate it all in one place. The answer was obvious. It would enhance destructive force as well as penetrating power. Amidst the rain of powerful bare-knuckle attacks from the Minotaur, Aizu undid the wind shield protecting his body. Hey, has she gone crazy? The idiot is going to die. Bitef flashed a mocking, cheeky grin from a distance. It was obvious to him as he was a top-tier adventurer. Even though he was surprised by the fact that Aizu was facing an irregular Minotaur while still being level 1, he didn't miss the opportunity to make an insulting comment. Besides, it was irritating. She couldn't say too much with Belle right there beside her. It was clear he was interested in that girl, and making him angry was the last thing she wanted. It was a good attempt, he said in what was almost a whisper. In a way, it was unfortunate. Aizu showed potential, but he was about to die because of a stupid mistake. However, foosh. Air currents swirled at the tip of the jet-black rapier. That was definitely a compressed cyclone. That windy force distorted the space around him, and he was directed towards the Minotaur, who had retreated a few steps due to the pressure of the suppressed wind. Human and beast looked at each other. The golden eyes reflected a monstrous body overflowing with rage, and the crazed red eyes reflected a beautiful face with wounds, but with an unyielding gaze. It was as if time stood still as they advanced towards each other with their most powerful attacks. Aizu cut through the wind with his sword in hand, as well as the swirling cyclone at the tip that threatened to pierce through everything. The Minotaur advanced on all fours with a powerful charge. Its horns, whose hardness and lethality were its greatest pride, were pointed at the human. Vuyu, Lil Rafaga, they both collided. There was a blast of wind that spread to every corner of the room, and then a large cloud of dust rose to the ceiling. Debris flew this way and that like shards of metal tearing through everything. Those watching bellcranel and his friends squinted. The cloud of dust covered everything. It was impossible for a normal person to know the outcome or even predict what was happening at the center of that chaos, but Belle smiled. It wasn't a broad smile, much less a recognizable one. It was slight, so slight that one would think it was an illusion. It has grown. He had arrived. She could confirm it now, the person she had been waiting for so long, the one who would help her fulfill a wish. He knew at the instant the dust settled and revealed the result of the battle. The monster was cut in 2 and the princess gasped victoriously with trails of smoke rising from her skin. Even his breath was visible and the wind currents unfurled into nothing. The silence was serene. Breathing could be heard perfectly, yet at the same time it couldn't. It sounded dry. Did he succeed? Dry and gruff. Biteloga's voice sounded similar to that of a skeptic witnessing something paranormal. Of course, it was unexpected. The outfit Aiz Wallenstein wore was not dignified. His body was covered in numerous bleeding wounds. Dust settled here and there, giving him a dirty and haggard appearance. Cold sweat trickled down his back and every other part of his body, mingling with the dirt. She didn't look like a princess. She was the image of a warrior, one who had overcome trauma. Her lips trembled impatiently as that last breath escaped from between them, and so unexpectedly she was left without strength. Her body lost all stability and she fell forward, her back to the ceiling. No one caught her, not even Bell. He could have done it, but he refrained. To the very end, he respected the girl's wishes. A level 1 brat beat an irregular minotaur. Are you kidding me? Everyone gathered around as Betel led the way, still skeptical. The twins followed, intrigued and worried, as did Finn and Reveria, with Lily in her arms, still surprised. The only one who stayed away was Bell. Hey, old witch, check her stats. Betel, do you want to die? Just do it. You understand the divine language, don't you? He didn't move even when his colleagues snooped around the state of the most anticipated person. Instead, he looked to the right, to where there was a cavernous path to where a presence could be felt. This is unpleasant. A second later, it disappeared. XXX. Otter withdrew after witnessing the battle of Aiz Wallenstein. He had won, even if his eyes couldn't believe what they saw. He accepted his mistake in thinking he wouldn't succeed due to a lack of determination and was ready to return and inform his goddess. Although it was certain that he was observing the fight through his arcanum, it was then, as he prepared to turn around and return to the surface, that he felt a hand grab his shoulder. Long time no see, Otter, you've crossed the line. Both bodies became blurred, and a second later, deep inside the dungeon, an earthquake was felt. XXX. The reason Lily was able to guide the most powerful familia in Amorío with Aiz was, in fact, because they were on their way on an expedition. They had split into 2 groups, and the advance group, which was led by Finn, was lucky enough to find the dying Lily lying on the ground. It was then that the situation was explained and they ran, or rather Bell, to Aiz's aid. 2 hours have passed since then. I'll take her to Armid. I'll meet you on the 18th floor. That's what Bell had said as he carried Aiz in his arms. Everyone had nodded, even Reveria, who was looking at the girl in the boy's arms. Her eyes focused on the scene, but they didn't exactly react. Her thoughts were a mystery. After that, Aiz was taken to Diane Seth's clinic, directly into Armid's care at Bell's request. Chaos, of course, descended upon the city. More specifically, upon the female public, who refused to believe that this young woman was being carried as a princess for the second time. Is it her? Meanwhile, Armid, who was examining the wounds of the unconscious Aiz, gave a cold look while wondering in a low voice. I was curious about the young woman who was rumored to be close to bellcranel. Why her? He wondered. XXX. From another side. At the top of the Tower of Babel, whose structure pierced the clouds, a chuckle sounded. Fufu. Freya's eyes crinkled with happiness after she stopped seeing Aiz Wallenstein's fight through the arcanum mirror. He had observed everything from beginning to end. He was filled with joy every time the girl stood up, even if her body was at its limit. That tenacity and the intensity of emotions that shone on the surface of the golden eyes made Freya feel great ecstasy. However, is this a morning visit? They're usually done at midnight. Seated on her throne, she rolled her eyes to the left. She focused her gaze on the corner darkened by the dim lighting in the room. Goddess Freya, there was Bell. He took a step forward, and his body was dimly illuminated by the few rays of sunlight that managed to filter through the window. I've brought your assistant. Bell didn't attach much importance to the fact that he had trespassed into the territory of another family, and as if it were the most normal thing in the world, he dropped Otter, whom he was carrying like a sack of potatoes, onto the concrete floor. Thud. Freya's eyes carefully surveyed Otter's battered body. He had several deep wounds, and from the way he was breathing, she could tell he was unconscious. That's mean, Freya joked. Why do you bully the weak, Bell? She said that, but the slight, mischievous smile on her lips belied the probing question. She wasn't angry, much less about to give a lecture or make any kind of complaint. On the contrary, I was happy to see Bell. The dying Otter faded into the background as Freya's eyes, illuminated and moist, focused on Bell and only Bell. Are you angry? He asked. You seem angry. Would you like a glass of wine? Freya, the voice dry and merciless, echoed off the walls of the large room. Bell's eyes flashed with a dangerous gleam that no mortal could endure without falling to their knees in fear. Freya, being a goddess, felt a disconcerting chill attack every part of her body. Her skin prickled with goosebumps, and without taking her eyes off Bell, despite feeling the terrifying pressure emanating from him, she asked, Yes, I know I've been naughty. I've been a bad girl. Are you going to punish me? Her cheeks flushed a lovely pink. The mere thought of Bell being annoyed and punishing her excited her. Her breathing became rapid, and one might have thought she was panting. One can only imagine what was going on inside his head. No, I won't. The excited gleam faded from his silver eyes. The change in mood was noticeable, but Bell dismissed it and declared firmly, Don't touch Aiz Wallenstein. From today on, she will be under my protection. Anyone who dares to lay a finger on her will face my wrath. That was no joke, much less an empty warning.
Bellcranel's reputation was such that if he said he would do something, he would do it. Therefore, when he threatened or warned, it was best not to contradict him. It was an existence that not even the gods could touch, much less interfere with its path. Once long ago, a foolish god was returned to the heavens by Bel's own hands. From that day forward, all the deities kept their distance and restrained their madness. Is that clear? Her voice, dangerous as poisoned blades, reached Freya's ears. Her heart was pounding. It was a mixture of fear and excitement, which, strange as it sounded, amazed her even more. Freya, is that clear? Yes, Bel, that's clear. She smiled from ear to ear. Her flushed cheeks, along with the emotion that shone in her eyes as they reflected Bel's serious face, made her look truly beautiful. If only the reason for her condition weren't being treated so harshly because of her unrequited love.
Okay.
I'm leaving Otter here, he'd better get some help as soon as possible or he'll die. Of course I'll take care of it, thanks for bringing it, it's no big deal. They exchanged glances, and just as Freya looked at him with more desire than a mortal could, Bel's figure melted into the shadows and disappeared. The room was filled with an eerie silence, and a second later the double doors were forcibly torn down. Freya-sama. They were the rest of its executives. A catman who displayed a murderous expression while holding his spear, as well as a pair of elves who radiated bloodlust. The quartet of hobbits followed behind. Oh, aren't you guys a little late? Unfortunately, Bel's gone, or should I say fortunately for you. The seven bit their lips helplessly and lowered their gaze. They were unable to face the smiling Freya and confessed that they had been outside the room all this time, paralyzed by fear. Even more so when they couldn't even move as the terrifying pressure emanating from Bel left them frozen.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.